For a knight to truly rise to the rank of master, they need to completely break the existing stereotype. Until their very existence becomes a legend, a figure standing tall with a spear radiating an ethereal glow. A master who has long since cast aside the need for a sword. For he is the legendary spear knight. With a single, sweeping motion, Joshua unleashes his spear, striking down multiple armored foes in a blinding flash of light. The impact sends them flying, their forms dissolving into explosive bursts of energy. Another strike shatters the armor of a soldier, leaving behind only a crystalline residue of destruction. In the vast Igrant continent, a brutal civil war raged, until one figure emerged to immediately halt the conflict within the Avalon Empire. Amidst the shattered remnants of battle, a lone knight stood victorious. His identity now revealed, his name is Joshua Sanders, wielding his signature spear. He was known throughout history as the greatest spear knight. Yet, in a moment of profound despair, Joshua could only question if this was truly helpless. A pained growl escaped him, his face etched with anguish. As his closest companions gathered, their expressions grim, they stood together in his final moments. Surrounded by his companions and the mysterious glowing orb, Joshua Sanders can only utter a single, pained question. Caesar Van Britten, observing the scene, offers a grim assessment, assuring him it is no curse, but something far rarer. Evergrant, the master of the Tower of Magic, elaborates, explaining that divine and holy powers are exact opposites. Joshua's mind races, the truth of his agony becoming clear. Both conflicting powers are colliding within his very body, a phenomenon that would have killed any normal person long ago. He collapses to his knees, a guttural cry escaping him, as the immense pain racks his frame, glowing particles erupting around him. Gort, witnessing his friend's torment, can only voice his own bewildered concern, unable to comprehend the suffering before him. Clenching his fist, Joshua's thoughts drift to his past, to a time when he never coveted the throne or craved wealth, his only desire to demonstrate the true greatness of the spear and earn the emperor's recognition as a spearman. He had always sought to become a shield, protecting his master and his one and only friend. Now that the empire's civil war had long passed, he vowed to spend the remainder of his life by their side. The Avalon Empire's emperor, Caesar Van Britten, now believed himself to be in full control. He had wanted to become a shield to protect his empire, but now, he questions his very purpose. The internal struggle manifests, causing him immense pain as a faint shing echoes. Evergrant reminds him that there are beings born with the power to control the world, and Joshua acknowledges this truth. Now, the master of the Tower of Magic continues. The emperor believes he can control the world without any problem. He seeks to reach the seat of the world, where he can accomplish whatever he wishes. But for that emperor, there is only one thing he truly fears. A voice echoes, confirming his identity. It is you, Joshua. He stands over a fallen foe. As the master of the Tower of Magic explains that even martial artists who dedicate their lives to mana struggle to control its raw power. He demonstrates, holding a glowing orb, stating it would take decades to summon a single small dagger in the stories of old. Yet, Joshua, kneeling over the defeated figure, can control a mana orb the size of two people, wielding it as he wishes. A question echoes in his mind. How many foes has he slain with that spear? The answer comes, not in numbers, but in a realization. He surpassed the very concept of aura a long time ago. Evergrant, still holding the glowing orb, acknowledges his power, knowing he has conquered yet another wall. The weight of his power, or perhaps his past, causes him to wince, a silent groan escaping his lips. Joshua's hand reaches for a glowing blue orb, recognizing it as something that had been sealed away. His hand clenches, a faint blue light emanating from his fingers, as if he fears what it might unleash. A memory flashes, showing his face contorted in a grimace, haunted by the thought of a spear appearing to stab him. The paranoia had grown, he recalls, as the image of his own knight's armor fills his mind. Back in the present, Evergrant stands over him, offering thanks for his hard work as a guttural cry of anguish escapes Joshua. The old mage calmly states that they wouldn't have to work for that, implying a deeper, perhaps manipulative, plan. A powerful blue aura flares around Evergrant, who looks down at the suffering Joshua, repeating his thanks. The world goes black, filled only with another agonizing cry and a final, chilling farewell. Evergrant's eyes glow with an eerie green light, a sinister smirk playing on his lips as he acknowledges his longtime servant. Having been overwhelmed, Joshua lies motionless on the desolate ground, his form still and defeated. From an unseen vantage point, a voice whispers, unable to bear witness to the tragic scene. Caesar Van Britten, his eyes closed in anguish, mourns what he believes are his best friend's final moments. Still, Joshua remains prone, while two robed figures stand over him, their intentions unclear. Yet, the name of Caesar Van Britten echoes with a new resolve. Suddenly, Joshua's eyes snap open, glowing with an unnatural white light, a raw scream tearing from his throat. Caesar, now surrounded by his loyalists, declares that this is far from the end. With a sudden burst of energy, a complex blue magical circle ignites on the ground. Joshua, still screaming, is forcibly pulled downward, his body sinking into the glowing runes of the activated portal. Engulfed by a powerful magical explosion, Joshua finds himself unable to escape the rapidly expanding blue energy, an unseen voice lamenting that at this speed, there's no saving him. Lying defeated, a faint scoff escapes him, as the narration acknowledges him as the legendary Spear Knight, the only one capable of defeating the northern monster. Despite his dire situation, a fierce resolve hardens his gaze, vowing not to die in such a place, determined to survive and return to his sister. As the swirling blue energy intensifies around him, a frustrated curse escapes his lips. A deep, resonant hum fills the air, the sound of immense magical power building. Disoriented within the chaotic blue currents, he weakly calls out a name, Lu. Hia. The magical resonance continues to surge, a powerful, sustained hum echoing through the space. Amidst the chaos, a striking image appears, his iconic red spear, known across the battlefield as the Grim Reaper, glowing with ominous power. Still caught in the blue energy, his eyes now glowing with an eerie light, Joshua lets out a maniacal laugh, repeating the name, Lukia. He lay amidst the rubble, the chaotic blue energy swirling around him, thinking that a special strength must have been hidden within it all along. But to think it would reveal itself in such a way, now, he gritted his teeth, forcing himself to move against the overwhelming current. The sheer intensity of the crackling blue power was too much, leaving him unable to even think. Still on the ground, engulfed in the surging energy, Joshua urged it on, wanting just a bit more, a deeper connection to its core. With a sharp crackle, the blue energy began to coalesce, flowing from his hand directly into the tip of his crimson spear. A guttural gasp escaped him, his face contorted in a grimace of either agony or immense concentration as the power surged. Then, with a deafening roar, a massive blue explosion erupted from his form, shattering the very ground around him. The explosive force expanded outward, engulfing everything in a blinding flash of azure light. As the brilliant blue energy began to dissipate, only the intense, crimson glow of his spear remained, pulsing with raw power. Swirling blue energy, laced with ominous orange rings, pulsed through the void. As a blood-red moon hung heavy in the sky, a silent witness to the fate of the Grand Duke of the Avalon Empire, the Spear Knight. His name, Sanders, echoed across desolate peaks, a testament to an empty fate that defied his renown as the peerless Spear Knight. Then, with a sharp crack, he suddenly sprang upright from a bed of hay. Disoriented and confused, wondering aloud where he was, questioning if this was a stable, and recalling his last moments. As he stared at his hand, now glowing with a soft blue light, the realization dawned on him. He should have died, yet he was alive. Joshua stares at his hands, a growing unease settling over him as he questions their unfamiliar appearance and the strange surroundings. A sudden, sharp gasp escapes him, his eyes widening in profound shock. Driven by a desperate need for answers, he rushes to a nearby well, peering into its depths. His reflection confirms his fears, a younger face staring back at him. His mind races, grappling with the impossible truth. His body has become younger. The realization hits him with full force, leaving him utterly stunned. He stumbles back, a cry of disbelief escaping him as he gazes out a window, the familiar landscape sparking a memory. This place, the very air, it is undeniably where he used to live. The pieces click into place with a terrifying clarity. He has been reverted to the past. A smirk plays on his lips, a low chuckle escaping him as he savors the moment. This new chance, this unexpected gift, fills him with a profound sense of joy. With vibrant purple energy swirling around him, he declares his intent to face Caesar Van Britten, ensuring this life will unfold differently. He is determined to forge a new path, to make this life truly his own. A young man, his dark blue hair catching the light, looks up with a start. As a familiar voice calls out to him, he scoffs, dismissing the other man's concern about his continued presence and his instruction to return to the duchy. His thoughts drift to the knights, recognizing them as the Agnes Duchy's personal guard. Meanwhile, Lloyd's frustration grows, lamenting the roaming creatures and the lack of protection for his companion. Joshua reminds him of the mute individual's inability to assist, and Lloyd reluctantly concedes the point. A flicker of annoyance crosses Joshua's face, as he internally wishes he could simply be rid of Lloyd. Lloyd, however, continues his warning, cautioning Joshua about the duchy's potential discovery of his actions and the consequences if a certain name were to be spoken. He reflects on how carelessly things unfolded, a past he can hardly believe. His mind drifts to his mother, Lucia, a memory of her holding fruit, his younger self by her side. She was the exclusive maid of the Agnes Duchy, and he, the illegitimate child. Born of the maid, he recalls those who found a peculiar, vicarious pleasure in his existence. Though helped by Duke Agnes, the personal troops, aware of his noble blood, venomously tormented him. As a child, he felt the sting of their cruelty. Especially the personal knights who stood before him, capable of exacting their revenge, a thought that still resonates with Lloyd. Gort turns to Ralche, admitting he wants to see Lucia more for some reason, asking for confirmation. Another man questions Lloyd about the creatures, but he dismisses the concern, telling him not to worry over nothing. In a desolate, remote location, Gort and Ralche corner a young Joshua, with Gort taunting him, asking who he is to hide there, and declaring his intent to take him. Ralche simply agrees. As a chilling memory surfaces, Duchess Vanessa's voice echoes, coldly stating that if they simply got rid of Lucia, no one would ever know. She would take full responsibility for the act. Back in the present confrontation, Gort laments the absence of others, believing this to be the perfect time for their cruel display, while Ralche again offers his agreement. Cornered and desperate, Joshua feels an overwhelming urge to flee, yet deep within him, a fierce refusal to let his mother's honor be trampled takes root. His eyes blaze with a furious, crimson light, reflecting his unwavering resolve to protect her memory. A powerful surge of energy courses through his body, his fist clenching as golden aura crackles around his hand. A guttural roar escapes his lips, the raw force of his burgeoning abilities threatening to erupt. It was then, at the tender age of 12, that he first mastered the aura technique, wielding his favorite spear with newfound, devastating power. Mana, a fundamental energy, exists everywhere, influencing all living things and shaping the very world itself. However, for a human to wield this power, they must possess a mana hole, a unique organ typically located in the heart or brain, allowing them to absorb and utilize mana. Without this crucial organ, mana use is severely limited, often scattered and uncontrollable, making it impossible to concentrate the energy needed for a powerful burst. Yet, as a vibrant blue aura begins to coalesce around his young body, Joshua finds himself gathering mana throughout his entire being, his eyes glowing with an intense, otherworldly light. He instinctively concentrates the energy where it's needed most, preparing to unleash it in an instant. He hadn't undergone the typical process of forming a mana hole, a fundamental step for every mana user. Instead, he had completely skipped the entire lengthy procedure. With his hand now glowing with a fierce, orange-red intensity, he realizes there's no helping his rapid ascent as a mana user. His anger, a potent fuel, surges through him, promising to surround and utterly defeat his tormentors. Gort and Ralche, witnessing the terrifying surge of power, recoil in sheer horror, their faces etched with dread at the sight of his burgeoning strength. Gort watches the young man intently, a flicker of concern crossing his face as he considers Joshua's temper. He remarks to Ralche that it seems Joshua has been able to control his mana today, a feat that surprises him. Joshua, his eyes closed in deep concentration, begins to gather his inner strength. He opens them, a cold intensity in his gaze, and asks if Gort truly believes he's merely acting out of temper. As his words hang in the air, Joshua's eyes begin to glow with an ethereal blue light, a powerful aura radiating from him. The sheer force of it causes Gort to recoil instantly, his face contorted in pure terror. He screams out in fear, unable to comprehend the sudden surge of power. Both Gort and Ralche are violently thrown backward by the invisible impact, their bodies slamming against the unseen force. Gort's hand hits the ground with a painful thud, the impact sending dust and glowing particles scattering. The blue energy from Joshua's body erupts, slamming into Gort with immense force, sending him reeling backward as the pressure intensifies. He lands hard on the ground, a pained groan escaping his lips. Both Gort and Ralche stare in utter disbelief, one of them exclaiming, "How? What just happened?" Meanwhile, Joshua feels a strange sensation, his mana boiling within him, a purple glow emanating from his body as he thinks, "My mana is returning." He realizes he is growing stronger, the power flowing through him with renewed vigor. As Joshua processes this, Ralche, still standing, quickly draws his sword, the metallic rasp echoing in the sudden silence. He points the blade at Joshua, who stands over the still fallen Gort, and shouts, "You must be crazy because you want to die." Joshua considers the threat, thinking, "But if I can control this power, who would dare to stop me? Then there's a chance that Ralche won't attack me." He recalls a time when he was considered the most capable of his peers, a memory that fuels a quiet plea for just one more chance. But before he can fully grasp the implications of his thoughts, Ralche lunges forward, sword drawn, his face contorted with rage as he vows to make this day Joshua's funeral. The blade arcs with a sharp hiss, aiming for a decisive strike. Yet, before it can connect, a brilliant blue light erupts from Joshua, a surge of raw power that makes him gasp, realizing the sheer magnitude of the mana now flowing through him. The force of his awakening mana blasts outward, violently repelling Ralche and sending him reeling backward. The blue energy continues to surge, propelling Ralche further through the air. With a pained cry, Ralche is flung across the field. He crashes hard onto the ground, landing beside the already incapacitated Gort. Joshua looks at his hands, a mix of awe and disbelief on his face, muttering about the sheer craziness of his power, wondering who could possibly think this was barely anything. Standing over his defeated opponents, Joshua reflects on the overwhelming surge of mana that just erupted from him, wondering how anyone could possibly contend with such power. He feels the sheer magnitude of it, a sensation that leaves him both astonished and invigorated. Meanwhile, Ralche, still reeling from the impact, can only wonder how someone so young could possess such immense mana, refusing to believe that Joshua could be superior to him. Gort, equally stunned, struggles to maintain his composure, determined not to show any weakness in front of Joshua. Joshua's voice cuts through the silence, a clear command echoing across the training grounds. Ralche looks up, his expression a mix of defiance and disbelief, while Gort reacts with a startled gasp, questioning the audacity of Joshua's words. Joshua then turns his gaze to the two men on the ground, his tone firm as he includes them in his declaration. His words hang heavy in the air, a powerful statement that promises no mercy for those who oppose him, and that he will not be left alone. He screams, a final, raw burst of power erupting from him, his eyes blazing with an infernal glow, as far away, another man reacts with profound distress, knowing that Joshua's very name is now on the line. One of the defeated opponents, overwhelmed by the display, can only stammer out an apology, calling himself a monster. Another, unable to bear the pressure, turns and flees in a desperate, screaming panic, his cries echoing across the ravaged landscape. But the immense power comes at a cost. Joshua hunches over, gasping for breath, his body trembling from the exertion. He curses softly, his gaze falling upon two distant figures, before his strength finally gives out. With a heavy thud, he collapses to the ground, his face slack in unconsciousness. Above the sprawling city, the sky stretches wide and clear, a peaceful facade over the bustling life below. Inside, a hushed conversation begins, as one man asks if the other has heard about the Duke's son, and how he supposedly beat the least-ranked magician, Evergrande. Joshua, listening intently, acknowledges the rumor, adding that some even claim Evergrande was made to lose on purpose. The news is that young Master Joshua Sanders, the second son of Duke Agnes, was the one who defeated Evergrande, and he can't help but feel that something about the whole situation isn't right. His companion, Lloyd, questions the veracity of the story, pointing out that Joshua has been sickly his entire life, and his family recently fell apart. How could he possibly have beaten the Master of Magic with his bare hands? Joshua concedes that the facts are indeed strange, but if the rumors are true, the standings of Duke Agnes' children for the succession could drastically change. Lloyd agrees with the assessment, his expression thoughtful. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a man named Braun exclaims his agreement, pondering that even the great Duke Agnes wasn't a master at 16. He wonders if Joshua could be a mana user. Despite the whispers of his incredible feat, the young master hasn't even begun to learn mana, and he's still seen as a clumsy weakling unable to wield a sword. Meanwhile, in a quiet office, he can barely believe the news, wondering who could possibly think the young master defeated the Tower Master for succession. It's simply impossible. A knock at the door interrupts his thoughts, and he asks if the other has come to report. The news clearly shocks him, a wave of disbelief washing over his face. The attendant, his eyes burning with an intense glow, instructs him to inform the Duke, declaring his own arrival. Joshua von Agnes has arrived. The second son of Duke Agnes, Joshua Sanders, kneels before his father, who sits in his opulent office. The Duke, his expression stern, questions if the reports are truly correct. Kneeling before Gort, Ralche confirms his identity, stating his name and acknowledging Gort as his superior. A look of shock crosses Gort's face as he processes the information, the mention of the 70th Battalion clearly catching him off guard. Later, Gort relays the astonishing news to Duke Agnes, who sits on his bed, reviewing documents. The Duke questions if it's truly the 70th Battalion, the one that supposedly defeated the Tower Master Evergrande's forces, Chiffon. As Joshua kneels before him, the Duke's gaze sharpens, his voice cutting through the silence as he addresses his son. The Duke's question hangs heavy in the air, demanding to know if Joshua was truly responsible for the battalion's defeat. His stern expression unwavering, the Duke presses for confirmation, his skepticism palpable. He warns Joshua to consider his words carefully, threatening severe consequences if he dares to lie. With a determined gaze, Joshua meets his father's eyes, firmly asserting that he has spoken nothing but the truth. The Duke, still unconvinced, questions the meaning of Chiffon, while Gort admits the story is indeed unbelievable. He finds the report quite unbelievable, his brow furrowing as he asks for Joshua's current age. Gort confirms the young master is 9 years old, adding that he defeated a battalion of over 200 of Chiffon's forces at that tender age. The Duke considers this, musing that such a feat might be possible if Joshua had used mana. Gort, visibly distressed, apologizes for the interruptions, but insists that such a thing is impossible. The Duke continues, stating that in all of history, no one has ever achieved such a feat in a real fight at the age of 9, concluding that an unprecedented genius must have been born. Gort explains that even a highly talented B-rank knight would struggle to cover their bare hands with mana. The Duke slams his hand on the desk, declaring that he simply cannot believe the 9-year-old boy named Joshua was able to successfully subjugate such a force. Gort, now sweating, suggests it's more logical to assume something else is going on, and that the young master might have come up with some kind of scheme. The Duke's eyes glow with a furious red light as he warns that anyone who dares to lie will be taught a lesson, regardless of their position, while Gort desperately insists that everyone else said it was the truth. Still seething, the Duke rounds on Gort, his voice sharp with accusation, demanding to know the truth. Gort, visibly distressed, insists he has already revealed everything, as the Duke turns and walks away. His subordinate, Ralche expresses concern, worried about leaving Gort to face the Duke's wrath alone after such grave accusations. The Duke continues his stride, convinced that the full truth will emerge once Joshua's own account is scrutinized. He reflects on the unprecedented nature of the 70th Battalion's defeat, ultimately deciding to personally confront the young knight. Meanwhile, Gort remains deeply troubled, wondering if the Duke's intention is merely to draft a preliminary report to verify the facts. He announces his decision to head to the Duke's office, then urgently inquires about Joshua's whereabouts. Lloyd, confirming Joshua's presence, acknowledges Gort's command as they move together. The grand, empty halls of Duke Agnes's office await. Caesar's eyes widen in disbelief, a sharp gasp escaping his lips. Confronting a young man in the hallway, he demands to know why Joshua, that bastard, is present, while the young man, in turn, addresses him as young master, asking for his thoughts. The young man's face contorts with a deep, unsettling distress. As a portrait of the current emperor of Avalon, Caesar Van Britten, hangs prominently nearby. Staring intently at the emperor's image, the young man declares that the sight of that face makes his blood boil from deep inside. His hand clenches into a tight fist, as he vows to definitely have his revenge, while Caesar, observing his fury, questions how much power he believes Gort truly possesses. Suddenly, Caesar's hand shoots out, gripping the young man's throat in a crushing hold. But before Caesar can tighten his hold, the young man retaliates with a swift, powerful punch directly to Caesar's face. The impact sends Caesar reeling backward, his head snapping from the force. A young man strains under an immense, unseen pressure, his face contorted in defiance. Despite the strain, he clutches a glowing orb, refusing to yield, as a whispered rumor questions if he truly beat Gort to a pulp. Elsewhere, in a grand hall, Caesar stands beside a stern-faced noble, both looking down as the noble demands to know what is happening. Below them, a young boy cries out for his father, just as the man delivers a sharp slap across his face, Caesar observing the scene with a detached gaze. Moments later, Caesar bows respectfully, greeting Duke Agnes. The dark-haired noble from earlier confronts Caesar again, repeating his question, while Caesar deflects, asking about the gathering. Duke Agnes simply hums, his expression unreadable. The young boy from before kneels before the Duke, who stands tall with Caesar beside him. As a thought echoes, he dares to defy not only Duke Agnes, but also the rest of his kin. The dark-haired noble's eyes glow with a fierce purple light, his anger palpable. In the opulent hall, the man known as the strongest in the Avalon Empire, Duke Agnes, sternly reminds a young boy to mind his manners, while Joshua watches, a silent observer. The emperor, Caesar, then intervenes, demanding a proper apology from the boy, but Joshua steps forward, asserting that it is not the boy's fault. Joshua's gaze hardens, his composure visibly cracking. He recognizes the portrait of his father, Duke Oscarma's eldest son, and feels a surge of uncontrollable anger, his eyes beginning to glow with a fierce purple light. The purple glow intensifies, a clear sign that his emotions are spiraling out of control. He knows Duke Agnes shows no mercy to those who display hostility, a rule that applies even to his own children. Now kneeling before the Duke, Joshua remains silent as Agnes speaks, asking if he has finally calmed down. Duke Agnes's expression is unyielding as he declares he will personally verify Joshua's loyalty. Caesar watches the scene unfold, his face etched with shock, uttering a bewildered exclamation. He can still hear Duke Agnes's words echoing in his mind, a chilling reminder of the power dynamic at play. Joshua wonders if he truly is a fool, if his defiance was nothing more than a childish outburst against an insurmountable force, or if there's something more to this hidden power stirring within him. Still held firmly by the collar, his gaze remains fixed on the imposing figure of Duke Agnes, who continues to assert his dominance. Suddenly, a brilliant golden light erupts from his hand, particles of energy swirling around his palm, leaving him utterly bewildered. His eyes widen in disbelief, a gasp catching in his throat as he stares at the unexpected manifestation of power, a force he can barely comprehend. A hushed conversation unfolds, discussing the implications if the mana sensitivity cure were to be removed. Lloyd, looking up at Duke Agnes, recalls someone mentioning the individual in question was merely a stable boy, and wonders if all of this could truly be adjusted. Agnes's expression hardens as he considers the implications, muttering about the shocking nature of the situation. He holds up a small, intricate device, his gaze fixed on it as he declares, "There's nothing." Lloyd looks on, his face a mixture of confusion and concern, as Agnes continues to examine the device. Lloyd confirms the situation. "Yeah, that's right." Later, Duke Agnes reports to Emperor Caesar Van Britten, confirming that they have found no mana in the individual. The Emperor, however, states he has never seen him before. Suddenly, Joshua Sanders stands, his hands glowing with a vibrant blue aura, as he declares he can feel the mana, and more profoundly, he can feel him, leaving Duke Agnes stunned. He seethes internally, unable to comprehend how this lowly bastard, a mere stable boy, could possess mana. The thought grinds at him, echoing the Duke's bewildered question. He can use mana? Agnes, meanwhile, tries to interject, urging his lord to reconsider such pointless accusations. The Duke explains that rumors about the child's mana sensitivity have been spreading, but many of them are completely wrong. He continues, implying that the truth of the matter is far more complex than simple gossip. Agnes then reflects on past sticky situations involving dangerous enemies, concluding that for now, they must proceed cautiously. Joshua watches the young boy intently, his jaw clenching as he vows to personally oversee the situation. The Duke dismisses some of the wilder tales, stating that if the young master truly lacks mana sensitivity, it would be a curse rather than a blessing. He emphasizes that they cannot allow false rumors to spread unchecked, especially those that cause unrest. Agnes then reinforces his position, reminding Joshua that the Emperor, as head of the Empire, has no reason to lie, and that his own report was accurate. He concludes that there are no lies in the matter, as the young boy looks up at Joshua, clearly distressed. He listens intently as Duke Agnes continues, asking if the child's supposed curse is also present in the Emperor's report. Agnes hesitates, then confirms that there is no such mention. He then clarifies that the child's name is Chiffon, addressing Joshua directly. As they walk through the palace, Joshua questions if Agnes is implying the Emperor's report is false, but the Duke corrects him, stating the truth is even more complex. Agnes then bids him farewell, expressing anticipation for his return from Acadie. Joshua's name echoes in his mind, his expression hardening with resolve. A door creaks open, revealing a small, light-haired child sitting forlornly on the floor, as a servant begins to announce his arrival. He steps into the room, his gaze sweeping across the unfamiliar surroundings. Rumors of a child cursed with low mana sensitivity echo in his mind, yet he calmly offers, "If you need anything, call me." Despite the child's young age, his demeanor strikes him as unusually calm. The child, Chiffon, lies on the bed, a soft sigh escaping him as if burdened by an unseen weight. Joshua finally focuses on the child's eyes, searching for answers. He recalls Duke Agnes's words about the child's low mana sensitivity, a condition so severe it was deemed a curse, all while residing in the Duke's most beautiful estate. Holding a small, glowing creature, he scoffs internally. Did Duke Agnes truly believe even I, Joshua Sanders, would fall for such a transparent lie? A faint shimmer surrounds the sleeping child, confirming his suspicion. He saw the dark, ominous mana flowing from Chiffon's body, and now, that truth is undeniable. More importantly, as he watches, the child's eyes begin to glow with an ominous light. As the ominous mana pulsed around him, Chiffon stares at his own hands, a question echoing in his mind. To accomplish what? Later that night, a towering structure stood silhouetted against the moonlit sky. From its peak, he plummeted downward, a blur of motion against the dark stone. Mana gathered in his outstretched hand, ready to cushion the impact. He landed with a powerful thud, the ground cracking beneath his feet. Joshua observed the lingering mana, noting that the amount he was using was less problematic than its nature, and he might recover his strength faster than anticipated. But as he pushed himself, a pained grunt escaped him, purple mana flaring violently around his form. The bad energy around his mana hole was getting all mixed up, a chaotic surge that felt as strong as demonic energy itself. Suddenly, a small, glowing creature, Lucia, appeared, absorbing the volatile energy with a soft, red glow. A powerful, conflicting force surges within him, threatening to tear his very being apart. Meanwhile, outside the manor, Chiffon looks around nervously, wondering if he heard something, though the guards nearby seem oblivious. The guards confirm they hear nothing, leaving Chiffon to his own thoughts. A sinister purple aura flares around the stable boy as he laughs to himself, believing the disturbance is merely a sign of weak mana, and contemplating how to claim this power for his own. The manor stands silently in the distance. Before a sudden, violent tremor rips through it, shaking its very foundations. Moments later, Chiffon is forcibly apprehended by two soldiers, pleading with them to let him go and demanding to know why he's being treated this way. As Lucia watches on, one of his captors questions his feigned ignorance, asking if he truly doesn't understand the gravity of his actions. Joshua steps forward, spear in hand, his expression grim, declaring that Chiffon's actions have ruined their reputation. Duke Agnes grips Lucia tightly by the arm and neck, holding her close as she struggles, while Lloyd and Gort keep Chiffon firmly restrained. He glares at the young stable boy, declaring, "You wretched little bastard." With a sudden, violent shove, Lucia is flung away, her body recoiling from the impact. She collapses to the floor, unconscious, as Duke Agnes stands over her, his voice booming. "I was born as the Duke of Agnes. Do you think I'd let a lowly stable boy ruin my reputation?" Before he can continue, Joshua steps forward, grabbing the Duke's arm with a firm grip, his tone sharp as he demands, "Hold your tongue, Duke Agnes." He continues, his gaze unwavering. "How dare you lay hands on the exclusive maid of the Agnes Duchy, and in front of me, no less." The Duke, enraged by the interruption, shouts back, "Don't you dare forget your place, Joshua. I am the Duke of Agnes, and I bear the responsibility for this manor." Joshua simply stares, his expression unyielding. Before turning his attention to Chiffon, who remains on the floor and coldly states, "Why are we wasting this much time? If you're done with your business, you should leave." He dismisses the notion with a wave of his hand, a faint glow emanating from his palm, finding no humor in the challenge. Before the Duke can react, he lunges forward, seizing the man by his collar, bringing him to a sudden, jarring halt. His own guards, Lloyd and Gort, immediately rush to intervene, pleading for the Duke's release, but he holds the older man firmly, his grip unyielding. His eyes, now burning with an intense crimson glow, betray the depth of his resolve, a stark contrast to the boy they once knew. Turning his attention to the young stable boy, he issues a cold warning, reminding him that his lineage offers no protection here. Nearby, Lucia watches the unfolding drama, her face etched with fear and concern, muttering his name in a desperate whisper. The Duke, still struggling against his own men, desperately clings to a sliver of hope, convinced they can still escape this predicament. His face contorted in rage, he lashes out, accusing his opponent of cowardice. But the confrontation is over. The Duke lies defeated on the ground as the young stable boy walks away, leaving the victor to issue a final, chilling command, demanding the presence of another. He stands calmly, observing the small figure before him. With a stern gaze, Joshua declares, "I told you to come out. This time, I'll send you to hell for sure." The child, however, simply echoes his words, "I told you to come out." A furious expression crosses the child's face as he retorts, "Wah, this, what trouble are you trying to cause? No, how dare you?" With a furious snarl, the child launches himself forward, leaping into the air with surprising speed. Joshua watches the attack unfold, a hint of surprise in his eyes as he murmurs, You dare." The child's foot connects with Joshua's leg, the impact revealing his true identity, Sir Knight Cain. Joshua, a knight renowned as the spear of the Empire and the god of war, effortlessly deflects the strike, his reputation preceding him. In an instant, Cain is on the ground, defeated, as Joshua stands victorious over him. Joshua Sanders regards the young boy before him, questioning if this is truly the rumored child of a concubine. He presses for an answer, his gaze unwavering. Cain stands his ground, a picture of youthful defiance. With a surge of youthful arrogance, Cain declares that a soldier unable to use mana is utterly useless. But as Cain speaks, an overwhelming force emanates from Joshua, a power that, according to the Avalon Empire's military law, renders all unnamed peasants worthless. The sheer pressure causes Cain to recoil, his face contorted in shock and pain. He clenches his fist, struggling against the undeniable, overwhelming force that grips him. Before Cain can even react, Joshua's fist connects with brutal speed. The impact sends the young boy flying across the room. A sudden, powerful impact reverberates through the air, signaling the start of a swift confrontation. In a blur of motion, Joshua Sanders engages an opponent, his spear a silver streak against the red trails of their rapid exchange. The opponent roars, unleashing a powerful attack, but Joshua remains unfazed. Before it can connect, he counters with a swift spear thrust, forcing the knight back with overwhelming speed. The spear connects with a sharp clang, sparks flying as metal grinds against metal. As the opponent stumbles back, Joshua pauses, looking over his shoulder, hearing a voice call out, "By Cain, wait!" Without hesitation, he delivers another powerful strike, sending the knight flying through the air. The knight lands hard, defeated, and immediately begins to plead, "I'm sorry, please fork." Joshua continues his relentless assault, his spear a blur of motion as he drives the knight back, overpowering him with each strike until the armored figure collapses under the pressure. But before the final blow can land, a commanding voice echoes through the chamber, a powerful psychic force slamming into the space between them. In an instant, a golden-haired man appears, his blade pressed firmly against Joshua's throat, a chilling warning delivered with deadly precision. Joshua finds himself kneeling, disarmed, as the man looms over him, while a subordinate pleads for the confrontation to cease, identifying himself as an immediate subordinate. The golden-haired man's fury is palpable, his gaze burning with indignation at the perceived dishonor Joshua has brought upon the duchy. He demands to know who dared to defy the duchy's orders, and more specifically, his own. As Joshua looks up in confusion, the man prepares to reveal his identity. It is Duke Agnes, a young stable boy, his face contorted in a mix of anger and disbelief, can hardly fathom the words being hurled at him. Joshua Sanders, his expression cold and unforgiving, declares that he has no need for loyalty from such a lowly bastard, vowing to forever bar him from becoming a knight or a mage under his command. A sharp click echoes through the air, emphasizing the finality of his decree. Standing over the stable boy, who now lies defeated on the ground, Joshua offers a sarcastic "thank you for saving him the trouble," while the boy can only manage a choked, incomplete response. The stable boy, still reeling from the humiliation, wonders in disbelief if his tormentor truly possesses the power of mana. Yet, even in his despair, a flicker of defiant hope ignites within him, a belief that he will overcome these hardships and grow stronger than all the other soldiers, despite missing a single crucial detail. Joshua, his voice laced with a chilling warning, vows to personally punish anyone who dares to repeat such an offense. The stable boy clenches his jaw, a silent resolve hardening his features, the grinding sound of his teeth echoing his inner turmoil. With a pained cry of understanding, he scrambles to his feet and flees into the distance, leaving the confrontation behind. The stable boy lies bruised and still, a testament to the harsh reprimand he'd just received. Slowly, he stirs, pushing himself up from the cold floor. As he does, Joshua stands over him, his voice sharp, dismissing any words as mere nonsense. Yet, a flicker of thought crosses his face, wondering if this boy is truly different from the one he remembers. He looks down, while the stable boy, despite his injuries, meets his gaze with an unwavering stare. A faint blue glow emanates from the boy's eyes, a silent declaration of his newfound resolve. Joshua simply crosses his arms, challenging him with a single, pointed question. He then begins to outline the boy's future, stating that they can choose their own path, but only after working for the next year until they are 15. For the next year, Joshua declares, the boy must stay far away from him. He reflects on his past, acknowledging that he might not have a future, as he remembers someone calling him eccentric. He recalls standing behind a woman, whom he called mother, asking if she was safe. She embraced him tightly. A memory he hasn't forgotten, recalling the warmth of her embrace and the tears they shed together, wondering what she would say to him now. The scene shifts to a quiet night, a full moon illuminating the roof of a building. He stands alone, his eyes glowing with a faint blue light, a soft blue aura emanating from him, confirming he is still different from others. As he walks away, his destiny now linked to Joshua Sanders, the continent's greatest spear knight. The Grand Agnes Duchy's mansion stands prominently, a symbol of power and influence. From a high balcony, a servant confirms to a noble that chiffon has been delivered to the Duke's residence, acknowledging the instruction from Court Rebekina. The noble questions if it is indeed the Duke's residence, receiving a firm affirmation from the servant. Unlike chiffon, who struggles with his innate abilities, Count Rebekina is an ordinary man who achieved success through sheer effort, yet he possesses a unique understanding of mana. His daughter, Rebekina, is a true prodigy, a magic genius born with a natural affinity for mana. At just 9 years old, she had already reached Class 2, demonstrating her exceptional talent by effortlessly dispatching a monstrous foe with a brilliant blue magical blast. While some are born with mana infected by the demon's curse, Rebekina possesses a mysterious mana that allows her to wield demonic power without succumbing to its corruption. This unique ability to manipulate the demon's mana without being corrupted is a rare and powerful gift, glowing with an ethereal blue light around her. It is this extraordinary treasure that explains Count Rebekina's presence at the Agnes Duchy's mansion. As the Duke walks beside him, Joshua reflects on the Duke's past actions, recalling how he had once been bothered by the Duke's constant presence. The Duke, however, seems lost in his own thoughts, muttering about how he must have been sitting on the throne for at least 20 years, even before the coronation ceremony. A deep sigh escapes him, his expression heavy with the weight of his memories. Joshua then recalls a portrait of Lady Charles, a figure from the Duke's past, her image framed in ornate gold. The Duke's thoughts return to the present, acknowledging the child's presence with a troubled expression. He gestures towards Rebekina, who stands amidst a group of people, explaining that she is the reason for his current predicament. Joshua, however, remains resolute, asserting that he will protect the Agnes Duchy, no matter the cost. His gaze is unwavering, his determination clear as he speaks of his commitment. As they continue their walk, the Duke acknowledges Joshua's words, accepting his unwavering loyalty to the Agnes Duchy. Joshua, observing the Duke's troubled expression, inquires about the matter. Confused by the Duke's vague response, he asks for clarification, unsure of what the Duke means. The Duke, his voice heavy with regret, reveals his concern about bestowing mana upon someone, a power that Lady Evelyn once blessed, yet also afflicted with a curse. His words are cut short by a sudden realization, a gasp escaping him as he grapples with the implications. A blinding flash of light erupts, followed by a voice exclaiming in disbelief at the sight of young Master Joshua. Below, a young boy with dark hair and wide, innocent eyes looks up, seemingly the focus of the Duke's earlier distress. The scene shifts to reveal a magnificent, ancient structure, a grand castle or temple nestled amidst towering, jagged peaks, hinting at a new, significant location. A voice filled with contempt echoes, questioning how such a lowly stable boy, who merely cleans up waste all day, could possibly wield mana. Duke Agnes, his face contorted in a grimace, struggles with the thought. He can use mana. He then begins to speak, attempting to dissuade someone. My lord, you mustn't do such pointless. Joshua's hands grip the rough stone of a cliff face, pulling himself upward as loose rocks crumble beneath his efforts. He continues his ascent, breathing heavily. The narration revealing this old cliff is hidden north of the imperial capital. Reaching a secluded ledge, he sits, reflecting on how he used to climb this very spot in his youth to clear his head. As he walks further along the ledge, his footsteps soft against the ground, he stumbles upon something unexpected. Kneeling, he gazes at a small, glowing object nestled in the grass. A voice confirming this is where he found Luxel. His hands reach out, a faint cracking sound accompanying his touch as he interacts with the mysterious artifact. A complex, glowing blue magic circle rapidly forms on the ground before him, pulsating with energy. The circle expands into a massive, shimmering blue sphere of light, humming with an otherworldly power, completely engulfing the area around him. As the artifact pulsed with an otherworldly energy, a vast blue magic circle erupted around him, its power resonating with a deep, guttural hum. The circle continued to expand rapidly, engulfing the entire area in its brilliant, azure glow. From the depths of the newly revealed landscape, an ancient, towering structure emerged, its weathered stone reaching towards the sky. He stood dwarfed by the sheer scale of the ruins, a lone figure in a world suddenly made vast and mysterious. Entering the temple, he gazed up at the intricate, crumbling architecture, a sense of profound history washing over him. His eyes were drawn to a magnificent spear, chained to an altar at the temple's heart, a voice echoing in his mind, revealing that this very spear was the source of the magic, created and bound within these sacred walls. The grand hall of the temple stretched before him, its ancient splendor now a silent testament to forgotten power. He steps deeper into the ancient temple, his footsteps echoing softly against the intricately carved stone walls. Approaching a central pedestal, he finds only a simple wooden stick glowing faintly, a stark contrast to the powerful artifact he expected. There is just a wooden stick instead of Luxel, he wonders aloud. As his hand reaches out to touch the unassuming object, a sudden, blinding flash erupts from it. He gasps. The light intensifies, enveloping him in a brilliant, pulsating aura, the raw energy surging through his body. His eyes widen in shock, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of power. The light around him expands rapidly, shattering the ancient temple around him into countless fragments. He cries out in surprise as the world dissolves, the familiar surroundings replaced by an ethereal glow. He exclaims. Now standing alone in an infinite, pure white void, he looks around, disoriented. Where am I, he wonders. A voice then calls out to him from the stark emptiness, announcing, over here. He finds himself adrift in an endless, pure white expanse, a disembodied voice echoing around him, demanding to know his identity. Confused by the sudden shift in reality, he hears the voice question if he is merely an artifact from the temple. Then, with an air of ancient authority, the voice introduces itself as Luxel, the very intent of the demonic god. Joshua, still reeling from the revelation, can only echo the name, wondering if this entity is indeed the demonic god's divine artifact, while memories of Lucia, who had always been by his side in every battle, flash through his mind, making him question her sudden absence. Luxel continues, pondering if its own appearance has somehow reverted to the past alongside him, a thought that sends Joshua's mind back to his own past, to the time before he became the great hero, when he was merely a young man, full of ambition and dreams. A new, unsettling question hangs in the air, as Luxel asks if there is no time left. The entity clarifies, stating that the mana within Joshua's body will not endure much longer, imposing a strict 30-day limit, a stark reminder of his past self, who had once been a mere trainee knight, struggling to master even the most basic techniques. As the words time limit is 30 days echo, a crack appears in the pristine white void, a visual manifestation of the pressure, reminding him of his past self, who had once been a mere trainee knight, struggling to master even the most basic techniques. He realizes with a jolt that this situation is somehow connected to the ancient spearman magic he had been studying, a profound and complex art. He knows this spear technique is the only way mana techniques will become his foundation. On the Britain continent, all knights wielded spears as their primary weapons, yet spearmen were widely considered weak and useless. But because his mana, he could infuse his magic directly into his attacks. If ranks were considered, B-rank knights could use mana to form swords, but the so-called A rank was the private rank, reserved for those who could truly master their abilities. Even though the magic of the spearman was divided into 8 stages, he had only reached stage 3 back then. As a weak child, he had to learn the magic of the spearman. But the problem was, he recalls a time when, in his current state, it was difficult to even contemplate the future. But a guiding voice reassured him, telling him there was no need to worry, that he would be fine, and that he could utilize mana without limitations to a certain extent. The young man's eyes widened in disbelief, wondering if such a feat was truly possible. The mentor's words echoed in his mind, urging him to constantly refine himself. He was told he could simply achieve his goal, but never to forget the crucial advice he had been given. And so he trained, pushing his body to its absolute limits, a guttural cry escaping his lips with every ounce of effort. The mentor's final promise echoed as he mastered his power. Once he reached the peak, he would possess his mentor's abilities. The memory fades, and Joshua stands once more on the crumbling bridge, alone in the desolate void. He clenches his jaw, a fierce determination burning in his crimson eyes. With a powerful grunt, he channels his energy, calling out a name, Lucia. His spear glows with an ethereal blue light, striking a massive, shadowy, bird-like construct. As the energy dissipates, his eyes close in concentration, then snap open, a new understanding dawning. He realizes this is a mana cultivation technique, one that can only be found and mastered by a select few. His eyes blaze with an intense blue glow, mana swirling around him in a vibrant aura. With a final, triumphant surge of power, he declares, I did it. Exhausted but resolute, he stands firm, his spear planted, the last vestiges of blue mana fading around him. This is the magic spearmanship stage 1, first form, now fully realized. As his training intensified, he focused his will, concentrating all his mana into a single, potent spot. The energy surged, ready to be unleashed, to pierce through anything in a single, explosive burst. With a powerful thrust, Joshua moved, his spear glowing with a fierce blue aura, mana swirling around him as he executed the technique. He drove the attack forward, a blur of motion and concentrated power. The spear found its mark, erupting in a massive, blinding explosion of mana, sending shockwaves through the desolate training space. As the echoes of the blast faded, Joshua stood firm, his eyes burning with fierce determination, knowing this was only the true beginning of what Caesar had spoken of, and he would train relentlessly to overcome everything. Meanwhile, far from the desolate training grounds, a different scene unfolded, within the opulent Agnes Duchy's guest reception room. The grand dining hall stood ready, its tables meticulously set, as an older gentleman with spectacles observed the empty space. The Duke of Agnes strides through an opulent hallway, an attendant following close behind, his presence commanding the space. He pauses, observing a grand painting, a thoughtful hum escaping him as he notes the unexpected quietness of the estate. Suddenly, a vibrant red-haired woman, Chion, bows deeply before him, offering a formal greeting, but the Duke's tone is sharp, questioning her late arrival. She apologizes, explaining her caution to avoid causing trouble, yet the Duke's internal thoughts betray his skepticism, even as Chion expresses her gladness to finally see him. His mind drifts to a past memory, recalling an invitation for dinner, a distinguished guest he hadn't yet checked on, and a polite thank you. A stern expression settles on his face as he concludes his internal musings, a single word echoing his distrust. Chion's voice cuts through the silence, her words laced with a subtle challenge, asking if he enjoyed himself while she was away, to which he feigns concern, wondering how she could suggest such a thing. He considers her words, a knowing look in his eyes, his thoughts turning to the question of trust. Her composure finally breaks, her voice rising in accusation, questioning his integrity and demanding to know his true purpose for being there. Her words cut deep, a reminder of his past, as the Duke internally seethes, this lowly bastard? Even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day. He clenches his jaw, the sound of grinding teeth barely audible, as he considers her next pointed question. He can use mana? A moment of stunned silence hangs in the air, then a quiet, almost dismissive, goodness escapes him. As he quickly recovers his composure, offering a curt apology. I'm sorry, Chion. I had forgotten about you. He watches her, the woman known as Jocelyn Jean Rebecca, seated elegantly before him, and his thoughts betray his true feelings. I wonder what kind of fun she's planning this time. A blue-haired lady bows deeply, offering a formal greeting to the assembled nobles. Her presence immediately creates a stir, with Chion and Duke Agnes exchanging concerned glances, wondering about the reason for her unexpected arrival. Noticing their troubled expressions, the blue-haired lady inquires about their discomfort, then quickly remembers the recent news of Duke Agnes's child single-handedly defeating 3 centurions. Chion, unable to contain her curiosity, directly asks if the extraordinary rumor is true. Duke Agnes, his brow furrowed with displeasure, sharply commands Chion to cease her questioning. A heavy thud echoes, betraying the Duke's inner turmoil and agitation. The blue-haired lady attempts to calm the situation, cautioning Chion against spreading unverified stories. Yet, Chion persists, openly doubting how the Duke's daughter, having lost an arm, could possibly have overcome 3 centurions. The noblewoman, Chion, continues her persistent questioning, finding it hard to believe the rumors about the Duke's child. Joshua Sanders, standing nearby, hears her words, a low growl escaping him as he internally dismisses her as a lowly stable boy. Duke Agnes, attempting to quell the rising tension, turns to his son, asking him to confirm that the rumors are nothing more than idle gossip. He reminds Joshua of their family's standing, emphasizing that their reputation in the empire is paramount, and that a single misstep could have dire consequences. Joshua, understanding the gravity of his father's words, simply acknowledges the command. The Duke continues, his voice firm, pointing out that Joshua is still young and not yet officially recognized as a knight, making these rumors particularly damaging. He then shifts his focus to Joshua's future, reminding him of his impending journey to the capital and questioning if his natural talent might actually be a hindrance to his development. Joshua confirms that the rumors are indeed widespread, having heard them himself. The Duke, considering this, proposes a solution, a public competition where Joshua can prove his strength against an appropriate knight. He concludes, his gaze unwavering, that Joshua must simply compete to silence the persistent gossip. Still unconvinced by the rumors of Joshua's strength, Chion muses that if he truly possessed such power, he would be at least at a certain level, suggesting the Duke must be hiding him out of shame. Joshua, hearing her doubts, simply states that she would be disappointed if she saw it in person. The Duke then addresses Joshua, confirming he has received a report, though it made no mention of any confusion. Joshua, with a confident smirk, affirms that the report speaks the truth. Chion, however, remains unconvinced, questioning Joshua's true identity and speculating that he must be a lady of the Duke's kept secret. At the insinuation, Joshua's composure shatters, his face contorting in a furious snarl as he exclaims, "What? These bastards?" His anger flares, unable to tolerate such an insult to Lady Vanessa. He clarifies, realizing the Duke's words were not about Lady Vanessa, but Lady Lucia. As Chion expresses her surprise, the Duke confirms, stating that Lucia is his broken wife. He then lays out his proposition, asking Joshua to disregard her status and take her in as a concubine. Joshua firmly rejects the idea, declaring that Lady Lucia is a respectable member of the Duke's household and not an object for bargaining. His expression hardens as he continues, viewing the Duke's actions as both an insult and a disgrace to his own name. With unwavering resolve, he states that if his actions are deemed a disgrace, then he will become that disgrace himself. As Joshua turns to leave, the Duke warns him that there will be a price to pay, to which he simply replies, "Name it, Duke." The Duke's voice echoes, announcing a spar between Cain and the young knight Joshua, his words carrying a clear challenge. Joshua's eyes widen in surprise, uttering a bewildered, "Excuse me?" Still reeling from the Duke's audacious proposal, he thinks of the insult to Lady Lucia, a stable boy who cleans up crap all day. The Duke, however, remains unperturbed, continuing to speak as if Joshua's defiance is merely a minor inconvenience. Joshua's jaw tightens, his anger simmering beneath the surface. He refuses to be treated as a mere pebble to be kicked around. The Duke's expression shifts, a hint of surprise crossing his face at Joshua's unwavering resolve. As if on cue, a young knight named Cain steps forward, his eyes glowing with an intense electric blue light, prompting a gasp of disbelief from the Duke. Joshua watches him, his own determination hardening. A chilling truth about Cain is revealed. When mana is injected into him, he will feel its curse, acting like a poison that will kill him within 10 days. Joshua understands the gravity of the situation, recognizing the Duke's cruel intentions behind this spar. Joshua, still processing the Duke's cruel intentions, challenges him directly, asking if he truly plans to spar against him personally. A scoff escapes him as he questions the Duke's intentions, finding the notion of a direct fight laughable. In his mind, Joshua asserts his past life's prowess as the greatest spear knight and master swordsman, believing he has no reason to fight the Duke, as he is destined to become the greatest spear knight and king himself. He then demands that if the Duke truly wishes to test him, he should do so properly, with his own sword. Ignoring the direct challenge, the Duke simply instructs the two young men, Joshua and Cain, to introduce themselves to each other. Cain, the young boy, offers a simple, polite greeting. Joshua, observing the boy, then introduces himself as Joshua Sanders, the Duke's knight. He follows this with a formal bow, greeting the Duke. The Duke remarks on Joshua's unexpected adherence to etiquette, noting his proficiency in such matters. Duke Agnes dismisses the idea of a direct spar, stating, "My lord, you mustn't do such pointless," while Joshua explains to Cain that he just learned from watching. Cain, in turn, tells the Duke, "I am told that you are quite skilled." The Duke clarifies his intent, saying, he wants to personally examine my abilities and determine my rank. Joshua considers the Duke's words, understanding the true intent behind the challenge. The Duke then asks Cain, "Ready?" To which Cain eagerly replies, "Yes, please." Duke Agnes gives his permission. "Give the order whenever you wish." Cain, "I think you're already anticipating something." He then clarifies, Joshua's sparring opponent is not you. The location of the impending spar is revealed. It is Babel. A figure strides through a grand hall, his footsteps echoing softly. A smirk plays on his lips as he declares, "I, the older brother, will do my best for my sibling." The memory continues, "This older brother really cherishes you." The words echoing in Joshua's mind, his face hardening with resolve as blue particles shimmer around him. "Babel, you bastard." Joshua stands in a dark, ethereal space, his form silhouetted against the void, as a voice dismisses him, declaring he is not worthy of their words. Duke Agnes watches intently, his expression stern, reflecting on the consequences of neglecting one's training. Joshua stands ready in a vast, open training ground, his spear held loosely, having no intention of following the Duke's implied advice. Cain, spear in hand, addresses Joshua with a determined look, apologizing for the spectacle they are about to create. He prepares to demonstrate his skill, asserting that nobody told him to show off, but he will do so properly. With a powerful thrust, Cain unleashes a spear technique, the force of his movement creating a visible shockwave, showcasing his impressive showmanship. Duke Agnes and Cain both react with surprise, their eyes widening at an unexpected turn of events. Joshua stands calmly, his spear now held in a different, more refined stance, implying that this is what he truly meant by proper technique. He stands silently as Lady Chion, her voice sharp with disbelief, questions the situation, exclaiming that what she's hearing cannot be true. The Duke, his expression stern, dismisses her protests, insisting that this is no laughing matter, while Cain, looking downcast, mutters about what they intend to do. Turning his gaze to Joshua, the Duke seeks confirmation, asking if he is truly certain of his words. Joshua meets his gaze with unwavering resolve, leaving the Duke to ponder the implications of his confidence, a silent moment passing between them. Finally, the Duke gives his assent, instructing them to take their seats, and Joshua confirms his understanding. Before they proceed, the Duke issues a crucial warning, emphasizing that Babel must not use mana. Cain, however, dismisses the concern with a confident retort, assuring him there's nothing to worry about. As the scene unfolds, Earl Joshua observes the exchange, his thoughts remaining a mystery. As he stands ready, a scoff escapes Cain, who dismisses him as nothing more than a stable boy, useless and incapable of anything. Ignoring the taunt, the Duke's stern voice cuts through the air, commanding the match to begin. In a flash, Cain launches himself forward, a blur of motion as he initiates his assault. His rapid strikes meet with a resounding impact, clashing against his opponent's defenses. But before he can press his advantage, a sudden counterattack sends him reeling, his head snapping back from the unexpected force. A purple aura erupts around him as he stumbles backward, unable to withstand the blow. Lying defeated on the ground, Cain still manages a defiant glare, insisting his opponent's efforts are futile. Joshua's eyes glow with a keen blue light, observing that despite his rank, Cain's speed remains formidable. He moves with blinding speed, parrying the incoming strike, sending his opponent recoiling with a sharp flinch. Before the other can recover, a powerful kick connects, driving the air from his lungs. The defeated fighter can only stare in disbelief, his mind reeling at the thought that this lowly, stable boy could possess such power, even using mana. Another swift strike lands, sending him sprawling backward with a grunt of pain. The victor simply observes, a quiet HM, escaping him as he takes in the scene. Despite his clear defeat, Cain, now referred to as Babel, refuses to yield, declaring the fight far from over. He maintains his distance, a defiant stance suggesting he believes he can hold out indefinitely. With a surge of blue energy around his hand, Babel challenges his opponent to stay where he belongs, convinced he cannot maintain the distance forever. But before the fight can escalate further, Duke Agnes's commanding voice cuts through the air, ordering Babel to stop. Cain's defiance is met with a swift, powerful counter as Joshua lunges forward, his form wreathed in a brilliant blue aura. Meanwhile, Duke Agnes watches intently, his expression unreadable as a faint blue glow emanates from the young boy. Joshua's attack connects with brutal force, sending Cain sprawling. Yet, even as he falls, Cain's own mana flares, a defiant blue light surrounding him as he prepares to strike back. From the sidelines, a blonde noble watches in utter disbelief, his eyes wide with shock at the sight of mana from a mere stable boy. Cain lies defeated on the ground, the noble's disdainful gaze fixed upon him, questioning how such a lowly bastard could possess such power. Before the conflict can escalate further, Duke Agnes steps in, firmly grasping Cain's shoulder to prevent him from continuing. Despite the Duke's intervention, Cain struggles, his body still radiating blue mana, refusing to accept his defeat or the limitations placed upon him. With unwavering conviction, he declares his true ambition, to become the rightful successor of the duchy, a power destined to dominate the empire. Joshua's mind races, unable to comprehend the audacity of the stable boy, Cain, who dares to challenge him despite his humble origins. The realization hits him, the boy is capable of wielding mana. As Cain lunges forward, enveloped in a vibrant blue aura, Duke Agnes attempts to intervene, urging Joshua to cease the pointless confrontation. Undeterred, Cain screams his ambition, declaring his intent to consume the duchy as he closes the distance. Before Cain's attack can land, Joshua delivers a swift counter, sending the boy reeling back with a pained cry, just as Duke Agnes forcefully commands them to stop, his hand glowing with protective energy. The force of Joshua's strike sends Cain hurtling through the air, a trail of blue mana dissipating behind him. From the sidelines, Shion watches the brutal display, her expression etched with shock and concern. Duke Agnes, now radiating a powerful red aura, turns his stern gaze to Joshua, issuing a grave warning not to interfere further. Joshua meets the Duke's gaze, his own blue mana still subtly flaring around him, a silent defiance in his eyes. He stands silently, his presence commanding attention as a voice echoes, questioning the impossible, mana at such a young age. The man beside him, observing with a knowing gaze, explains that such a phenomenon occurs only once every few hundred years, then turns to an unseen chiffon, asking if this display is sufficient, assuring them of his patience. He continues, admitting he has never witnessed mana quite like this before, concluding that what they just saw was undeniably a manifestation of raw magical energy. The man with glasses elaborates, stating that while controlling such a vast amount of mana is uncommon, it is a phenomenon intimately familiar within the duchy itself. Elsewhere, Cain, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief, wonders aloud if the child truly possesses mana, while Shion, standing beside him, expresses surprise that he was capable of such an amazing feat. As Joshua walks away, Cain calls out his name, muttering to himself that even if he is just a stable boy, he finds him intriguing. Duke Agnes, now present, listens as the man with glasses urgently points out the immense mana displayed, addressing him directly. The Duke, however, cuts him off with a stern, decisive word. Joshua, understanding the unspoken command, simply responds with quiet affirmation. He stands before the Duke, who issues a quiet command. So come to my room tonight. The Duke adds, and we'll never mention this incident to my room again, as Joshua silently acknowledges the instruction. Meanwhile, Kane seethes, unable to comprehend. This lowly bastard? Even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day, he then realizes with a shock, he can use mana? He bows respectfully, confirming, I understand. I will see you there, Sir Duke Agnes. Later, the Agnes Duchy's guest room awaits. Elsewhere, the young boy struggles against the guard, shouting, Cock, this isn't fair. I am always the one who has to clean up your mess. The guard attempts to calm him, reminding him, Sir, please calm down. You are losing your dignity. Chion, however, is filled with excitement, marveling. Isn't it amazing? He's only a 10-year-old to be a knight. Her enthusiasm bubbles over. Isn't this the best? She turns to Joshua, declaring, Anyway, I've decided. He looks at her, asking, Decided? She beams. I'm going to be a knight. Her thoughts drift, but it's more like Joshua, you're my. Joshua's grip tightens on the stable boy's collar, his expression a mask of simmering fury. A woman's voice cuts through the tension, questioning his actions. Young master, that again? You're still doing that? You're still bullying the stable boy. As Kane shrinks back, a thought flashes through his mind. Young master babble lost to the Duke. The woman's eyes widen in disbelief, her composure shattering at the revelation. With a sudden, frantic movement, she turns and flees through the grand library, a distressed sound escaping her. Meanwhile, Joshua walks away from the scene, the Duke accompanying him, their backs to the chaos. A look of disbelief crosses Chion's face as she questions if this is yet another young master recognized for his talent by the Duke, a talent she feels she lacks. Turning to Joshua, she asks what the Duke said, as it seems he will take responsibility for the city. Joshua's thoughts race, wondering if this refers to Agnes, and if he was truly recognized for his talent. Chion continues, speculating that he must want to leave to preserve his pride, and insists they must leave the capital immediately. Joshua calmly interjects, asking her not to misunderstand. Chion looks at him, her expression still wary, and asks what he means. She dismisses it as merely an illusion, but acknowledges the Duke likely knows the truth, reminding Joshua of his youth. Joshua then reveals that not only the Duke, but his two older brothers, and even he himself, had done it with their own hands. Meanwhile, in a different location, Kane contemplates the situation, muttering that even if it wasn't mana, he still made his own mana, questioning if this was a test. A fleeting image of Joshua in battle armor flashes. As a young boy, Kane seethes with frustration, determined to prove he's more than just a stable boy who cleans up after others. Looking up at the vastness, Joshua ponders the implications of what he's just heard, a quiet, is that so, escaping his lips. Meanwhile, Chion watches on, her expression a mix of concern and apprehension. Kane, still lost in thought, questions if he made a mistake by not contacting his uncle for this test, a moment that marks the return of the young master. Joshua extends a hand, a faint glow emanating from his gauntlet, as if reaching for something unseen. Now looking up, Kane recognizes him, inviting Joshua inside. Duke Agnes turns, his gaze sharp, as Kane steps into the grand hall. The young boy bows respectfully, offering his greetings to the Duke. The Duke, however, eyes him with suspicion, demanding to know his identity. As the Duke's question hangs in the air, a single, resolute declaration forms on the young man's lips. Kneeling before the imposing figure, he states, I am Joshua von Agnes. A low HM escapes the Duke, his mind racing with disbelief. This lowly stable boy, who cleans up waste all day, claims to wield mana? The young man's gaze remains steady, a silent acknowledgement that a significant amount of time has indeed passed since their last encounter. Looking up at the Duke, he asks, Do you hate me? The Duke's expression softens slightly as he replies, I do not hate you. In a situation like this, I am wary of the royal castle. You wouldn't expect too much from me. Undeterred by the Duke's caution, the young man makes a bold statement. I have one request. The Duke's brow furrows in surprise, inquiring, What is it? His thoughts then drift to the implications of such a claim, musing, that is unheard of. A deceptive aroma wouldn't mean anything in a common royal environment. He looks up at the Duke, his expression earnest, as he reiterates his request to be taken to the city. The Duke, however, remains unconvinced, his gaze sharp as he questions the boy's true intentions. He simply affirms his desire, prompting the Duke to ask why he believes such a journey is necessary. The boy explains that there are things he must confirm, things he can only do in the city, and that he needs to meet the Duke's son, Joshua. Agnes's expression darkens, the mention of his son clearly unsettling him. The boy continues, stating that the other reason he needs to go is because he doesn't want to let the Duke go, a cryptic remark that only deepens the mystery. He then adds that if he were able to suppress the Duke's mana, he would do so without hesitation, even if it meant doing it one more time. The Duke's eyes narrow further, his suspicion growing as he considers the boy's audacious claims and strange intentions. He finally asks if the boy is implying that he would do something to Joshua, his voice laced with a dangerous edge. Duke Agnes's gaze remained fixed on the young man before him, who now spoke with an unexpected resolve, declaring that he had thought the Duke would not disappoint him. A flicker of irritation crossed the Duke's face, wondering what further absurdity he was about to hear. Joshua, sensing the Duke's skepticism, knew exactly what thoughts were running through his mind. He then revealed his intention to be sent to the Royal Academy. The Royal Academy, a prestigious institution, mandated a 5-year study period for noble children, typically from ages 10 to 15. Talented individuals, like Babel, could even graduate early, as the academy system was designed to guide noble offspring through their formative years. Its ultimate purpose was to ensure the nobles' loyalty to the crown and to cultivate exceptional talents for the empire. The Duke's thoughts returned to Joshua's declaration, finding it utterly baffling that he, of all people, would propose attending the academy as a mere student. Joshua, however, saw it as an unparalleled chance for personal growth and learning, a way to step out from under the shadow of one of the empire's great dukes. But Duke Agnes dismisses Joshua's concern, assuring him that everything is fine, but Joshua questions the Duke's casual tone. The Duke continues, explaining that while Joshua may be a master of swords, he still has much to learn. Joshua then points towards a rack of weapons, making his choice clear. Agnes reacts with surprise, questioning his choice of spears, as a narration explains that he had expected Joshua to choose a sword, the traditional weapon of the Duke's family, but he opted for a spear instead. With a grinding sound, Joshua begins his training, a vibrant blue aura flaring around him as he moves with incredible speed, his spear a blur of motion. The Duke watches, barely able to track his movements, remarking on how difficult it is to even see him. Joshua continues his relentless practice, the Duke feeling as though a significant amount of time has passed, lost in the sheer intensity of the display. With glowing blue eyes and a fierce resolve, Joshua declares that he will destroy anyone who stands in his way, using only his spear. He reaffirms his unwavering loyalty, stating that even if his adversaries are among the 9 greats, he is a part of his lord. Still reeling from the display of power, the Duke warns that such raw force could destroy him, but Joshua, unwavering, challenges him to personally witness the true might of a spear. The Duke's eyes widen, realizing the implications of such a declaration. With a stern gaze, he declares his intention to test the young man, for Agnes is indeed one of the 9 stars, a fact Joshua acknowledges with a confident smirk, seeing this as a prime opportunity. Later, in a more formal setting, Joshua directly asks for help, but the Duke, seated regally with Cheon observing, presents a condition, which Joshua eagerly accepts. The Duke clarifies, stating that if Joshua passes his upcoming test, he will then be permitted to wield a spear. He reiterates the terms, confirming that success in the trial will grant Joshua the right to use his chosen weapon. And furthermore, the Duke adds, he will also grant the young man's request. Joshua, his expression thoughtful, then reveals his own condition, that the Duke will accept his commands. He simply affirms his understanding. There is no way he would back down, for he has no intention of hiding his true skills. A faint, ethereal glow begins to emanate, mana swirling with subtle power. The energy coalesces into a shimmering orb, as Cheon's voice cuts through the air, cautioning the Duke against such pointless endeavors. Duke Agnes simply acknowledges the situation, while Cain, the young boy, greets his uncle, asking after his well-being. The Duke assures him of his comfort, inviting him to stay. Cheon, however, finds Joshua's demands quite impudent, openly stating her disapproval of his behavior towards the Duke. Despite her outward annoyance, she harbors a hidden agenda, intending to ask her uncle for a favor. A faint, ethereal light emanates from a circular device, accompanied by a low, grinding hum. A young boy, Joshua, steps through a grand doorway, his footsteps echoing softly in the vast space. He finds himself in a cavernous, dimly lit chamber, its metallic surfaces etched with glowing lines that pulse with an unseen energy. His eyes widen slightly, a thought forming in his mind about the legendary Spear Knight, a figure whose prowess he deeply admires. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him, and he turns to see a blonde-haired man approaching. The man stands before him, a challenging glint in his eye, while another figure in a dark suit observes from nearby. Joshua listens intently as the blonde man speaks. A fierce, almost desperate intensity radiates from the blonde man, his aura flaring with a vibrant purple as he demands another battle. The mysterious blue energy pulses, radiating an immense power that feels like a mission for battle, a challenge never before encountered. He looks directly into the glowing abyss, a confident smile gracing his lips as he asks, "Are you confident?" Far away, the grand spires of the Avalon Empire's imperial palace rise majestically, a testament to its power and history. Within its opulent halls, a golden dragon statue stands guard, as a low, knowing chuckle echoes through the chamber. A figure kneels before a grand throne, asking, "So, it is all true?" The blonde knight, his expression stern, continues, "Another child born with the blood of a great hero has become a star." He speaks of the Avalon Emperor's imperial knight, Sir Cain, who has appeared from the Avalon Empire again. Cain confirms, "Yes, that is correct," as Duke Agnes listens intently from his throne. Joshua's brow furrows, a deep unease settling over him as he considers the implications of the news, thinking, "That is, it is not my child." Meanwhile, in the opulent halls of the imperial palace, Duke Agnes questions the report, his voice sharp with disbelief. "What? An illegitimate child?" Sir Cain continues, relaying the rumors of the child's origins, They say that he is the child of the Duke's maid at the Duke's. A heavy thud echoes through the chamber as the Duke's fist clenches, his expression darkening. He asserts the importance of the true princes to the Empire, declaring them the treasures of the Empire, while Cain expresses a quiet curiosity. I'm really curious. Agnes vehemently dismisses the notion that they are merely treasures of the world, his conviction unwavering. No. The Duke then speaks of his own rigorous standards, forged through countless battles, adding, he's a man of battle forged. Cain notes the Emperor's high regard for the princes, stating, the Emperor is valuing them highly. He elaborates on the current prince's talents, attributing the Emperor's high expectations to his own legendary status as a master, concluding that his standards are extremely high. His reaction to the news of the illegitimate child has become excessive. Joshua's mind races, grappling with the implications. Meanwhile, Sir Cain considers the Duke's demeanor, doubting that a mere child's words could truly sway a man of his standing. He then reveals a startling rumor to the kneeling Duke Agnes, that the child in question is actually the Emperor's son, an illegitimate heir. Joshua, still processing the information, learns that the child is only 9 years old. Sir Cain admits the rumor has circulated for some time, but he never truly believed it until now, finding the revelation unbelievable and impossible. Duke Agnes, still kneeling, confirms he is there at Sir Cain's request. Joshua reflects on the child's potential, considering that he might be the only one capable of reaching the level of a great hero. Sir Cain continues, explaining that the child has been like this since birth, possessing such power from the age of 9, a thought that sends shivers down his spine. He then wonders if the Emperor will be able to personally test the child, given the Emperor's strict standards. He continues, emphasizing that this situation requires immediate intervention, and expresses his personal desire to handle it. Kneeling before them, Duke Agnes regretfully explains that he is unable to do so, bound by the Emperor's direct orders which prevent him from seizing such an opportunity. However, Joshua interjects, instructing them to send a few trusted individuals to keep a close watch on the child. He explains that an emperor who lacks the keen eye for spotting true talent would be a failure, reminding them that the ability to recognize such potential is a fundamental part of their current positions. As the conversation shifts to the child's potential, a vivid image flashes, showing a young figure, surrounded by a vibrant blue aura, charging forward with a sword. The blue energy intensifies around the blade, striking with immense force. The attack continues, the sword glowing brightly as it cuts through the air. Moving with impossible speed, the figure leaves a trail of shimmering blue light in its wake. A final, powerful strike lands, accompanied by a guttural cry of impact. Joshua observes the young boy, a flicker of concern crossing his features as he considers the mana within him, yet still so weak. But the boy, Cain, clenches his fists, a defiant grin spreading across his face, convinced he can still win, dismissing Joshua's skill as mere luck. Joshua moves with blinding speed, intending to show him the foolishness of his words, his martial arts training a blur of motion. But before the attack can land, Cain's body flares with an unexpected surge of power, his mana increasing dramatically as a sacrifice, leaving Joshua stunned. With a powerful clench, the boy unleashes a vibrant blue aura, the raw energy radiating from him. The blue energy expands rapidly, an explosive burst of pure power. It swirls and condenses, forming a dense, formidable vortex around him. Joshua recoils, a gasp escaping him, realizing the boy has transferred mana directly into his own body. With a final, explosive surge, Cain unleashes a concentrated blast of blue energy. Joshua Sanders stares, incredulous, at the display of power, unable to comprehend how such a lowly stable boy could wield mana. A cold realization washes over him, as he grapples with the impossible truth: Cain can use mana. Meanwhile, Cain's power surges, his eyes glowing with an intense blue light, as he calls out Joshua's name, his strength growing even further. He stands firm, a defiant challenge in his voice, reminding Joshua of the humiliation of being defeated by someone he so easily dismissed. Joshua's expression hardens, a chilling threat escaping his lips. If he couldn't end him here, he would find a way to do so elsewhere. Cain, his blue eyes still glowing, reveals the deep-seated reason for his power. It is the only thing he could rely on since his brother's name was insulted. Joshua, seizing him by the collar, declares that he will let this defiance pass just this once. His eyes now burning with a fierce red glow, Joshua delivers a final, chilling warning about the consequences if Cain's attitude doesn't change. Despite the threat, Cain's blue eyes still hold a spark of defiance, as he swallows hard, a silent promise hanging in the air. He muses on the subtle differences between them, a mere 10 centimeters in height, yet a chasm in power. Meanwhile, Joshua clenches his jaw, a frustrated sigh escaping him as he grapples with the unexpected turn of events. The next morning dawns over the estate of Duke Agnes Rucky, its towering structure reaching towards the clear sky. Back in his room, Cain lets out a weary groan, feeling the drain of having used too much mana without proper reason. He reflects on his own mana control, acknowledging it's far inferior to Joshua's, who is also a fully grown man. Still, the sheer amount of mana Joshua possesses is something he can't quite grasp. When a familiar voice cuts through his thoughts, asking if someone needs help, as Chion arrives, prompting him to note her early presence. Her concern quickly turns to surprise, however, as she spots Joshua, recognizing him instantly. A young man, his back to the viewer, introduces himself as Kane, stating his arrival from the front lines. Facing him, a woman with vibrant red hair expresses her surprise, remarking on his youth despite hearing he was injured. She observes his troubled expression, suggesting he has much on his mind, and proposing they talk. As she leans in, ready to ask a question, Kane abruptly cuts her off. His eyes narrowed in annoyance, he dismisses her with a harsh command. Suddenly, the room's door bursts open, the sound echoing loudly. The red-haired woman turns sharply, her attention drawn to the unexpected entrance. A look of surprise and slight irritation crosses her face as she registers the new presence. Stepping confidently into the room, Joshua Sanders makes his entrance, his footsteps firm. Joshua's abrupt entrance leaves Kane momentarily stunned, his mind reeling at the audacity of this stable boy who dares to interrupt him. He turns away, a scoff escaping him as he considers Chion's earlier words, wondering if she truly comprehends the gravity of his presence. His teeth grind together in frustration as he whirls back to face the newcomer, demanding to know why he hasn't left as instructed. Joshua, however, remains resolute, addressing him respectfully before stating his intention to accompany him, sensing his preoccupation. Kane's expression shifts to a mocking smirk, apologizing with feigned sincerity for mistaking Joshua for someone else. Undeterred, Joshua steps forward, insisting there's something crucial he needs to convey to his commander. He clarifies his confusion, unable to grasp the reason behind the desire to meet with the individual in question. Kane, his gaze sharp and unwavering, simply commands Joshua to follow him. Kane's face contorts in a furious snarl, his eyes burning with disbelief as he rails against the notion that a mere stable boy could possess such power, the sound of his teeth grinding echoing his rage. He can hardly comprehend that Joshua Sanders, whom he considers lowly, could possibly wield mana. Beside him, Duke Agnes steps forward, attempting to intercede, urging his lord to reconsider such a pointless outburst. Within the grand courtyard of a sprawling estate, a place known to house the most influential noble families, Joshua Sanders walks alongside Duke Agnes. Their path is soon intercepted by a group of knights and nobles, led by Sir Kane, who questions the Duke's sudden disappearance, wondering if their actions have drawn unwanted attention. Lady Chion then interjects, her gaze fixed on Joshua, complaining that he has been present for some time without contributing, and questioning why he hasn't yet transferred to another post. Young Kane, the stable boy, then adds his voice, recalling that Joshua was the cause of the Duke's past perilous situations, prompting the Duke to firmly declare that the legendary Spear Knight is not a mere plaything. Sir Kane dismisses Joshua's past efforts with a sneer, remarking that he merely swept up the trash. The conversation shifts to the broader order of knights, with a lingering question hanging in the air about Joshua's fate. He stares forward, a question echoing in his mind. Why is he even here? As he walks alongside the young boy, Kane, he declares his presence for today's training. His gaze sharpens, a resolute promise forming on his lips. He will help them. Standing before the assembled group, the man introduces himself formally, declaring, "I am in charge of your training today. My name is Joshua von Agnes." His words hang in the air, leaving Duke Agnes, Kane, and another knight visibly stunned, their expressions a mixture of surprise and disbelief. From behind, his voice carries the weight of expectation, reminding them that as the successor of Duke Agnes, he must be the one to make the Imperial Knights shine. Before the assembled knights and nobles, including Sir Kane and Lady Chion, he emphasizes that for that reason, their honor and skills are the most important. With an intense, unwavering gaze, he commands everyone to look at him. Nearby, Duke Agnes questions Sir Kane, asking if he is serious or merely playing around. A knight, his face contorted in disdain, glares down at Kane, scoffing at the stable boy's lowly status. But Joshua, stepping forward, interrupts the confrontation, his voice cutting through the tension as he questions the knight's surprise. He asks if the knight truly believes Kane is incapable of using mana. With a firm grip, Joshua plants the butt of his spear into the ground, his presence commanding attention as he walks away from the stunned group, leaving a palpable silence in his wake. He turns back to address the knight and Sir Kane, his gaze unwavering as he asks if they also doubt his words. Sir Kane flinches, caught off guard by the direct challenge, a surprised exclamation escaping his lips. The unnamed knight, his face now a mask of shock and anger, struggles to compose himself, his thoughts racing as he tries to process the unexpected turn of events. Joshua's eyes glow with an intense blue light, his expression resolute as he declares that he will not tolerate any knight who questions his authority or his judgment. Overwhelmed by Joshua's power, the knight collapses to his knees, bowing his head in submission and offering a desperate apology, begging for forgiveness. The knight's jaw tightens, a low growl escaping him as he seethes. This lowly bastard? Even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day. His fury mounts. "I will not forgive you, Duke," he vows, the thought of having to apologize to him, after what happened with his mother, an unbearable indignity. Standing tall, the young lord remains impassive. The knight continues, "But you have the opportunity that you yourself do not want. So why do you act like Lloyd and Gory? He challenges, a chilling realization dawning on him. Is the reason Lloyd and Gory aren't around? Facing Joshua, Kane presses, did the Earl beat them up? As he bows his head in reluctant understanding, the truth settles in. There is no other way to explain their sudden disappearance. Joshua's voice cuts through the tension, offering a stark choice. If you are able to beat me, then I will act as if nothing happened. Kane, aghast, tries to protest. My lord, you mustn't do such pointless. But his hand clenches, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He knew his only option was to fight, and if he performed well, there might be a chance for him. So Joshua gathered his mana, a vibrant blue aura flaring around him. With a swift, almost imperceptible motion, he spun, his spear a blur of motion, closing the distance in an instant. His opponent could only register the incredible speed, as Joshua's eyes glowed with fierce determination. Then, with a decisive first stance, he unleashed a devastating lightning slash, a torrent of blue energy erupting from his spear. Before Kane could react, a powerful kick connected, sending him reeling backward. The assault continued relentlessly, a flurry of spear strikes creating a shimmering blue wave that engulfed the Imperial Knight. Thrown violently to the ground, Kane landed with a painful impact, defeated. His mind reeled in disbelief, struggling to comprehend the sheer power of the mana he had just witnessed. Standing over his fallen opponent, Joshua's spear still crackling with energy, he delivered a stern warning. Listen to me well, judging by your appearance. He continues his stern warning, making it clear that any further challenge would result in their life being forfeited on the battlefield. With unwavering resolve, he reiterates his challenge, daring anyone who still harbored doubts about his abilities to come and test him again. Kane flinches, a gasp escaping him, but Joshua simply turns and begins to walk away. As he moves, his hand instinctively reaches for something at his side. A Centurion leader, caught off guard by his sudden appearance, reacts with a visible start. The 3rd Gen Centurion leader formally greets Earl Joshua, bowing deeply as he passes. He continues his path, passing a long line of kneeling Centurions, each offering their respectful greetings as he proceeds. Joshua walks past another standing guard, his presence commanding silent respect. Meanwhile, a blond man, glowing with a subtle aura, observes from afar, acknowledging that Joshua has truly met his expectations. He stands over the Centurion, who, despite his earlier defiance, now bows deeply, acknowledging the overwhelming power he just witnessed. Meanwhile, in Duke Agnes's guest room, Chion clutches a teddy bear, her expression one of deep sorrow. Back in the castle, a sharp retort escapes him, his eyes burning with an intense, almost furious light. Chion, her gaze distant, whispers a name, her thoughts consumed by the events unfolding around her. She watches a figure in the doorway, a knight whose presence brings a chilling declaration. The Imperial Knight's head will soon be at the duchy's. Later, she lies asleep in her bed, the teddy bear still clutched tightly in her arms. An attendant, concerned for her well-being, wonders aloud where she might have gone, and if she has eaten anything. She stirs, sharply telling him not to bother her, her voice laced with irritation. The attendant, frustrated by her defiance, reminds himself of the Duke's orders, realizing he momentarily forgot his duties. Still reeling from recent events, Chion defiantly reminds her attendant of his duties, but he insists that the Duke's orders take precedence. A sudden, sharp sound echoes as she recoils, overwhelmed by the weight of the situation. Meanwhile, a report has been delivered. In his office, Duke Agnes confronts Joshua Sanders, demanding to know if he truly executed a Centurion. As the young knight walks through the castle halls, he acknowledges the Duke's awareness of his actions. He doesn't deny the rumors, stating simply that he did what was necessary and feels no shame, as a knight of this world. The Duke, contemplating his words, admits he would have done the same, slicing the Centurion with his own blade. However, he finds it unfortunate, questioning if Joshua can truly control his emotions, or if he is merely a young man swayed by them. As Joshua sits, engrossed in documents, the Duke presses further, asking if he believes they are so different, a question that hangs heavy in the air. Joshua, still reflecting on his actions, admits the difficulty of controlling his artificial strength, which he uses merely to display his power. The Duke, however, counters that overwhelming power is precisely what's needed to force others into submission. Joshua's eyes glow with a fierce blue light as he clenches his fist, declaring his intent to ensure no one ever looks down on his mother again, and to show them the true power of the Agnes bloodline. The Duke considers this, acknowledging that he too had to prove himself as a Duke, and Joshua must do the same. He finds the young man's ambition quite natural. Shifting the conversation, the Duke tells Joshua to set aside their previous discussion for now, informing him that his time has come. Joshua listens intently as the Duke reminds him of the Imperial Knight Order, a topic he's already familiar with. With a determined expression, Joshua confirms his understanding, stating that his preparations will soon be complete. A golden lion emblem, intricately carved, gleams in the light. Elsewhere, Kane, an Imperial Knight, smiles with anticipation, already looking forward to what's to come. The Imperial Knight, Kane, surveys the scene with disdain, his thoughts on the C-rank knights from Agnes Duchy, who he believes possess no mana. He dismisses them further, considering one of them to be nothing more than a concubine. His expression tightens, a clear irritation surfacing at the suggestion that his own standing might be jeopardized by young Master Joshua. Turning sharply, he demands to know who dares to speak to him with such insolence. Meanwhile, the Imperial Knights stand in solemn formation, a stark reminder of the inherent differences between those born with mana and those without, as Joshua and the young boy stand before them. In a unified motion, the assembled knights, including Joshua, bow deeply, offering their respects to the Duke. Joshua lifts his gaze, a flicker of surprise crossing his features as a voice questions if he is indeed the young master. Cain observes him, a knowing glint in his eyes, understanding that the Duke has not forgotten their arrangement, and that the long-awaited moment has finally arrived. The vast courtyard stretches out, filled with the disciplined ranks of the Imperial Knights, bathed in the morning light. A grand procession of horses and riders makes its way towards the Imperial Palace, their hooves clattering rhythmically on the stone. Among them, Joshua, Cain, and the Duke approach the imposing entrance, their journey culminating at this significant location. His eyes widening, Joshua takes in the scene, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as he realizes the Imperial Palace has appeared in such a pivotal moment. Meanwhile, from within, a foot taps impatiently, a subtle sign of growing anticipation from an unseen observer. Cain, seated regally, watches the unfolding events with a knowing smirk, considering this spectacle one of the 9 stars. Elsewhere, another foot taps, this one belonging to a figure who speaks of the Agnes Duchy. The Duke looks on, his expression shifting to one of profound shock, barely able to utter a name. The air crackles with the revelation. It is the 4th prince, Caesar von Avalon. Caesar himself stands, his eyes glowing with an intense purple aura, unable to believe the significance of this very moment. A surge of vibrant blue mana erupts, slamming into the ground with a heavy thud, cracking the very earth beneath it. The powerful force continues its relentless push, sending a figure reeling backward through the air with a resounding crash. Joshua Sanders, overwhelmed by the sudden assault, collapses to his knees, the blue energy pressing him down as he murmurs an apology. "I am sorry, Sir Joker, please stop." But the apology is a mere feint, as he suddenly bursts forward, shattering the oppressive aura and moving with incredible speed. Before his opponent can react, Joshua's counterattack connects, sending the prince flying with a powerful impact, who shouts in disbelief, "Who are you to command me around?" Standing firm amidst the dissipating blue energy, Joshua watches the airborne figure, a knowing thought echoing in his mind. "I knew you would be here." Caesar von Avalon, still reeling from the unexpected blow, looks on with a surprised as he wonders, who would want to challenge the prince and the Duke, and harbor the newcomer? As the prince continues to fall, complaining about the situation, Joshua simply observes, hearing his opponent's frustrated words, "I couldn't stand them. Showing off just because they can use a little bit of mana." Caesar's thoughts simmer with contempt, unable to reconcile the stable boy he knows with the formidable presence before him. A mission from Madame Vanessa now complicates everything, adding another layer to his simmering frustration. As they move through the opulent halls, surrounded by watchful knights, the tension between Caesar and Joshua remains palpable. With Joshua internally processing Caesar's words, realizing the implications of the task ahead, Caesar then turns to him, a chilling smile playing on his lips, warning him to ensure that Joshua never gets called Joshua again. Later, a new figure, Cain, approaches Joshua directly, his voice laced with curiosity as he asks, "So, you're the Duke's new guy, Joshua?" "See." Cain's eyes glow with an intense blue light, his gaze fixed on the newcomer. Caesar, standing before the Duke, speaks with a sneer, his words cutting through the air, reminding everyone that he is the 4th prince, and Joshua is merely an upstart. Joshua, observing the exchange, finds the prince's arrogance ridiculous, knowing full well that under the empire's vast sky, only the emperor truly holds absolute power. He silently asserts that only the emperor commands all the knights of Avalon, not some self-proclaimed prince. Joshua questions why he should show any deference to the 4th prince, whose very identity and claim to power remain unclear. Caesar, with a smug expression, seems to sense Joshua's defiance, his gaze sharp and calculating. Surrounded by his knights, Caesar continues to mock Joshua, insinuating that the young man's position is a joke and that he is merely a child playing at being a brother to the Duke. Later, in a different hall, Chion confronts Joshua, her voice laced with accusation, demanding to know if he has fallen into a trap or gone mad, even threatening to use magic. Cain stands between them, his presence a silent challenge, as Joshua faces the combined scrutiny of the 2 nobles. Chion continues her verbal assault, accusing Joshua of covering up for a concubine, implying his actions are not for the Duke's benefit. A memory flashes through Cain's mind, a moment of disbelief at the stable boy's hidden power, a power he thought impossible for someone of such humble origins. Snapping back to the present, Cain stands before Joshua, his voice sharp with warning, questioning his audacity to stand so boldly before the prince. From a distance, Chion observes the unfolding scene, her thoughts turning to the unique power Joshua possesses, the power of the stars known only to Avalon. The Duke attempts to interject, his words trailing off as he tries to caution against further confrontation. Yet, Kane waves off the Duke's concern, seemingly unperturbed by Joshua's actions. His relaxed demeanor quickly shatters, however, as he turns back to Joshua, accusing him of mocking the imperial family. Joshua, maintaining his composure, addresses the assembled knights, reminding them of the rumors surrounding his lineage and asserting his unique position as the Duke's rightful successor. He then calmly reassures Kane, reiterating his innocence. Kane listens intently as Joshua's words echo, a silent challenge that true knights prove their worth through their own merit, not by birthright or title. He can hardly believe the audacity of this lowly bastard, who, despite being a mere stable boy, dares to challenge him. The thought grates on him, especially the idea that Joshua might possess mana, a power he shouldn't have. His frustration boils over as he considers the implications of such a claim, wondering if Joshua truly believes he can simply take what he desires. He clenches his fist, the anger evident in his posture, as he dismisses the notion of Joshua's succession as utterly pointless. With a sharp glare, he warns Joshua not to utter such foolishness again, asserting that the Duke's successor is a matter of bloodline, not mere ambition. Meanwhile, Kane, observing the exchange, reflects on Joshua's words, acknowledging the truth in his assertion that a knight's worth is proven by skill, not empty titles. He considers the implications of Joshua's philosophy, wondering if such a mindset could truly lead to a stronger knighthood. Duke Agnes, having listened intently, finally speaks, his voice carrying an air of authority as he declares his intention to assess Joshua himself. He emphasizes that Joshua's mana, a power he calls very peculiar, will be the focus of his evaluation. As the Duke prepares to personally assess Joshua's peculiar mana, the vast Agnes Duchy training hall fills with a tense assembly of nobles and knights, including Imperial Knight Kane and Prince Caesar von Avalon. They observe with varying degrees of skepticism and anticipation. Caesar, however, can barely contain his disdain, scoffing at the very idea of Joshua's claims. He dismisses Joshua as nothing more than a stable boy, unable to comprehend how such a lowly figure could possess mana. Ignoring the prince's outburst, the Duke steps forward, his voice firm as he declares his intention to personally assess the peculiar mana Joshua is said to wield. Joshua, now emanating a faint blue aura, meets the challenge with unwavering resolve. With a powerful surge of energy, he unleashes a spear technique, his form a blur of motion and brilliant blue light. Yet, just as quickly as it appeared, the devastating attack dissipates, revealed to be nothing more than a feint. He lunges forward, his spear a blur of motion, a vibrant blue aura flaring around him as he questions his own motives. The technique, honed over a long time, begins to take shape, a sharp, cutting sound accompanying his swift movement. With a powerful downward strike, he declares his intent to reveal the true strength of the Sanders family, the impact echoing through the hall. His form becomes a streak of blue, the spear a continuous, shimmering line of force. Executing the first form, Lightning Slash, he channels an immense amount of mana, creating a brilliant, focused attack. The rapid movement continues, leaving behind shimmering afterimages. Finally, the technique concludes, the residual blue energy slowly dissipating around him. Watching the display, Caesar's expression shifts to one of disbelief, uttering that it's incredible how Joshua maintains his footing with mere B-rank mana at such a young age. Meanwhile, Cheon offers a more nuanced observation, remarking that Joshua's mana is intrinsically linked to his swordsmanship. He unleashes the Lightning Slash, a technique unlike anything the observers have ever witnessed, as a brilliant blue mana aura erupts around him. The sheer intensity of the mana causes a ripple of concern among the onlookers, one of whom realizes that if this continues, the test will surely end prematurely. A cold sweat breaks out on Caesar's brow as he considers the implications, knowing that Lady Vanessa would be furious if he failed to manage the situation. Meanwhile, the spearman himself remains focused, his thoughts on the profound connection between mana control and the holy power that fuels his every move. With a guttural cry, he lunges forward, his spear a blur of blue light, striking with incredible speed. Caesar's eyes widen further, a desperate thought flashing through his mind that he might be faster, even at this distance. The technique culminates in a powerful thrust, the spear connecting with an unseen force, followed by a solid thud. As the momentum carries him forward, he takes a decisive step, grounding his stance with another powerful stride. Caesar von Avalon watches with growing alarm, exclaiming that Joshua has already surpassed B rank, fearing for the Earl's safety. Duke Agnes, however, remains composed, advising patience and observation. Caesar, still agitated, questions if the Duke had blocked the mana, worried that it's spiraling out of control and that their current methods won't suffice. Meanwhile, Joshua Sanders unleashes a torrent of blue mana, a powerful, swirling aura erupting around him with a whooshing sound. He kneels, pushing his limits as the energy intensifies, declaring that there's no point in worrying about the little mana he has left. The concentrated blue energy then bursts outwards, exploding in a brilliant starburst. From another vantage point, Cheon watches in shock, demanding to know what Joker is thinking and ordering him to stop immediately. The immense power coalesces into a focused, spherical burst, radiating raw energy. Even Duke Agnes, usually so stoic, lets out a surprised gasp at the display. A young noble, held back by Duke Agnes, sneers at the thought of a mere stable boy possessing such power, while Agnes urges him to reconsider his words. Suddenly, a deafening crash echoes through the air, as an unseen force erupts with explosive power. Responding instantly to the chaos, Cain charges forward, his spear poised for a decisive strike. Meanwhile, Duke Agnes recoils in disbelief, struggling to comprehend the overwhelming power unleashed before him. Not to be outdone, Caesar von Avalon unleashes a torrent of blue mana, charging into the fray with his sword glowing brightly. A blinding explosion of white and red energy erupts, as the combined forces collide with immense power. Through the chaotic energy, a red blade flashes, cutting swiftly through the air. The Imperial Knight's sword, Judah, slices through the air, absorbing every attack it encounters. Joshua recoils from the relentless assault, realizing that if this continues, he will be struck. His opponent presses the advantage, taunting him for wasting energy on defensive mana. A cruel smile spreads across Caesar's face as he explains the sword's power, how it absorbs every attack and always returns, confident that his plan is nearing completion. Joshua feels a strange sensation, as if his own body is no longer under his control, yet he answers a desperate call. With a sudden surge of power, he unleashes a devastating counterattack, crying out Lukia, as the energy explodes forward. The immense force of the blast rips through the space, leaving behind only a shimmering, ethereal glow. The story continues with the tale of the history's greatest spear knight. In a grand, yet damaged hall, the stage is set for a new challenge. With a powerful roar, Joshua Sanders unleashes a devastating strike, his spear glowing with fierce blue energy. Meanwhile, observing from a distance, Cain and Duke Agnes recognize the object of their attention as an artifact. Caesar von Avalon, his expression tense, reacts with a sharp intake of breath. Cain turns to Chion, questioning if she is ready for the test, to which she replies with a simple pardon. She then confirms her understanding, acknowledging the unique nature of a battle involving an artifact. Caesar, now directly confronting Joshua, demands to know how he managed to do it, launching a swift attack with his sword. But Joshua, with unwavering resolve, coolly declares that he has blocked the attack, his eyes sharp and focused. Caesar's fury burns, his body radiating a crimson aura as he struggles to comprehend the situation. This lowly bastard, even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day, he can use mana. With a resounding crash, Joshua effortlessly parries Caesar's divine attack, the impact echoing through the damaged hall, as Cain calls out, "Sir." The sheer ease with which Joshua blocked Caesar's powerful strike leaves the prince stunned, unable to process the impossible feat. Joshua's grip on his spear remains steady, a faint glow emanating from its tip, as he reflects on the encounter. He hadn't expected the Empire's best genius to be so underwhelming. Yet, as the red light intensifies around his spear, Joshua realizes the truth. This opponent is far more formidable than he initially appeared. Caesar, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, stands frozen, his crimson aura flickering with disbelief. According to his own wisdom and insight, Joshua now understands the true nature of the challenge before him. The second son of the Agnes Duchy, Joshua von Agnes, stands resolute. He ponders, had Caesar merely been a coward back then, or had he deliberately hidden his true power? Having just effortlessly blocked the attack, he has no intention of playing along with such foolish games. Meanwhile, the Imperial Knight, Cain, observes the scene, deciding he will put a stop to it, if they insist. Caesar, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, lets out a sharp TSK of frustration. Joshua, confident in his abilities, thinks to himself that he doesn't even want to show them his back. Cain, still processing the display of power, apologizes internally, admitting he has never seen such a thing before. The man they call Joshua stands opposite Caesar, a stark contrast in their demeanor, and Cain observes that this Joshua is truly different. Duke Agnes, concerned for the situation, asks if he is all right. Joshua, reflecting on his past life, recognizes the expression on the Duke's face, noting it's an expression he hasn't seen since his past life. Chion observes Joshua's growth, noting that as he has grown, he has become more powerful, and Joshua reassures them all, confirming that he is fine. Like never witnessed in the history of the Avalon Empire, the constant mana flowing out of the rift has multiplied immensely. This surge heralded the birth of the youngest mana user, a young boy wielding a glowing sword. The news of the youngest mana user's emergence spread quickly, and that very night, a crucial conference convened at the Agnes Duchy. The Duke, his expression grave, presided over the gathering. Within the grand conference room of the Agnes Duchy, numerous figures were assembled around a large table, including the young mana user himself. An Imperial Knight, his voice firm, urged everyone to refrain from any hostile action. Count Arnold, an Imperial Royal Knight, reported that the dispatched knights had returned unexpectedly, specifically mentioning the Golden Knights' reappearance. He confirmed the return of the Golden Knights from the Imperial Palace, recalling their past struggles against monstrous threats. The mana flowing from the rift had multiplied immensely, he explained, bringing with it a resurgence of particularly dangerous monsters. A new threat emerges from the mana-rich rifts, a black core monster, specifically identified as a Tynacris troll, whose very existence is a testament to the escalating danger. These formidable creatures are not only incredibly resilient, but their black core makes them nearly impervious to conventional attacks, demanding a strategic approach to combat. Meanwhile, in the Agnes Duchy, a tense meeting is underway, with one of the attending nobles expressing concern, wondering if the black core phenomenon is also affecting the orcs. Sir Kane, ever vigilant, assures the assembly that he will personally handle any such threats. The Duke, however, shifts the conversation, urging them to move on to the next critical topic. Kane then reveals the true gravity of the situation, explaining that the Imperial Royal Knights are currently reorganizing the 5 duchies. Duke Agnes, his expression grim, acknowledges the immense task of managing the 5 duchies. Kane, however, corrects him, clarifying that the reorganization is not merely about management, but about a deeper, more urgent matter. He then requests the Duke's full attention, asking him to save his words for the official report. Joshua clenches his jaw, a bitter thought echoing in his mind. These lowly bastards, even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day. Meanwhile, in the present, Imperial Knight Kane continues his report, explaining that the reorganization of the 5 duchies is an urgent matter, not merely a routine administrative task. He then adds, it's a big event for the Empire. A narration box clarifies that this reorganization had been planned for a long time. Joshua's mind drifts back to his own past, a memory surfacing as he thinks. Earl Joshua had completely forgotten about mana until recently. He recalls a conversation with Caesar von Avalon, who once told him, you said that you barely have any mana, right? So what if it is? You're still a knight. A narration box reveals this was a conversation from his past. Joshua's internal monologue continues, reflecting on his past self. I am a knight who possesses mana, but I'm not strong enough to use it. A narration box adds that he was a knight who couldn't use mana. Another memory surfaces, this time with Count Arnold, who, as Sir Armstrong, had once remarked, creatures aren't the only ones that can be corrupted by demonic magic. The flashback intensifies, showing Joshua in a dynamic pose, his spear cutting through the air, surrounded by swirling blue energy, a testament to his past struggles and efforts. A narration box explains that Joshua's spear was imbued with magic, and that in addition, the mana Joshua was using was similar to a spear. Another box clarifies that his mana was similar to a spear. Back in the present, Joshua's expression is troubled as he thinks. He can't think. The aura I felt from him was a blow on his mana, similar to demonic magic. As the meeting progresses, a voice from the assembly questions, however, isn't it dangerous to use dark mana and demonic beings? The imperial family doesn't look upon them favorably. Duke Agnes, his expression stern, responds, Duke Agnes is not one to be swayed by such trivial matters. Shouldn't he be the one to decide? Another noble, a man with silver-gray hair, interjects, first, I think we need to separate Earl Cromwell from the duchy. Joshua, listening intently, suddenly rises from his seat, his eyes narrowing as he processes the implications of their words. His abrupt movement causes a ripple of unease, making several attendees flinch as he stands tall above the seated figures. Later, standing by a grand window with Kane, Joshua muses, creatures? The silver-haired noble from earlier approaches, asking, what did you just say? Joshua turns to him, his expression serious. You should be able to tell. I believe I've seen a creature. He continues, his thoughts drifting to the implications of such beings. If you go up against me, you won't win, right? This lowly bastard? Even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day. He clenches his jaw, a furious thought consuming him. This lowly bastard, even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day, can use mana? If this bastard's power truly belongs to him, he knows he'll be taking a huge risk. From across the room, the fourth prince, Caesar, questions his words, asking what he means by creature, and if he's implying that the Earl Cromwell is one. As Caesar speaks, a surge of dark blue mana erupts from Joshua, crackling with raw energy, his eyes glowing with an intense, almost feral light. The Imperial Knight, Kane, quickly intervenes, his voice firm as he reminds Joshua that his words are being heard by Earl Joshua. The other nobles in the assembly murmur amongst themselves, their faces etched with shock and concern, as they question the implications of Joshua's outburst and the potential for a mana incident. From his throne, Duke Agnes raises a hand, his voice booming with authority, commanding both of them to stop. Count Arnold, observing the escalating tension, expresses his concern, noting that there is no one who can stop Joshua when he loses his temper. He can't believe this lowly bastard, a mere stable boy who cleans up waste all day, could possibly use mana. However, he considers the possibility that the boy is merely a low-rank mage, but the implications of him hiding his powers raise questions not only for the Empire, but for himself as well. To properly understand the boy's power, Joshua knows he must seek the truth in the Black Creature's forest. Prince Caesar von Avalon addresses Sir Kane and other knights, explaining that they will be traveling to Acadie and must be mindful of their health, as he plans for them to put themselves in danger. Meanwhile, Count Arnold agrees with Duke Agnes, adding that if the Duke gets injured, it would be a major problem. The Duke listens intently, his expression serious. Shion then interjects, suggesting that the Duke mustn't do anything pointless. The Duke responds, declaring his intention to send a letter to the imperial palace in the capital, regardless of whether it's understandable or not. Meanwhile, Joshua Sanders stands alone, reflecting on the fact that following the Duke's orders means he will be able to return home. Still reeling from the recent events, Joshua curses himself for letting the situation escalate, though he quickly reminds himself to trust the general's judgment. Meanwhile, his thoughts drift to his father, Earl Babel, who is now embroiled in a war of succession. Far away, Prince Caesar, his face shadowed by a ruthless ambition, considers how to keep his rival at bay, quickly concluding that elimination is the only true solution. Back in the Duke's study, Joshua addresses Duke Agnes, stating he has but one request, prompting the Duke to inquire about its nature. With a determined expression, Joshua prepares to voice his desire. However, the Duke's knight, Cain, interjects sharply, forbidding Joshua from leaving and questioning what would become of the duchy without him, or if she were to be involved. Joshua, his gaze piercing, challenges the implication, asking if they truly believe the duchy is so weak it cannot function without him. The assembled nobles, including Chion and Count Arnold, listen intently, their expressions a mix of concern and contemplation. Cain, however, remains steadfast, asserting that without Joshua, there is no one else powerful enough to protect them. Still addressing Joshua with fervent conviction, Cain insists that the duchy cannot afford to lose him, especially with the Duke's health in decline. He argues that Joshua's power is essential for the future of the territory, even if he is merely a stable boy in the eyes of some. His voice firm, Cain declares that he will personally ensure Joshua's safety and well-being, even if it means accompanying him everywhere. From an unseen position, the Duke's voice cuts through the tension, reminding Cain that such extreme measures are unnecessary. As the Duke's presence is felt, Cain acknowledges his lord's words, while Joshua and the other nobles remain silent, absorbing the shift in authority. With the Duke's will now clear, the assembled figures, including Cain and Joshua, collectively affirm their obedience. Joshua, his expression unreadable, also offers his assent, though a flicker of defiance remains in his eyes. The decision made, Cain stands, his posture resolute, as the meeting concludes. Turning to Joshua, Cain informs him that the Duke wishes to speak with him privately. Without further argument, Joshua follows Cain, heading towards the Duke's chambers. As he is led through the opulent halls, Joshua acknowledges the instructions with a simple, understood, before adding, please wait a moment. Cain, ever diligent, opens the grand doors to the Duke's chamber, and Joshua, stepping inside, immediately recognizes the familiar presence of Earl Babel. The knight leads him forward, where Cain kneels respectfully before the seated Duke Agnes, announcing, Sir, Von Agnes has arrived. The Duke, observing Joshua, then instructs, I see. You may go. I will speak with him alone. A flicker of concern crosses Cain's face as he thinks, I needed some time to prepare on my own. The Duke, however, seems lost in his own thoughts, reflecting on how some things have changed a lot since I last saw him. Finally, he addresses Joshua directly, saying, I see. So you've come to say something. Joshua, standing before the Duke, responds with a question of his own. What would that be? A sharp voice cuts through the air, addressing him directly as Earl Joshua. Turning to face his accuser, Joshua calmly asks if there's something they wish to say. The other man, an imperial prince, retorts, reminding Joshua that Earl Isabel holds a higher position. His face contorted in anger, he insists that Joshua watch his manners in a public area. Joshua, unfazed by the outburst, simply asks if he is an imperial prince. He then clarifies his statement, asserting that the other is merely an imperial prince, nothing more, and that he won't make the mistake of treating him like an older brother again. Enraged, the prince grabs Joshua's shoulder, warning him that he misunderstands the situation and will be the one damaged by such behavior. Joshua, however, remains calm, advising him to climb the stairs rather than try to ride the rail, and to prove himself worthy if he wishes to be honored. The prince's face darkens further, as he questions if Joshua's words are not against the law of the Agnes Duchy. He stands firm against the prince's grip, a slight smirk playing on his lips as Caesar protests the public nature of their confrontation, but Joshua simply dismisses his concern, asking if he truly believes himself strong. From a distance, the Duke observes, reflecting that it hasn't been long since the child has fully grown, and now the time has come to reassemble what was broken. Joshua, however, asserts that one must prove their worth with their own strength, acknowledging the prince's words while declaring his own intent to grow stronger. He warns Caesar not to assume he will simply watch from the sidelines. Joshua then confidently agrees to the unspoken challenge. The Duke prompts Caesar to speak, and the prince requests to locate the Golden Knights from the duchy. As Caesar begins to state his position, Joshua cuts him off, questioning if he is willingly giving up his standing. The Duke then challenges Caesar, asking if he has forgotten his confidence just because a few of his pieces are broken off, before agreeing to the prince's request. Caesar, a confident smile on his face, declares his intention to follow the laws of the Agnes Duchy and have a fair competition. Duke Agnes, his expression thoughtful, considers the proposal before him, finally stating that he will consider it. With a respectful bow, Joshua offers his thanks, understanding that the meeting has now concluded. Meanwhile, Imperial Prince Caesar stands amidst his knights, a small smile playing on his lips as he gestures to their current location, indicating they are here. Back in his chambers, the Duke remains deep in thought, his gaze distant as he muses on the shifting dynamics of his domain, wondering what Duke Agnes will ultimately become, for this place is starting to change. Later, Joshua and Caesar stand together, the Imperial Prince expressing a surprising optimism, declaring that he has a good feeling about the unfolding events. Their conversation continues as they walk, eventually leading them to the private confines of Duchess Vanessa's room. There, Caesar, with a determined glint in his eye, vows that he won't give up his position to her, his thoughts turning to his brother's legacy. Even as the previous conversation lingered, Joshua's mind churned with a bitter thought, wondering how a lowly bastard, a mere stable boy who cleaned up messes all day, could dare to challenge him. Suddenly, a sharp thud echoed through the room as Duchess Vanessa, overwhelmed by emotion, collapsed backward onto the floor. Her face contorted in distress, she could only manage a choked sound, a desperate cry of "D Duchess." Joshua's internal turmoil continued, his thoughts racing, questioning the unfolding situation and fiercely declaring that Babel was his everything. As he stood over her, the Duchess, still seated on the floor, looked up at him, acknowledging his sentiment with a quiet, "Yes, of course I do." Her gaze falling, she continued, assuring him that she understood Chion's devotion to Babel, as it mirrored her own. Joshua, looking down at her with concern, implored her not to pursue such pointless actions. The Duchess, meeting his gaze once more, declared her intention to inform her man about their dire circumstances. Joshua's expression hardened as he looked away, promising her that such a thing would not come to pass. The blonde woman confirms the truth of the matter, her expression betraying a hint of concern as she questions the meaning behind a certain look. Joshua, listening intently, then asks what comes next, revealing that the Duke is in the process of taking over the Lodge territory. Her eyes widen in disbelief at the mention of the territory, a barren, northwestern region that would take him 2 months to reach. She then voices her deeper concern, wondering if this means the Duke will also be able to take the Duchess with Lucia. Joshua, his gaze firm, confirms her fears, stating that he believes so. The woman's expression hardens with resolve as she declares, she will go before he arrives. The Imperial Knights march with heavy, rhythmic steps, as Count Arnold questions the delay, wondering aloud if they're ready to depart, reminding them that the Imperial Knights are waiting and arrangements have already been made. The stable boy, standing beside the carriage, confirms their readiness, then calls out for help, announcing his arrival. He asks how they plan to transport so many horses, receiving a reply that directs him to a specific location. Meanwhile, Caesar von Avalon walks away from the commotion, his gaze distant. He muses to himself about the Dawnzing. Joshua stands by a window, contemplating the future. As soon as the Dawn Ring's forest cleanup is complete, they will move to the next phase, but before then, he will have to discard the name Henry. Suddenly, seated across from the Duke, he can only utter a confused, "Huh?" The Duke places a small, ornate object on the table between them, explaining that the Dawn Ring is far more valuable than Joshua could imagine. Therefore, he declares, Joshua will be receiving this powerful artifact, which now glows faintly in his hand. The Duke instructs him to simply infuse it with mana to learn its secrets. Joshua's eyes widen in disbelief, questioning, isn't the Dawn Ring supposed to be a royal treasure? The Duke dismisses his concern, clarifying that while it is indeed a treasure, Joshua cannot truly use it, and he is merely lending it. With a final warning that using the ring would displease the Emperor, the Duke asks if Joshua has any other business. A voice has echoed in his mind since birth, a constant presence within the Agnes family. The Duke explains that this is to shield his true identity from any prying eyes, because he detests losing what he has grown attached to. His false identity is as old as the Henry account itself, and he instructs the young man to come up with a good name for himself. Joshua reflects on the reason for this new name, and the belief that it would be the same. He then apologizes, stating he cannot agree to use the Dawn Ring for the forest cleanup, despite being ordered to do so, and calls out to Joshua. The Duke responds, while Joshua internally questions if he resents this, admitting honestly that he doesn't know. Even the great Duke Agnes never anticipated that he would die so pointlessly in the war. A war that would happen 10 years from now, between the Empress and her forces. If he had to choose a name for himself, he would pick his mother's maiden name. He clutches a ring, the memory of his mother's death still a raw wound, wondering why he had to endure such a loss. Though some say time heals all wounds, he knows that for him, the resentment remains, a forgotten grudge now resurfacing. Indeed, he still holds onto that deep-seated anger, a truth he cannot deny. As he stands lost in thought, a voice cuts through his contemplation, asking what troubles him. It is Caesar, who, with a knowing smile, mentions Joshua's upcoming knighthood after graduation, expressing his hope that the young man will prove useful to him. Joshua looks up, a hint of surprise in his eyes, questioning the prince's words. Caesar's confidence swells, a vibrant aura surrounding him as he declares Joshua his knight, promising him the honor of serving among the Imperial Knights, a vision of Chion appearing in his ambitious thoughts. He envisions himself as the commander of those very knights, with Joshua serving directly under his command. Caesar then adds, almost as an afterthought, that Joshua is free to leave the Imperial Knights once his purpose has been served. A cruel, inhuman laugh escapes the prince, a sound so disturbing it chills the air around them. He then warns the young man, his voice laced with menace, that if not for the watchful eyes of others, he would not hesitate to disfigure his face. Despite his cruel demeanor, the prince holds a position of immense power. As the head of the Imperial Knights, he seeks to acquire another favored subordinate. For him, the young man's unique ability to use mana makes him valuable, but if he isn't under his direct command, he is utterly useless. As they walk through the palace grounds, the prince casually mentions that for now, he will allow Joshua to possess the Ring of Lord. The red-haired woman beside him expresses her concern, believing that if Joshua were to possess the ring, it could complicate matters. But the prince dismisses her worries with a reassuring smile, promising to retrieve the ring when the time is right, to which she readily agrees. He knows that regardless of who holds it now, the Ring of Lord will ultimately fall into his possession. With his plans set in motion, the prince and his confidant continue their stroll, leaving Joshua to ponder his next move. He walks away from the grand castle alongside Caesar, the weight of the prince's recent manipulations still heavy on his mind. His gaze sharpens, a silent vow forming within him. He will not be a mere puppet for the prince, and he will prove it. Meanwhile, Caesar, the fourth prince of the Avalon Empire, leads a formidable expedition. He commands the Golden Knights, renowned as the empire's strongest. This grand assembly of knights, however, also includes a group led by the Duke of the country, their horses thundering across the land. Among them rides Count Arnold, an imperial mage from the Agnes Duchy, a royal knight, and the only A-class wizard in the region, not part of the Golden Knights. Observing the prince from a distance, Joshua's thoughts turn to the man he knows as Babel, wondering why he's looking at him with such a knowing smile. The expedition continues its swift advance, the command to all rise, echoing across the plains as the knights press onward. Count Arnold maintains a stern, watchful expression, his presence a silent testament to the power gathered. He watches as the grand procession arrives at the castle gates, a murmur rising from the gathered crowd. Prince Caesar, at the head of the column, greets Cain, acknowledging their shared history. Cain, a former Golden Knight, now serving the Avalon Empire, stands ready. He expresses his gratitude, glad to be feeling better. Joshua, observing from a distance, notes the exchange. Suddenly, a voice announces the Duke's arrival, and the expedition dismounts in the courtyard. Among the welcoming party is Lord Ian, the local viscount, accompanied by a young girl. Joshua dismisses him as a fool for coming so far into the forest. Viscount Ian, his expression contrite, offers a deep apology to Sir Cain, who stands before him with an unyielding gaze. Cain, however, remains unimpressed, his thoughts betraying a deep skepticism about the Viscount's character and intentions. Turning his attention to the imperial prince, Ian bows low, offering a respectful greeting to Caesar von Avalon. With a wide, almost theatrical smile, the Viscount declares it an honor to host the prince, eagerly offering his full assistance. Caesar, observing the overly enthusiastic display, can't help but wonder what ulterior motives lie behind such blatant flattery. He responds with a polite but reserved tone, acknowledging the Viscount's welcome while maintaining a cautious distance. Ian, seemingly oblivious to the prince's wariness, chuckles heartily, his thoughts turning to the fool who had dared to challenge his authority in the forest. He then mentions Joshua Sanders by name, referring to him as Earl Joshua and dismissing him as a mere stable boy. The prince's eyes widen slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his face at the unexpected mention of the name. As Viscount Ian leads the way, he glances back at the prince and Sir Cain, a slight frown on his face, muttering about their whereabouts. Addressing the prince with a forced smile, Ian attempts to maintain his composure, even as he dismisses the idea of Joshua Sanders being connected to Lady Vanessa's lineage. His expression shifts to one of genuine shock and disbelief, as he grapples with the unexpected mention of a name he thought he'd never hear in such a context, questioning the very absurdity of it. Prince Caesar, his gaze sharp and unwavering, challenges Ian's assertion, making it clear that Joshua's origins are not as simple as the Viscount believes. Ian, still reeling from the prince's intensity, can only stammer out a question, confirming his surprise that that boy could be the one Caesar is referring to. Caesar's eyes glow with an intense, almost otherworldly light, his expression hardening as he processes Ian's dismissive words about Joshua. Viscount Ian, oblivious to the prince's simmering anger, shakes his head in exasperation, still convinced of his own superior judgment. A sneer twists across Caesar's face, his thoughts seething with contempt for the lowly bastard who, despite being a mere stable boy, dares to challenge him. His frustration boils over as he grapples with the impossible question, how could such a person possibly wield mana? Later, in a grand hall, Duke Agnes addresses Joshua Sanders, while Imperial Knights Cain and Count Arnold stand by, observing the tense atmosphere. The Duke, his expression serious, explains that he cannot simply ignore the situation, despite his desire to do so, as the Emperor himself has sent a direct order. He then advises the young man to take a moment to compose himself, suggesting he should rest a bit. Agnes laments the perceived weakness of his knights, noting that they were easily defeated on the way here, which only adds to the current predicament. Meanwhile, Among the assembled knights, Count Arnold questions if there is anyone capable of fighting, his gaze sweeping over the ranks. Suddenly, Caesar steps forward, his eyes blazing with defiance as he directly challenges Joshua, uttering a sharp, unequivocal no. Having made his displeasure clear, Caesar turns his back on Joshua and Duke Agnes, commanding his retinue to move out. As he strides away, the Duke watches him go, a heavy silence falling over the hall. Joshua then steps forward, addressing the Duke with a plea to join the departing prince. But the Duke, his expression grim, can only offer a regretful refusal, bound by unseen obligations. He clenches his fist, his voice filled with a Duke's pride and a leader's frustration, unable to simply stand by while his knights, too, share his sentiment. From a distance, Imperial Knights Cain and Count Arnold, along with another knight, observe the scene, their comrade echoing the Duke's sentiment, eager to join the fray. The Duke's face remains etched with a mix of determination and regret, his thoughts heavy with the weight of his responsibilities. Later, in a more private setting, he stands with Duchess Vanessa and Lord Ian, discussing matters with a calmer demeanor. He reassures them, particularly Chion, who stands beside the Duchess, though his words hint at a deeper concern for his daughter. A scoff escapes Duke Agnes as he stares down, his frustration evident. He mutters, "This lowly bastard? Even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day." Joshua Sanders then approaches him, stating, "I wish to go, Duke." Suddenly, a young girl with light blue hair, Lucia, stands before them, her hands glowing with vibrant blue energy as she cries out, "HA." The Duke and Joshua watch in astonishment as she continues to channel the energy, a voice echoing, "SYLPH." The blue particles swirl around her, forming intricate patterns. Her eyes glow with the same ethereal blue, reflecting the power she wields. A young man with white hair reacts with wide-eyed disbelief, exclaiming, "A spirit." Lucia stands beside Ian, still emanating a soft glow. As Ian explains, he recently discovered that he can use the spirit arts, like magic. The narration clarifies that only those who can use the spirit arts are actually called magicians, as a brown-haired man demonstrates his own fiery, red-hued magic. Most people who have encountered 100 gates have only ever witnessed the weakest among them, yet Caesar von Avalon finds himself surprised, realizing he didn't expect to find one here. As he processes this revelation, Ian and Lucia stand nearby, observing the exchange between him and Cain. Cain, looking at Caesar, expresses his doubt, having never heard of a sage named Cain. Caesar, turning his gaze to Cain, suggests they gather their thoughts, ready to strategize. Meanwhile, Duke Agnes stands resolute, issuing commands to his forces, declaring that his knights will lead the vanguard while his wizards cover the rearguard. Chion and Count Arnold stand before him, acknowledging his directive, and express their understanding and gratitude. With his command given, Duke Agnes leads the assembled group, including Chion and Count Arnold, out of the grand hall, announcing their departure. His expression remains stern, as he considers the gravity of their undertaking. Elsewhere, Cain converses with a woman, musing aloud that it would be beneficial if he could manage to find a sage. Joshua Sanders stands beside Lucia, listening intently as Lord Ian addresses them, his expression thoughtful. Ian, with a knowing look, remarks, "Hey, if she's critical to my plans, I'll remember." The Lord's gaze lingers, a hint of calculation in his eyes. A monstrous, gargoyle-like creature with glowing red eyes and sharp claws looms in a dark, cavernous space, its form wreathed in an ominous, green aura. Elsewhere, Duke Agnes nods, acknowledging a statement from Cain. "I see." The Duke then apologizes, "I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking." Cain, his expression serious, questions the nature of a magician's power. So he blocked Caesar's blow? This isn't a simple magician. He then clarifies, he's not a magician. The Duke confirms, yes, that's correct. Cain then states his desire to hear about the Empire's best knight. "I want to hear the words as the Empire's best knight, Sir Knight." He adds, "As I have told you, sir, it is hard for me to speak about him as a magician." Knights and magicians, though both wielding mana, utilize it in fundamentally different ways. Considering this distinction, the Duke ponders, wondering just how far that young man's potential truly reaches. Rather than making assumptions, Cain offers to elaborate on the distinct differences between Imperial Knights, inviting the Duke to listen. He begins by noting that even Sir Valmont has yet to defeat Joshua, but then muses on a hypothetical one-on-one confrontation. A confident smirk plays on his lips as he declares, there's no scenario in which he would lose. The Duke, however, reminds him of Sir Valmont's extensive experience, a veteran knight with over 30 years of countless battles under his belt. Cain concedes the point about Valmont's prowess, yet insists that Sir Valmont and Earl Joshua are fundamentally different. The Duke challenges him, asking if he's implying Joshua is stronger than Valmont, to which Cain replies that it's not about strength, but rather a unique sensation he felt. He concludes, speculating that Joshua might one day defeat Sir Valmont, or even himself, but not in their current moment. Still seated on his throne, Cain muses, one more thing. If I went against you on my own, who would win? His gaze sharpens, a silent challenge hanging in the air. Duke Agnes listens intently, his expression unreadable. A low chuckle escapes Kane as the Duke turns to leave, the sound echoing through the grand hall. He leans back, a wide grin spreading across his face, finding the thought truly amusing. It is really funny, he thinks. I should have known from the beginning. I should have known. A small, crimson card appears in his hand, as he declares, I must see the boy with my own eyes. Later, Duke Agnes and Duchess Vanessa approach, the Duchess inquiring, Did you call for your majesty? They stand respectfully before Kane, awaiting his command. As far as he is aware, the fourth prince is already making preparations. Caesar, he muses, an unexpected development. He recalls hearing that it was Joshua who defeated the dragon and saved the empire, deciding to summon Duke Joshua von Agnes. He will have to see the boy with his own eyes, acknowledging him as a rising star, but not yet fully trusting him. He commands his subordinate to report anything that happens with that situation. Before him, the Duke and Duchess of Agnes stand, acknowledging his majesty's command. With a respectful bow, the Duke announces their departure. Kane remains seated on his throne, deep in thought. Meanwhile, the focus shifts to Joshua von Agnes, his new title now firmly established. Kane, observing from a distance, considers the implications of Joshua's abilities, musing that if he possesses such talent, he might be suitable for a greater purpose. His gaze remains sharp and calculating, a silent assessment of the young man's potential unfolding in his mind. Meanwhile, under a blood-red moon, Joshua finds himself in a desolate, monster-infested forest, the air thick with an ominous aura. He moves with practiced efficiency, his attacks tearing through the grotesque creatures that swarm him from all sides. One beast lets out a guttural roar of pain, its form contorting under the force of his blows. Despite the relentless assault, Joshua continues to fight, a lone figure against overwhelming odds, his movements a testament to his skill. Finally, the last monster falls, and he stands amidst the carnage, utterly exhausted, the toll of the battle etched onto his face. The sky above the encampment burns with the fiery hues of sunset, casting long shadows over the rugged mountains and the small, clustered village below. Joshua stands outside a large tent, his gaze fixed on the entrance. While inside, Duke Agnes presides over a tense meeting, surrounded by his knights and nobles, including Joshua, Kane, Count Arnold, and Ian, all gathered around a map spread across a table. His voice sharp with impatience, the Duke demands to know why they have marched so far and set up camp in this location. One of the nobles, his face etched with worry, points out that the black creature's forest looms directly before them, suggesting that in such a dangerous place, they should at least prepare for a night attack. Kane, however, dismisses their concerns with a scoff, muttering that they are simply scared. He then turns to the Duke, challenging anyone who would dare think him a fool for leading them into such a perilous position, before pointedly asking Sir Kane for his agreement. The black creature's forest, a place where the sun never fully reaches the ground, was known for its perpetual twilight, a darkness that deepened with the approach of night. And when the moon, the very symbol of darkness, rose, the creatures within would awaken, their numbers swelling, their ferocity unmatched. The Duke, however, remained unperturbed, his voice calm as he declared there was no need for them to act. A portly noble, Viscount Ian, expressed his admiration, confessing he hadn't anticipated such a bold decision from the Duke. The Duke simply chuckled, acknowledging the compliment, before instructing the Viscount to oversee the camp's cleanup if he truly understood the situation. Viscount Ian, along with Sir Kane and Count Arnold, immediately affirmed their understanding, ready to follow the Duke's command. Meanwhile, the young knight, his expression unreadable, turned away from the ongoing discussion. He began to walk away from the gathering, a quiet maid following closely behind him. As they moved deeper into the forest, the maid, Lucia, gently admonished him, telling Earl Joshua that he had done enough. He acknowledges the group with a curt nod, his words echoing the understanding that he would be on time, as he and Lucia begin to walk away from Duke Agnes and his knights. Their footsteps crunch softly on the fallen leaves, as they venture deeper into the shadowed woods, the path ahead shrouded in mystery. A determined glint in his eyes, Joshua knows this is his only chance to prove himself. He continues his solitary journey, the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy, as he disappears deeper into the forest's embrace. The Genesis Stone, a magic enhancement item, contains the very power of creation. The ancient dragons once called it by that name, believing there were 8 such stones in total, each holding dominion over an element like fire, water, earth, wind, lightning, and ice. Yet, only 5 have ever been discovered. And even now, all 5 remain ungathered. Each Genesis stone possesses its own unique magic, akin to a living magic circle. It is an item valued not only for its immense power but also for its extreme rarity, as a small, glowing crystal is crushed underfoot. Deep within the black creature's forest, Joshua confirms his discovery, a quiet affirmation that it's truly here. He knows that if he can just acquire one of these stones, he'll finally be able to control his own destiny. A thought crosses his mind, wondering if he must continue deeper, all the way to the center of this dangerous place. A powerful sensation washes over him, his hand beginning to glow with a faint blue light, as he feels an undeniable pull, a feeling that he would surely perish if he were to simply pass by this opportunity. Still deep within the black creature's forest, he suddenly senses a presence, his body tensing in surprise. Looking up, he sees a massive, green-skinned hand, signaling the immediate danger. A hulking black ogre, club in hand, looms over him, its red eyes fixed on his position. A determined expression hardens his features, his eyes flaring with a brilliant blue light as he resolves to unleash his mana. Knowing he possesses the power, it's merely a matter of execution. With a surge of energy, he moves, a blur of blue light streaking through the dense foliage, understanding that using a full magic circle requires immense mana. His spear glows with the same vibrant blue, infused with his concentrated power, as the narration reminds him that black ogres are solitary creatures, making this encounter particularly dangerous. He continues his rapid, low-to-the-ground movement, calculating the risks, knowing that falling behind now would leave him severely underleveled. A blue aura surrounds him as he closes the distance, aware that the ogre will detect him if he gets within 10 meters. Suddenly, the ogre lets out a guttural roar, its red eyes flaring, sensing an intrusion. The black ogre unleashes a deafening roar, a wave of dark energy erupting from its form, sending him hurtling backward through the air. His protective barrier shatters under the assault, yet he grits his teeth, refusing to yield, knowing a mere black ogre shouldn't possess such power. The monstrous creature recoils in surprise, its glowing red eyes widening as Joshua, surrounded by a fierce blue aura, prepares his counterattack. He steels his resolve, knowing that failure means death. With a burst of speed, he closes the distance, his spear piercing deep into the ogre's flesh. A guttural cry of pain escapes the beast as red energy explodes from the impact point. Swiftly, he pulls back, leaving a trail of shimmering blue mana in his wake. The ground beneath them cracks and explodes, a testament to the raw power unleashed. The black ogre lunges, its glowing red eyes fixed on its prey, a sharp claw striking with immense force. The impact sends Joshua reeling backward, his spear deflecting the blow but unable to fully absorb the shock. He steadies himself, his gaze sharp and resolute, knowing that a single lapse in concentration against this monstrous foe would mean his end. With a guttural roar, the ogre recoils as Joshua's spear finds its mark, a quick, decisive strike before he slides away, creating distance. Later, Joshua sits in quiet contemplation, understanding that to avoid a repeat of such a perilous encounter, he must grow stronger, and quickly, lest the same fate befall him again. He resolves to tap into the mana stored within his body, a technique he hasn't practiced in some time, though he admits he's a little out of practice. Instead of focusing his mana into a concentrated attack, he begins to manipulate it, allowing it to flow and envelop his entire being. He practices becoming one with his surroundings, constantly releasing and absorbing mana from the environment. His eyes glow with a faint blue light, a testament to his renewed focus and determination. Joshua faces the hulking ogre, its red eyes fixed on him, as he prepares for the confrontation, knowing this creature is far from a lowly beast. The massive creature lumbers forward. But Joshua, with a burst of speed, circles behind it, a thought flashing through his mind. Push. It worked. He thrusts his spear, imbued with a vibrant purple mana. The sheer exertion of channeling power while moving at such speed taking its toll. It's hard on the body to use mana while moving at the center of the power. Despite the strain, he pushes through, continuing his assault even as his body protests. A powerful burst of energy erupts from the impact, sending him tumbling backward, until he lands hard on his back, a surprised groan escaping him. Trip? My back. Ow. He hears a faint rustle in the dense undergrowth, only to find himself completely surrounded by a horde of monstrous goblins and a towering ogre, their guttural roars filling the air, realizing he is trapped. The ogre lets out a deafening cry, its fangs bared in aggression. A smirk plays on his lips, a thought forming in his mind about whether this is the perfect opportunity. As he leaps into the fray, his spear glowing with nascent power, ready to test out a new technique he's been waiting for. He lands amidst the chaos, mana swirling around him as he channels his energy into the spear, unleashing the powerful gust form, which erupts in a massive vortex of destructive force. The spear's energy expands outwards, engulfing his foes. Joshua Sanders moves with blinding speed, his spear a blur as it strikes the first goblin. The force of his attack carries through, driving the weapon deep into the creature. A trail of azure energy follows the spear's path, confirming the devastating impact. He doesn't stop there, sweeping his spear in wide arcs, engaging multiple goblins at once. One of the creatures, witnessing the carnage, lets out a terrified cry. Coo. From a short distance, Caesar von Avalon watches the unfolding battle, his expression grim. His electric blue eyes narrow, glowing faintly with focused intent. With a surge of mana, he raises his staff, ready to unleash his own power upon the horde. He thought he had dealt with them, but the monsters had already breached the first line of defense. Gripping his spear tightly, he knew he would have to unleash all the power he had accumulated as a knight to deal with the remaining threat. There was no time to explain the situation, not with the knights coming out soon, and the monsters threatening to attack the base before they could meet up. Time was becoming incredibly precious. Elsewhere, a knight drew his sword, knowing he needed to find Joshua Sanders as soon as possible and inform the Golden Knights. Under the ominous glow of a blood-red moon, the camp lay silent. The knight moved with purpose through the tents, his gaze sharp. Suddenly, a rustling sound caught his attention, his expression shifting to alert surprise. The knight erupts in a cacophony of roars and clashing steel as a monstrous figure lunges at a defending soldier. The camp is under siege, cries of alarm echoing as more creatures pour in from all sides, overwhelming the human defenses. The monsters have breached the perimeter, their numbers too great for the scattered resistance. Another grotesque beast charges forward, its guttural cry adding to the terror. Soldiers fall, injured and desperate, as the call for medics rings out amidst pleas to form a defensive line. More enemies surge from the darkness, their forms indistinct but their intent clear. Suddenly, a brilliant purple glow emanates from a swiftly moving blade, cutting through the chaos. Joshua, now a blur of motion, carves a path through the monstrous horde, his weapon leaving trails of vibrant energy. With each precise strike, another creature falls, their pained cries silenced by his relentless assault. He moves with blinding speed, his blade a blur of purple energy as it carves through the first monster with a sickening crunch. His gaze remains sharp, unwavering, even as the chaos of battle rages around him. Another creature falls, its form dissolving into particles under the relentless assault of his glowing weapon. He spins through the air, a whirlwind of destruction, striking down multiple foes in a single, fluid motion. The sheer audacity of his power, a stable boy wielding such mana, grinds in the minds of his enemies, even as he presses his attack. A guttural roar erupts from the horde, a desperate cry of defiance against the lone warrior. Their faces contort in primal rage, their numbers seemingly endless. Another monster screams, its challenge echoing across the embattled camp. Yet, even as Joshua continues his relentless fight, a voice of concern rises from the ranks, urging him to reconsider such a pointless display. The sheer number of monsters is staggering, causing Caesar von Avalon and the Imperial Knight beside him to curse the impossible odds, knowing retreat is their only option. Yet, a grizzled commander bellows at his men to pull themselves together, demanding they form a line against the encroaching horde. Meanwhile, Joshua Sanders, his expression grim, declares himself ready for battle. Even as the chaotic clash between soldiers and monstrous creatures rages around him, the battle lines are drawn. The monsters roar as the desperate fight continues. Soldiers push back, but the sheer numbers threaten to overwhelm them. Amidst the fray, a young man with blonde hair and glowing hands unleashes powerful, explosive strikes, tearing through the monsters with unexpected ferocity. His glowing fists connect with brutal force, sending creatures flying. As the battle intensifies, Joshua stands poised, his blade now radiating a potent purple aura, prepared to unleash his full might. As Joshua Sanders plunged into the fray, his blade glowing with potent purple energy, an unseen observer scoffed, unable to believe that such a lowly stable boy could wield mana. He registered the comment, but his attention was immediately drawn to a new, alarming development, a sharp HM escaping his lips. As the relentless monster horde continued its advance, their sheer numbers overwhelming the defenses, making the desperate cries of the struggling soldiers echo across the battlefield. There's no end to it. How do we stop this countless? They're already breaking through the defenses. Above the chaos, a blood-red moon hung heavy in the night sky, casting an ominous glow over the ravaged land. One of the monstrous creatures, its eyes glowing with malevolent red light, let out a guttural roar. The sheer scale of the threat began to weigh on Joshua, a desperate cry of "Kwa!" tearing from his throat. Yet, even as despair threatened to consume him, a powerful, glowing impact struck one of the monsters, eliciting a pained "UWA" as it reeled back. Joshua looked down, the weight of the situation heavy on his shoulders, muttering, "But at such a time." Then, his eyes hardening with resolve, he declared, his form once again radiating purple energy. "The only knight who can stand here is me. There's no one else who can stop me here." He plunges his glowing purple blade into the shadowy mass of a monster, declaring his intent to split it in half. With a powerful follow-through, he stomps down, driving the attack home. His face contorted in a grimace of fierce determination, he pushes through the pain. A surge of crimson energy erupts from his body, repelling the surrounding shadowy figures with explosive force. Yet, the sheer number of enemies proves too great, and he is finally overwhelmed, forced to his knees amidst the relentless assault. From a distance, Chiffon watches the unfolding chaos, a worried question escaping his lips as he observes the battle. The Imperial Knight, fending off the relentless monsters, urges, "You'll get drawn into the fight if you get caught." Despite their efforts, the sheer number of kobolds shows no sign of decreasing, forcing a desperate call to retreat and withdraw to the back. From a distance, Chiffon watches the unfolding chaos, realizing the knights are now facing an even greater problem. Meanwhile, Duke Abanus, his voice firm, declares, "We must take care of this now." He stands resolute as the battle rages around him, the clash of steel and roars of monsters echoing across the field. The kobold horde, a sea of glowing red eyes and snarling maws, surges forward with a terrifying roar. Duke Abanus and his knights meet the onslaught head-on, their weapons clashing against the monstrous tide. His crimson cape billows in the chaotic winds of battle. But even his formidable presence cannot prevent a painful blow, blood splattering across his hand as he lets out a sharp gasp. He clutches the wound, his grip tightening. Despite the injury, Duke Abanus's eyes burn with an unyielding resolve, a fierce glare promising no retreat. Still on the battlefield, the Duke unleashes a furious assault, his weapon a blur amidst the swarming kobolds, the sounds of their guttural cries filling the air. He continues his relentless advance, a crimson aura of power swirling around him as he carves a path through the monstrous ranks. His blade, now slick with the blood of his enemies, flashes through the air, a testament to his brutal efficiency. Standing atop a rocky rise, the Duke surveys the carnage, the lingering red energy still clinging to his form. Below, two kobolds recoil, their guttural growls turning into confused murmurs as they witness his terrifying ferocity. With a fierce glare, Duke Agnes declares his intent to show the cowardly creatures the true meaning of monsters. Meanwhile, in a different setting, Joshua listens intently, his expression grave, as he hears a troubling question. Is the only way to get rid of an evil spirit to kill its host? Joshua stands resolute, his sword at his side, contemplating the heavy implications of such a choice. Caesar strides forward, his boots crunching on the crystalline ground. He navigates the treacherous cavern, his spear held ready. A faint red aura begins to emanate from him, illuminating the jagged purple formations around him. Suddenly, a powerful force erupts, and his eyes widen in shock as the very crystals around him begin to violently fracture and explode, sending brilliant shards flying through the air. The cavern fills with blinding light and the deafening sound of shattering rock, leaving only a dark, fragmented void in its wake. A desolate, red-tinged landscape stretches out, scarred and broken, as a lone figure stands amidst the ruins. The very air seems to echo with a silent, lingering cry, a testament to the raw power unleashed. Elsewhere, a stern-faced Duke Agnes looks on, his expression unreadable. Joshua Sanders, however, trembles with a palpable sense of dread, his eyes wide with shock. In a grand hall, the unnamed commander addresses Caesar von Avalon, proclaiming his pride in the young man's growth. That is your son, Caesar von Avalon. I'm glad you're finally becoming the man that I've always dreamed of. My son, my heir. Yet, the commander's inner thoughts betray a different sentiment, a simmering resentment. No matter how talented he is, I'll be the one who gets the recognition. His obsession with another figure is clear as he mutters, "Why are you so obsessed with that child? What is it about him that you like so much?" An Imperial Knight approaches the commander, clarifying the identity of the child in question. "Commander, you know that child is Imperial Knight Joshua." The commander responds with a questioning. "That child?" The commander's face twists with disdain as he finally names his true rival. "I'm talking about that illegitimate child, Joshua." He seethes, unable to comprehend how a mere stable boy, who only cleans up after horses, could possibly wield mana. His thoughts are interrupted by a concerned voice, urging him not to do anything pointless. The two men exchange glances, wondering where the stable boy could have run off to, admitting they hadn't seen him since earlier. The bearded man's face contorts in anger, questioning how different the stable boy truly is, even with the blood of the Duke running through his veins. He snaps, demanding to know what they are doing, reminding them that the battle is far from over. Suddenly, an unseen force slams into the three men, sending them reeling backward with a grunt of pain. A hand, glowing with purple energy, thrusts a sword forward, a fierce battle cry echoing, "May Agnes royalty glory be with us." The stable boy charges, a blur of motion across the battlefield. He strikes, impacting the two men with brutal force. The stable boy continues his relentless assault, their screams filling the air. As the chaos from Chiffon's attacks settled, Joshua, Duke Agnes, and an Imperial Knight found themselves fleeing through the dense forest, the Earl's glowing purple spear cutting a path through the dim light. But their pursuers were relentless, a horde of shadowy figures closing in with guttural cries. One of the creatures, a grotesque goblin, let out a piercing shriek, its fangs bared in savage hunger. Joshua glanced back, his expression grim, noting how the monsters seemed to be running faster than before, their numbers swelling. He knew they couldn't keep this up. With a decisive turn, he met their charge, his spear erupting in a crimson-tinged purple blast that tore through the front ranks. He moved with practiced precision, his spear a blur of motion as he engaged the remaining creatures in close combat. A larger, more monstrous goblin lunged forward, its massive claws swiping as Joshua parried with a powerful thrust. The beast roared in frustration, its red eyes burning with savage fury. Amidst the struggle, a strange detail emerged from the forest floor, a viscous black puddle spreading ominously. He continues to carve a path through the goblin horde, his spear glowing crimson as he urges his companions to spread out. A powerful strike sends a wave of energy through the forest, while the Imperial Knight, with a swift KWR, cuts down another monstrous foe. The knight's blade glows with a cool blue light, deflecting and parrying the relentless attacks of the creatures, his powerful counterattacks echoing with a guttural KUAA. Nearby, the Duke unleashes a burst of red energy, shouting for his forces not to retreat, even as the battle rages with a fierce URGH. Suddenly, Joshua's attention is drawn to a strange white glow emanating from his hand, a chilling realization dawning on him. He had underestimated the horde, and now, a hole in black obsidian has appeared. The white aura shifts to an ominous blue, crackling with lightning, as he recognizes the familiar energy. Before he can react, the ground beneath him gives way, and he plunges into a dark, lightning-filled abyss. He unleashes a devastating attack, a surge of raw power erupting from his core. With a thunderous roar, blue lightning crackles around him, illuminating the dark cavern as he channels the full might of his new ability. The bolt strikes true, impacting the monster's head with an explosive force. A blinding flash of azure energy engulfs the area, shattering the ground and sending debris flying. The monster is hurled backward, its massive form engulfed in the lingering blue aura of the attack. Behind him, the Imperial Knight and Duke Agnes watch in stunned silence, their faces etched with disbelief at the raw power they just witnessed. The Duke's expression hardens, a mix of awe and concern clouding his features. With a decisive step, he advances through the dissipating smoke. Standing amidst the fading blue glow, Joshua surveys the destruction, his eyes still alight with power, as the Imperial Knight calls out his title in astonishment. As the dust settles from the devastating attack, the Imperial Knight can only stare, bewildered, at the monster's remains. He killed it with just normal strength and speed, the Knight thinks, not even using mana. The creature's eye, now lifeless, reflects the lingering question, who is this Joshua, capable of such a feat with just one blow? Nearby, Duke Agnes, equally stunned, mutters about what just transpired, wondering what trick the young man employed. As Joshua walks away from the monster's carcass, the Imperial Knight observes that his strength is indeed good, but he must have been hiding it all this time. The Duke, still reeling, recalls that it hasn't been long since he first met him, and it was he who brought him along. He then wonders about the rumors of Joshua being ungrateful, a thought that now seems utterly insignificant in the face of such power. Indeed, the timing of his display was amazing, yet the observers can't reconcile it. No matter his skill, Joshua is only a C-rank knight, and it simply doesn't make sense for him to have killed a black orc, a monster even B-rank knights struggle with, in one blow. With a renewed sense of urgency, the Imperial Knight calls out, urging everyone to move forward, as the monsters won't wait, and the group charges ahead. Joshua, glancing back at the advancing group, acknowledges that he'll have to try a little harder next time. Even if it meant pushing his limits to the point of mana exhaustion, Joshua resolved to handle the threat before him, knowing that the monstrous creatures would otherwise overwhelm them. With a guttural roar, he unleashed a surge of raw power, a crimson aura flaring around him. He moved with impossible speed, a blur of motion as he struck down a black orc, its massive form reeling from the impact. Leaving only afterimages in his wake, Joshua continued his relentless assault, a whirlwind of blades and fists. With a devastating blow, he sent another black orc flying, a shockwave of electric blue energy rippling outwards from the point of impact. His eyes glowed with an intense, electric blue light, as he channeled his power, preparing for his next move. Another swift strike connected, sending a third black orc tumbling through the air. Then, with a powerful declaration, he unleashed a new skill, Thunderbolt Wind. A massive torrent of wind and lightning erupted, engulfing the remaining black orcs and scattering their forms across the cavern. The air crackles with raw power, a brilliant white light erupting from him, then surging forward in a devastating blue and white wave of energy. It slams into the monstrous black orcs, tearing through their defenses with explosive force. One of the creatures lets out a guttural roar, its eyes burning red. But Joshua stands firm amidst the fallen, his spear planted, the battle decisively won. Nearby, the commander collapses to his knees, utterly dumbfounded by the display, muttering, "That's ridiculous." The narration box confirms that the Black Ogre, a beast impervious to even Master Knight's sword arts, had been utterly annihilated by Earl Joshua. Caesar, watching the aftermath, can barely believe his eyes, exclaiming that he's never seen a skill with such elemental properties from a veteran A-rank knight. Even after such a devastating display, the stable boy can only stare in disbelief, wondering how he is still breathing. The commander, equally stunned, echoes the sentiment, unable to comprehend how he remains standing, though he knows deep down, he doesn't. An Imperial Knight questions the impossible defeat of the Black Ogre, while the commander, now convinced of a monstrous power, dismisses the beast's fate as irrelevant. Meanwhile, Caesar von Avalon, a master of third-class magic and the fourth prince of the empire, possesses the unique royal mana, capable of causing continent-shattering catastrophes. Yet, even with his vast knowledge, he has never encountered mana like this before, questioning its very nature. As his eyes glow with residual power, Joshua struggles to maintain consciousness, wondering if he has finally reached his limit. His vision blurs, the exhaustion overwhelming him. The defeated Black Ogre lies motionless, its monstrous form a testament to the battle's ferocity. Finally, Joshua Sanders collapses to the ground, his body giving out after pushing past all limits. He unleashes a raw, guttural cry, a surge of crimson energy erupting from his clenched fist. The force of it explodes outwards, tearing through the air in a maelstrom of red light and debris. He strains against the overwhelming power, the sheer output of his mana pushing him to his absolute limits. Nearby, the Imperial Knight and the Commander watch, their expressions etched with profound concern. Finally spent, Joshua Sanders lies still, his face bruised and eyes closed, the aftermath of his power evident. A chaotic burst of red and white energy erupts, tearing through the air. As Joshua Sanders is sent plummeting downward, blood splattering violently around him. Before he can hit the ground, Duke Agnes lunges forward, catching the injured knight in his arms, his voice filled with urgency. Dazed and bleeding, Joshua can only manage a weak, "This isn't." Agnes's face is etched with concern as he responds, "My lord, you mustn't do such pointless." The air is then pierced by a raw, agonized scream. Amidst the suffocating smoke and searing heat, desperate cries for help echo through the night, as a massive fire rages. The inferno consumes a grand structure, revealing the devastating truth: the Abanus Duchy is ablaze. Caesar von Avalon watches in horror, his mind struggling to process the sight of the burning estate. Panic spreads through the streets, as people flee the encroaching flames, their desperate pleas filling the air. Suddenly, a violent explosion rips through the heart of the blaze, sending debris and fire high into the sky. Caesar watches the escalating destruction, the flickering light of the flames reflected in his wide eyes. He clutches his head, a desperate question forming in his mind. Is this terrifying reality merely a dream, or is it truly happening? As Caesar stands amidst the burning chaos, a resolute figure emerges from the shadows, approaching the inferno with a drawn blade. It is Duke Agnes, his presence a beacon of determination against the backdrop of destruction. A blonde-haired man, surrounded by the flickering glow of flames, seethes with contempt, unable to believe that a mere stable boy could challenge him. Meanwhile, Caesar von Avalon gazes upon a colossal, glowing blue structure, realizing its true identity. It is Babel, and he wonders if this is the legendary treasure hidden within. Elsewhere, a brown-haired man stands before a burning building, demanding to know if something has been kept from him. Caesar's focus snaps back to a sudden, overwhelming surge of power, a red glow reflecting in his eyes as he questions its origin. He wonders if this is a premonition, a dream connected to Joshua's chest, and if it involves the Genesis Stone, he knows he cannot let this opportunity pass. The Genesis Stone, a shattered blue crystal crackling with energy, is described as a force so potent it can overcome even the most powerful magicians. Caesar extends his hand, blue energy swirling around it, still questioning the nature of this immense mana. With a whoosh, a torrent of pure white energy erupts from his palm, culminating in a massive, roaring blast that strikes with devastating force. A blonde-haired man, his face contorted in disgust, watches a scene unfold, his thoughts consumed by disdain for what he perceives as a lowly stable boy. Meanwhile, a brown-haired man, surrounded by shimmering particles, questions the impossible, wondering how such a being could wield mana. He continues to observe, his mind racing with the implications of this unexpected power. A hand reaches out towards a colossal, glowing blue structure, as a voice warns against pointless actions. Caesar von Avalon, engulfed in a vibrant blue aura, gasps in shock as he realizes the true nature of the spirit wind. The spirit wind, he thinks, is alive. He stands beside the brown-haired man, both observing something unseen, as Caesar ponders the possibility of a hidden truth. Something must have happened between the two, a hidden truth. The blonde-haired man, accompanied by a majestic wolf-like creature, declares his certainty about the true nature of the Genesis Stone. He knows the Genesis Stone is here. The brown-haired man looks upon a burning building, realizing that the Genesis Stone is also present. Caesar, his eyes glowing with renewed determination, acknowledges the presence of the Genesis Stone, understanding that its power has been awakened. It seems the Genesis Stone's magic has been awakened. A blonde-haired man seethes with barely contained rage, his teeth grinding audibly as he struggles to comprehend the situation. He can't believe that such a lowly stable boy, who spends his days cleaning filth, could possibly wield mana. Meanwhile, Duke Agnes, standing beside Caesar, attempts to interject, warning him against pursuing such a futile endeavor. Suddenly, a colossal wave of brilliant blue energy erupts, blasting outwards with immense force. The sheer scale of the phenomenon is breathtaking, as the surge is identified as a spirit wind. Caesar's eyes widen, glowing with the same electric blue as the surging energy, as he realizes the spirit wind is not merely a force, but alive. He stands as a conduit, a massive pillar of blue light erupting behind him, the Genesis Stone's magic now fully awakened through him. With a look of profound determination, he utters a single, ancient word, Babel. As the energy swirls around him, he gazes upwards, towards the colossal, glowing structure now visible in the sky, the Tower of Babel. The blond man lunges forward, his sword a blur of motion, leaving a crimson trail of energy in its wake. But before his attack can land, he's met with an unseen force, recoiling violently as blood splatters from his mouth, his face contorted in shock and pain. Despite the brutal impact, he quickly regains his footing, sword still held firm, as a voice echoes, "This lowly bastard? Even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day." Meanwhile, Duke Agnes, his expression grim, attempts to intervene, warning, "My lord, you mustn't do such pointless." Unaware of the unfolding conflict, Caesar von Avalon continues his descent, enveloped in a brilliant, pulsating blue aura, his eyes glowing with the raw power of the Genesis Stone. As he falls, the sheer magnitude of the magic causes a voice to question. He can use mana. Then, with a blinding flash of white light, the energy erupts outwards. From the chaos, a colossal, dark circular structure is revealed, looming ominously from above. Elsewhere, a young man named Draxia Vel Grace lies injured, bandages wrapped around his head, as he cries out, "Draxia Vel Grace." He stirs, a soft groan escaping him as consciousness slowly returns. It was, he realizes, definitely closer to a nightmare than a normal dream. Rather, he wonders how much time has truly passed. A sharp pain lances through him as he pushes himself up from the bed, leaving him to question if he is still unable to endure it. He has entered the second stage after the first awakening of the Genesis Stone, but the power of this second stage is proving too much for a mere 2-rank knight's body. Perhaps, he muses, it's because the Genesis Stone he possessed was a fake. No, that's probably not it. The Genesis Stone he possesses is a genuine one. Its power is simply too much for his body to handle. He knows there's a need to delve into the Genesis Stone further. And a small, glowing particle drifts past his window, making him wonder, isn't that mana? Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out to him, "Duke." The Duke explains that up until a few hours ago, the Red Hook Imperial Knights were considered the world's whole. But now, Draxia is captured in an extremely beautiful prison. A soft gasp escapes Draxia's lips as he processes the words, "Ah." The Duke continues, stating that they'll be heading to the Academy as soon as they return to the duchy. He clarifies that Draxia's eternal identity isn't Agnes, as he had explained before, but that he is now the son of the Alan Frederick Viscounty. This new identity is a secret, orchestrated by someone who has been trying to raise the Duke's power back up. He can only utter a surprised sound, still reeling from the revelations. The Duke's words echo in his mind, confirming that the Duke of Avalon, or perhaps No Shop, would become the central figure of attention. For now, the Academy remains the only path he can discern. As the older man continues to speak, the Duke then reveals that he overheard him speaking in his sleep, mentioning a very interesting name. Draxia Vel Grace, the Duke states, causing the young man to demand how he knows that cursed name. The injured man, Draxia Vel Grace, is now clearly identified, his gaze distant as he lies bandaged. Joshua Sanders sits beside the bed, observing him intently, while Duke Agnes watches from a nearby chair, a somber expression on his face. A firm refusal escapes Joshua's lips, his armored arm resting on his knee. Standing now, Duke Agnes addresses Joshua, assuring him that they will return to the capital immediately, leaving Draxia still recovering on the bed. Draxia's bandaged face remains impassive as the moon hangs high in the night sky. The scene shifts to an imposing castle, its ancient stones silhouetted against the dark. Inside a secret room within Lock Castle, a hushed conversation unfolds, questioning if Sir Chiffon's sister, Vanessa, is aware of a certain fact. Blonde Manet, standing with brown-haired Manby, confirms that she is already aware. A deep frustration grinds within him, unable to comprehend how such a lowly stable boy could possess mana. The Duke, observing his reaction, questions if the boy truly has such an ability. Meanwhile, the blonde man dismisses the notion, insisting that any talent from a stable boy who cleans up all day must be pointless. Joshua, however, considers the implications, acknowledging that while it might seem pointless, it's still a talent that could be developed. The Duke then ponders aloud, wondering who else could possess such unique skills. Joshua's expression hardens, convinced that the stable boy's talent is no mere coincidence. As they stand together in a grand hall, the Duke asks about other available options. Joshua's mind drifts to a chaotic memory, a scene of overwhelming power, where countless demons were annihilated by a single, incredible force. Returning to the present, he admits there's no way to truly gauge the extent of the stable boy's talent. He listens intently as the Duke questions the true importance of the stable boy's mana, wondering if it truly matters for someone of such low standing. Joshua, however, understands the boy's talent is undeniable, a raw power he himself had never witnessed before. The Duke, ever the pragmatist, considers the implications, musing that if the boy's abilities are truly unique, then his status is irrelevant. He then asks what Joshua intends to do, prompting Joshua to express his concern about the boy's potential to cause trouble if left unchecked. The Duke suggests they could utilize the boy's power as a tactical advantage, a new option for their forces. He continues, proposing that if the boy were to become a knight, it would certainly complicate matters. Joshua, however, remains hesitant, stating he doesn't want to use the boy, especially given the boy's traumatic memories. He stands in quiet contemplation, his thoughts heavy. A single word escapes his lips, confirming the boy's terrifying connection: demon. The Grand Imperial Palace stands majestically under a clear sky, its opulent architecture a testament to power and prestige. Inside, an imperial knight addresses a woman with long red hair, his voice urgent, explaining that an urgent matter has arisen at the imperial palace. The woman, now facing Duke Agnes, questions the nature of the trouble, asking if it concerns the Black Tower, which Joshua Sanders had recently fought. She sighs, a look of concern on her face, as she realizes the gravity of the situation. The imperial knight confirms that the trouble is not related to the Black Tower, but rather a different, more internal issue. Duke Agnes then explains that the trouble is due to a person, a new mage who has appeared at the imperial palace. He elaborates, asking if she knows about the new mage, who was sent by the Grace family. Draxia Vel Grace, her expression thoughtful, confirms that it is indeed because of the mage, who was sent by her family, and she wonders who would dare to cause trouble for them. A figure known only as the Mercenary King once dominated the battlefields, his dark armor a stark contrast to the chaos he commanded. He was not merely a swordsmaster who achieved the highest level, nor just a dark knight, but a prominent war master who reached the peak of his craft, one of the few spearmen capable of controlling any battlefield and fighting wherever he chose. His legend spread throughout the mercenary world, revered as the only one who could stand against the Empire without any affiliations, earning him the title of Mercenary King. The true problem began when Cromwell County, one of the wealthiest regions in the Empire, second to none, secretly brought him into their territory. For those caught in the political machinations, the Emperor's anger was secondary to their need to survive, unaware of the true events unfolding around them. It is this very mercenary king who is now considered the source of all the Empire's current troubles, his presence stirring widespread conflict. Other counties are already vying for the mercenary king to join their imperial palace, leading to a fierce battle among the Emperor and the princes themselves. Ultimately, the entire world risks descending into madness if this battle truly escalates, for the one who dominates the battlefield will possess the key to everything. A red-haired woman questions the bearded man, asking if he is truly considering using a child as a weapon, to which he confirms, stating the child is his lady's only hope. The red-haired woman expresses her frustration, lamenting that she can do nothing about the rebellion she finds herself embroiled in. Her words draw a concerned reaction from the bearded man, who questions the nature of her distress, though it would be natural for a duke to be concerned about the mercenary king. He then dismisses her worries, stating that her current situation is no different from the chaos caused by the mercenary king. With a serious expression, he reassures her that she needn't worry about the mercenary king, as the Duke of Cromwell County had already ensured his demise. She acknowledges the grim news, but then reveals her knowledge that he was the one who brought the mercenary king from outside in the first place. Looking away, the bearded man confesses, admitting that he was indeed the one who killed Earl Babel. The red-haired woman, her expression hardening, asserts that it is only natural for a lady to be concerned with protecting the crown, yet she cannot ignore the fact that he habitually brings such monsters into their house. Repeating her own words back to her, the man sternly demands that she offer a sincere apology to the Duke, at least once, for her accusations. Her eyes widen in shock and anger as she utters his name, Cox. Still reeling from his audacious demand, the red-haired woman watches as Cox insists she apologize to the Duke, claiming it's the only way to avoid further trouble. He dismisses her anger, reiterating that she must apologize and that he will ensure the Duke accepts it. With his piece said, Cox turns and walks away, leaving her alone in the grand hall, seething with indignation. A frustrated sigh escapes her lips, her expression a mask of simmering fury. She gazes out at the imposing architecture, her thoughts undoubtedly consumed by the recent exchange. That night, a grand celebration was underway. Vibrant fireworks exploded across the night sky, painting the darkness with fleeting bursts of color and light. Inside, a lavish feast was in full swing, with nobles and knights enjoying the festivities, a stark contrast to the earlier tension. Later, overlooking the festivities, the red-haired woman confronts Cox once more, expressing her disbelief that he could be so dismissive of the mercenary king's death, but he merely laughs, finding her concerns amusing. Blonde man A seethes with barely contained fury, his thoughts consumed by the audacity of a mere stable boy wielding mana, unable to comprehend such a lowly figure possessing such power. As his anger simmers, bearded man A, his advisor, attempts to intercede, urging his lord not to engage in such pointless endeavors. Caesar von Avalon, however, challenges the advisor's words, questioning if the lord truly has the right to act in such a manner. The blonde noble retorts defensively, insisting he isn't asking for anything unreasonable. Yet Caesar von Avalon remains unyielding, pointing out that he was never given a choice in the matter. Blonde man A, asserting his authority, declares his right to reject any plea. However, Caesar von Avalon's resolve hardens, stating that his decision is final and he will not be swayed as he was in the past. This defiance only fuels the blonde noble's anger, who accuses him of being more shameless than ever. With a cool, unwavering gaze, Caesar von Avalon simply tells him that he can beg for now. He descends the grand staircase, his mind set on a grim resolve, vowing to eliminate any obstacle in his path. As he reaches the bottom, he addresses the knight before him, stating his identity with unwavering authority. I am the fourth prince, Caesar von Avalon. Joshua, observing the young prince, reflects on his own life's journey, never having encountered such a peculiar royal, and a strange curiosity begins to stir within him, a desire to understand this enigmatic figure. He muses on how others refer to him, but for this prince, it's simply his name, Caesar, just him. A memory flashes through Caesar's mind, a dark scene where the mercenary king holds Draxia Grace, demanding to know, how did you know that cursed man's name was Draxia Grace? Joshua's thoughts return to his own past, the realization that the support he believed he had was nothing but an illusion, leaving him utterly alone and untrusted. Later, Caesar speaks with an elderly doctor, inquiring about his well-being, but quickly shifts to the true purpose of his visit, asking about the man who was there earlier. The doctor dismisses it as nothing significant, explaining that the man simply requested a meal, as everyone was waiting for him. He then observes Caesar with a knowing look, remarking that he's seen that particular expression before, on Caesar's father, the last Duke of Avalon. A blond man sneers, his face contorted in disdain, as he dismisses someone as a mere stable boy, questioning their audacity. Joshua, however, watches with a troubled expression, urging him to reconsider such pointless actions. A soft creak echoes through the quiet halls of the ducal estate. As the fourth prince, Caesar von Avalon, pushes open the heavy doors to a grand chamber, his presence commanding immediate attention. Within, Duke Agnes, his wife, and Joshua Sanders, along with their retainers, are already gathered, awaiting his audience. As the prince settles, the duchess, her expression etched with concern, begins to speak, her voice a soft plea. "My lord," she implores, her gaze fixed on him, "you mustn't do such pointless." Joshua, kneeling before the prince, echoes her sentiment, offering a humble apology for his own sadness, while the duchess stands by, identified as the duke's wife. Yet, the prince's electric blue eyes betray no emotion, holding a cold, unyielding resolve. A sudden, sharp exclamation escapes Joshua, his eyes glowing crimson with an intense, almost furious energy. Meanwhile, a light blue-haired woman, observing his attire, wonders aloud what kind of clothes he is wearing, as someone instructs Joshua to greet her. Composing himself, Joshua introduces himself, declaring his full name, Joshua von Agnes. Elsewhere, the Duchess Agnes reacts with a sharp intake of breath, her expression one of utter surprise at the mention of the name. A delicate necklace with a prominent blue gem rests against her collarbone, as she silently resolves to keep her composure. Later, the Duchess confides in the light blue-haired woman, expressing her unease and mentioning rumors of a commoner becoming a knight. She then asks if the woman has heard anything further, her gaze expectant. Joshua, now calm, confirms his status as a spear knight, though he anticipates eventual disappointment from others, as always. The light blue-haired woman, now facing him, expresses her disbelief, questioning if he truly became a knight. Still seated, the Duchess Agnes regards the light blue-haired woman, her voice laced with a subtle challenge, acknowledging Joshua's knighthood but questioning how he achieved it, while he, standing nearby, retorts with a knowing smile, suggesting her hospitality is a direct result of his new status. The light blue-haired woman, caught between them, gestures defensively, insisting on her genuine desire to serve, her words a plea for sincerity amidst the tension. The Duchess, however, simply offers a polite, almost dismissive, thanks for the concern, before smoothly transitioning to the meal preparations, her expression unreadable. Soon, the three are seated at a grand dining table, the clinking of dishes filling the air, as servants meticulously arrange a lavish spread before them. Joshua gazes at the meticulously prepared dishes, a silent acknowledgement of the effort, or perhaps the challenge, laid before him. With a delicate gesture, the Duchess indicates the feast, inviting him to eat well and emphasizing that she personally prepared it, a subtle attempt to bridge the social distance. As they dine, the Duchess reiterates her earlier sentiment, her words still questioning his path to knighthood, while Joshua, unfazed, repeats his earlier retort, highlighting the irony of her serving him. The light blue-haired woman, observing the exchange, can only offer a quiet, almost resigned, disbelief at the escalating verbal sparring. Despite the underlying tension, the Duchess maintains a composed facade, expressing her hope that this shared meal will foster a closer relationship between them. She expresses her profound gratitude for his care. Then, with a gentle smile, she invites both of them to enjoy the meal. The light blue-haired woman quietly eats, her expression serene. Both Joshua and the Duchess continue their meal, the sounds of their utensils echoing softly. A subtle, knowing smile plays on her lips. Suddenly, Duchess Agnes pauses, announcing she has something to give him before they continue their meal. Joshua, looking down with a burdened expression, apologizes for his past failure to protect her and her mother. The Duchess gently dismisses his concerns, assuring him it's fine and he shouldn't worry about it. But he insists he cannot accept such forgiveness, not from the royal family, or even the emperor, prompting Duchess Agnes to question his meaning. The Duchess expresses her profound gratitude for his care of her mother, stating she can't thank him enough. He humbly dismisses her thanks, claiming he only did what was necessary, but then she shifts the conversation, revealing something she wishes to ask. A slight, almost imperceptible, escapes her lips, her expression turning subtly thoughtful. He assures her that his words are not a lie, that he has never felt truly real until meeting her, and he is not attempting to flatter her. His internal thoughts, however, betray a deeper suspicion, as he muses that the worst lies are those that are merely kinds of lies, and that poison is somewhat similar to manna. A closer look at the food confirms his suspicions. She had indeed introduced poison, specifically ponderosa, a subtle toxin that leaves no trace. He then directly questions her motive, wondering why she would poison him during their first meeting, unless, he concludes, she is trying to test him. The Duchess, attempting to maintain her facade, argues that a poisoner would not be so obvious before trying to flatter him. A sly smile plays on her lips as she probes further, asking if he is, by any chance, the young sir whose name she doesn't know, describing him as fierce. His mind races, understanding her game. She believes he has been hiding his skills for years and will become a threat if she doesn't gain something from him, seeing her current interaction as merely an excuse. He questions why she would think this. He wonders if she truly believes he would poison the food, or if this is merely another test. Meanwhile, the Duke, his face etched with indignation, demands to know what kind of disrespect is being shown to the Duchess, questioning if such an accusation could possibly be a joke. He continues, his voice rising in disbelief, at the very idea of someone poisoning the food. Joshua's eyes glow with a fierce red light as he internally challenges her perception, wondering what she truly believes him to be. His jaw tightens, a subtle red aura flickering around him, as he reflects that from the very beginning, her gaze has been filled with a disgusting contempt that affects him deeply, all for a mere stable boy. The Duchess, however, maintains her composed facade, her thoughts dismissive, believing him to be nothing more than a stable boy who cleans up waste all day. Suddenly, a blonde noble, unable to contain his fury, erupts in an angry accusation. The Duke attempts to interject, cautioning against such pointless outbursts, reminding everyone that whispering a noble's name is a crime, and the Duchess's bloodline demands respect. Ignoring the commotion, Joshua stands firm, a vibrant blue energy swirling around his hand as he issues a direct challenge, daring anyone to raise their sword against him. Caesar arrives, radiating immense mana, his eyes glowing with fierce determination as he challenges those who would stand in his way, demanding to know why they expect him to step aside after he's already surpassed the Imperial Knights. The sheer force of his presence makes others question if he can truly wield mana. His aura intensifies, a vibrant blue energy swirling around him, as he shouts, his voice echoing with the power of an Imperial Knight. From behind, his form is a beacon of crackling blue light, his cape billowing as he faces the assembled figures, their whispers of disbelief about a mere stable boy possessing such power reaching his ears. He turns, his gaze sweeping over them, demanding to know their purpose in this place. With a powerful sound, he raises a spear, its tip glinting amidst the surging blue energy, asserting his dominance. A moment of silence falls. Elsewhere, a hand carefully holds an ancient, open book, its pages filled with forgotten lore, as a figure sits quietly in a serene park. The name of Prince Caesar is announced, his image appearing, eyes reflecting a faint blue glow. A blond man, holding a similar book, looks up with a startled expression, wondering what could be wrong. An Imperial Knight, cloaked and somber, receives news that a letter has been dispatched from the Agnes Duchy. His gloved hands carefully handle the sealed missive, its contents yet unknown. Later, he stands before a blond man, reflecting on the situation, musing that if he were the subject of such an offer, he would have already claimed the reward from the duchy. He then corrects himself, acknowledging that the individual in question is not of imperial lineage. The blond man, holding the letter with a confident smile, inquires if the offer has been accepted. The knight confirms the blond man's assessment, though he admits to being puzzled by the rumors surrounding the individual. Regardless, he concludes that as long as the offer is accepted, the person will serve as a useful pawn. The blond man, now contemplative, gazes at the letter, a thoughtful expression on his face as he wonders about the implications. A subtle smirk plays on his lips, hinting at a deeper, more sinister satisfaction. Later, seated on a park bench, the blond man is approached by the knight, who addresses him with a surprised, almost reverent, "Prince." His hands clench with a sudden, overwhelming glee, as a maniacal laugh erupts from him. His eyes glowing with a sinister red light, the blond man can hardly believe what he's hearing, scoffing at the idea that this lowly bastard, a mere stable boy, could possess mana, even as a subordinate attempts to interject, urging him to reconsider such pointless actions. A noble's voice seethes with contempt, unable to comprehend the power displayed by someone he considers a mere stable boy, questioning how such a lowly bastard could even wield mana. Meanwhile, Joshua stands ready, a vibrant blue aura flaring around him, his spear held firm as crackling energy radiates from his form. He faces a group of figures, his presence commanding attention as the blue light intensifies around him. Suddenly, the Duke's voice cuts through the tension, demanding to know what is happening. Joshua looks on, a flicker of surprise crossing his face at the Duke's unexpected arrival. The Duke then turns to the Duchess, explaining that he called her for the child's sake, his expression serious as Joshua observes from a distance. She listens intently, her gaze firm and resolute, her own thoughts clearly weighing on her. The Duke's face remains stern, a silent testament to the gravity of the situation. A memory surfaces, showing a young Joshua seated at a grand dining table, a child Duchess Agnes beside him, while a young Duke Agnes stands nearby, observing the scene. The table is laden with a feast, a perfectly roasted bird taking center stage, a stark contrast to the present day. Now, in the present, Duke Agnes stands before Joshua, asking how long he intends to stay, eager for his presence. A scroll unfurls with a soft rustle and whoosh. As a surge of blue mana swirls around an unseen figure's waist, emanating a powerful aura. Duchess Agnes then turns to Joshua, her expression earnest, asking if he truly believes he can save the duchy, to which he simply replies, "Let's go." With a determined stride, Joshua, the Duke, the Duchess, and the red-haired woman begin to walk through a grand doorway, their footsteps echoing softly. The Duchess, her face etched with concern, reiterates her unwavering commitment, declaring she will do anything if Joshua can save their home. Finally, Duke Agnes turns to Joshua, his gaze piercing, asking, "Do you hate me?" Responding to the Duke's loaded question, the Duchess's face contorts with raw emotion, her voice sharp with conviction as she declares her hatred for him. Standing before her husband and Joshua, she continues, insisting that he should already know her feelings, her continued presence proof enough of her resentment. Her expression hardens, admitting her surprise that he would even pose such an obvious question. Turning her back to him, the Duchess walks away, her words echoing the pain of a loveless past, claiming he never did anything for her, only forcing her into an unhappy marriage because she loved him. A crimson aura flares around her as she reiterates, her hatred extending to everything about him. The Duke, observing her departure with Joshua by his side, warns her that if she continues this behavior, he will assume she has no intention of helping Joshua. His gaze sharpens, believing her to be rejecting someone who, for the first time, is doing something for her. As the Duchess pauses, the Duke reaches out, grabbing her arm, demanding to know what he means by his words, while Joshua watches on. A dark, furious aura emanates from the Duke as he glares at her, his expression betraying a deeper knowledge as he asks if she truly thought he wouldn't know. He maintains his grip on her arm, his gaze unwavering as he asserts his knowledge, declaring that he is certain the other knows everything. As his words hang in the air, a faint, ethereal glow emanates from her hand, a subtle sign of her inner turmoil or perhaps a hidden power. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a single tear traces a path down Joshua's cheek, his expression etched with profound sadness. He must have felt a deep sorrow, standing alone and contemplating the weight of recent events. Later, a concerned voice breaks through his thoughts, asking why he won't confide in her, especially when she cares so deeply, to which he can only offer a hesitant, the thing is. His internal struggle evident, he laments that he is still repeating the same mistakes in this life. Just then, a voice calls from beyond the door, announcing, "Earl Joshua, it's Cain." As Cain steps into view, his gaze piercing, he confronts Joshua with a loaded question. "You knew?" His mind still reeling from the revelation, Cain grinds his teeth, thinking, this lowly bastard? Even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day, he can use mana. A voice from behind him begins, "My lord, you mustn't do such pointless." Joshua, however, remains focused on the larger issue, observing, "Really, there's no place that Meniba's decay hasn't reached in this duchy." Turning to leave, Cain explains his earlier question. "I asked the question because you weren't in your right mind." He adds, "He said that you had left to become a knight." Joshua, watching him go, states, "The duchy's people are suffering. I can't just stand by and watch." Cain then addresses his two subordinates. "To the two of you, I'll leave the rest to you." The Imperial Knight questions, "What is it?" while the bearded man affirms, "Yes, my lord." Then, in a surprising move, Cain kneels before Joshua, declaring, "What I said before was all sincere. Would you grant me the honor of serving you?" Joshua looks on, contemplating the weight of such an oath. A knight serves his lord and follows his word. Cain clarifies his intentions. "You're coming to the duchy's residence. I don't just wish to act as your own knight. I wish to be your sword and shield." Joshua, still processing the offer, asks, "Even so, do you still wish to serve me?" Cain looks up with unwavering resolve, repeating the knight's creed. A knight serves his lord and follows his word. He knows that the path he's chosen, the one that leads to tragedy, is the only one he can take if he's to risk his life as a spear knight. As Cain extends a sword towards him, Joshua lets out a soft gasp, a silent plea hanging in the air. He wonders if this is truly a test, a demand for absolute loyalty. With a firm resolve, Cain confirms his commitment, as Joshua's hand reaches out to grasp the offered blade. The weight of the sword settles in his palm, and Joshua, now holding the weapon, commands Cain to open his eyes, a new determination hardening his gaze as the Imperial Knights stand witness. Turning to Cox, he asks if the bearded man will be all right, who simply replies that this is enough. Cox, observing the young man, thinks to himself that Joshua may look like a fool, but he still needs more experience. Joshua, lost in thought, ponders if he's merely joining a power struggle with just a knight, questioning if he's forgotten his humble past. As Joshua departs, the Duke's son, Caesar von Avalon, observes the scene from horseback. He walks away, his voice firm as he declares, "Follow my path well." Cain, watching him go, wonders aloud if this new development will truly change the Duke's plans, his expression unreadable. The red-haired woman, however, calls out with genuine concern, as Caesar, Cain, and an imperial knight remain to observe. Joshua continues his walk, leaving the concerned woman and the indifferent Cain behind, his form receding into the distance. The red-haired woman voices her unease, admitting, "I didn't feel good about the Duke's sudden decision." Meanwhile, Cox, observing from horseback, acknowledges the unspoken worries of those around him, noting, "Yes, you didn't say anything, but I can tell by the look on your face." The Duke and Evelyn are leaving. Cain, standing with the red-haired woman and Duchess Agnes, dismisses their concerns with a curt, "I have a lot better things to do, my lady," before adding, "No apologies for making you worried." Cox, however, remains thoughtful, reflecting on the Duke's strategy. The Duke was too careful. This was the only way to make him a prince. Maybe. As the political landscape shifts, a loyal attendant bows deeply, greeting his lady with a heartfelt, "Ah, my lady." The red-haired woman, Evelyn, reassures Saladin, her attendant, that she is merely heading to the capital and will return in a few days, dismissing his concerns about her safety, as she won't be traveling alone. Still, Saladin insists, warning her to be careful, as the capital has become a dangerous place. Ignoring his pleas, she turns and walks away, her elegant dress swaying with each step. Soon, she is on horseback, riding alongside Joshua, and glances back at him, reminding him, "I told you I'd come back, didn't I?" Joshua, clearly annoyed by her presence, mutters about the ridiculous turn of events, while she playfully assures him she isn't going to give him something. His surprise is evident as he exclaims, "What?" With a knowing smile, Evelyn declares, "This is our family's town." Meanwhile, Cox, the bearded man, reacts with utter disbelief, letting out a shocked, "Hua." Saladin reaches out in alarm, his voice filled with urgency as he protests his lady's rash decision. An imperial knight reports, confirming that word has been received from Duke Agnes and his second son, Joshua von Agnes, who is expected to arrive within 3 days if they travel quickly. From his throne, the blonde-haired royal, Cain, simply asks, "And?" The imperial knight continues, explaining that if Joshua had been recognized as the Duke's son, he could have been a candidate for the throne, but the imperial knights rejected him. Cain's expression hardens as he corrects the knight, emphasizing that the continent's greatest spear knight was rejected by the imperial knights for his post. He muses on the situation, noting that it wasn't as if the Duke's second child, known as the greatest spear knight, didn't even receive the opportunity to become an imperial knight. A kneeling subordinate murmurs in agreement, acknowledging the arrogance of the imperial knights. The imperial knight, however, offers a different perspective, stating that Joshua has no reason to become an imperial knight, as he is already the Duke's son and the greatest spear knight, before pledging his unwavering loyalty to Cain. Cain accepts the pledge, declaring that they will follow his commands. A sinister thought crosses Cain's mind, wondering if Joshua would break the rules for his own power, and questioning just how powerful the Order of Imperial Knights truly is. The Duke's expression is grim, his thoughts echoing his earlier sentiments. 4 days later, the Capital Academy's Duke Agnes residence stands bathed in the warm glow of sunset, a grand estate awaiting a significant arrival. An Imperial Knight confirms the location, announcing that this is where Joshua von Agnes, the continent's greatest spear knight, will be staying. Inside, Prince Caesar offers a polite affirmation to the Duchess, his tone respectful. The Duchess expresses her relief that the Duke is well, while the attendant, Cox, assures her of his good health and current engagement with her. Caesar, however, remains contemplative, acknowledging Joshua's talent but hinting at a deeper reservation. As they walk, the Duchess praises Joshua's prowess, believing he will be a great asset to the empire, but Cox interjects, suggesting Joshua's rejection by the Imperial Knights implies a deeper issue than mere dislike. Cox continues, expressing his disbelief that the Duke would allow Joshua to simply fool around in the capital, before reaffirming his own promise to Caesar, to make him an amazing knight upon his return. Meanwhile, Cain, still seething, dismisses his past defeat to Joshua as a one-time fluke, and scoffs at the idea of Joshua being a hero. As Joshua and Caesar walk through the opulent halls, Caesar reflects on Joshua's unique ability to perceive mana flows, not just locally, but across the entire empire. He then urges Joshua to quickly proceed to the Duke's residence, a place secured by numerous guards under the Duke's orders. Even as the Duchess Agnes considers the impracticality of stationing more forces, given that the entire empire is already under her care. She adds that she cannot always be present to oversee everything herself. Meanwhile, Cox turns to Caesar, asking if he now understands the situation. Caesar then questions if this arrangement is what's referred to as the Imperial Knights, to which Cox corrects him, stating that he may use his name instead. Cox nods, acknowledging Caesar's understanding, a subtle well, while escaping him. The scene shifts to 1 month prior in the capital, Agus, where a window overlooks the city, serving as a vantage point to hide from prying eyes. He walks through the night, a thought lingering in his mind about the man beside him. This man, he muses, was the first to notice him, and he wonders how he managed to find him in the secluded bar at the end of the alley. Suddenly, the other man turns to him, his voice cutting through the quiet night, declaring that he seems to have gotten in his way. He then challenges him, demanding to know how he came to possess such knowledge. Their gazes meet, a silent exchange passing between them. As they continue their walk through the dimly lit streets, the conversation weighing heavily on the younger man's mind. He reflects on his purpose, having come to the capital to seek out the best informant, and realizing he desperately needs reliable information. He believes he can find the right source, but the need for crucial intelligence is paramount. The scene shifts, a wooden mug now resting on a counter, the clinking sound of a tavern filling the air. He scans the bustling tavern, his gaze sharp and calculating, as a brown-haired man gestures for him to follow. Following the informant through the crowded room, he remarks on the man's surprising ability to locate him. The brown-haired man, with a slight smirk, explains that he's simply good at his job, always knowing where to find the right people. Caesar, however, remains unconvinced, muttering that even the best informants usually follow a more discreet protocol. As they continue deeper into the establishment, he muses that this direct approach must be how the man keeps his business thriving. A thoughtful expression crosses his face, his mind already processing the implications of the informant's methods. They arrive in a dimly lit backroom, where a bearded man stands waiting amidst stacked barrels and crates. Without warning, Caesar moves with blinding speed, swiftly incapacitating the brown-haired man and sending him sprawling to the floor. The informant lies stunned on the ground, his face a mask of shock and pain. He observes his surroundings, finding the security surprisingly lax, yet dismisses any concern, confident in his own abilities. He muses that while trust is essential in such dealings, there will be no room for mistakes on the informant's part. The brown-haired informant gestures for Caesar to follow him, assuring him that their master has deemed the path safe. Their footsteps echo softly as they proceed deeper into the establishment. They arrive in a private room, where a bearded man sits waiting, as the informant leads Caesar inside. The informant turns to Caesar, acknowledging his arrival. He offers a brief, almost perfunctory, confirmation. Caesar's gaze sharpens, wondering if this man holds a higher position than he initially assumed, yet still finding the security of a secret passageway far too loose to allow him to proceed politely. He concludes, with a knowing smirk, that one truly cannot judge a book by its cover. He steps into the room, his gaze sweeping over the surroundings as the Imperial Knight confirms their arrival. Caesar simply acknowledges the statement, his attention already elsewhere. The knight then offers him a seat, a gesture of courtesy. His eyes fall upon a peculiar device on the table, a tool used to transmit information. Turning to face the Imperial Knight, Caesar's expression remains unreadable. He questions the knight's past, asking if he truly believes himself to be a loyal subject. The knight, taken aback, defends his actions, stating that he merely followed orders. Caesar recalls the knight's history, a man who had once betrayed his own master, a past that made him an ideal candidate for Caesar's current plans. He muses that while the knight's loyalty might be questionable, his ambition and desire for power were undeniable, making him a useful, if untrustworthy, asset. He states that his current assessment is based on what he observed upon arrival. The Imperial Knight, however, reminds him that he was merely following orders, a sentiment Caesar dismisses internally, believing the knight's actions were always driven by ambition. Meanwhile, a narration box reveals Joshua's internal thought. "Except you are an Agnes, my lord Joshua." A man with dark, neatly swept-back hair observes his companion, a hint of surprise in his voice as he remarks, "It seems that you know me." The two men sit across from each other at a polished table, the air thick with unspoken questions. Joshua, his expression carefully neutral, acknowledges internally that he can't maintain his pretense much longer. He realizes the man opposite him has already seen through his disguise, figuring it out immediately. The Imperial Knight leans forward, explaining that he can discern Joshua's profession from his expression, a look he's only seen on hunters and his own two older brothers, both now deceased. Joshua offers an apology, acknowledging the importance of prestige in life and humbly identifying himself as a low-rank hunter, before politely inquiring about the reason for the knight's visit. The knight retorts that while that's usually the case, he doesn't share information with just anyone, demanding to know Joshua's true rank in return. Joshua von Agnes, his resolve firm, states that if he can earn the man's trust, he will reveal everything. Caesar, his gaze sharp, expresses his frustration, believing the information he received was insufficient. The Imperial Knight, standing opposite him, agrees, admitting that the intelligence they gathered was not as useful as anticipated. He explains that the target was more cautious than expected. Caesar, however, remains focused on the bigger picture, noting that the Orbis family's influence on the black market means their resources are already spread thin. And he asks how long it would take to retrieve what they need from their current position. The knight hesitates, then admits that it would be difficult. Caesar, undeterred, declares that he will put an end to this, even if it means revealing his true identity. His eyes narrow with resolve as he states that he must first secure the trust of others. The Imperial Knight, looking at him, asks if there is anything else he needs, while Caesar thinks about the consequences of his actions, knowing that if he fails, it will be like catching a tiger by its tail. He recoils, a sharp gasp escaping him as he processes the impossible. The revelation hits him hard, making him question how this person could possess knowledge known only to a select few within the imperial family. A memory flashes, showing him in a different guise, playfully confessing a secret and asking if he's a good actor. Back in the present, a cold sweat breaks out as he recalls the organization's long search for the token symbolizing their lineage and the chilling implication that someone else now holds it. Sitting across from the Imperial Knight, he listens intently as the Knight explains that a hint was offered in exchange for what he desired. The Knight continues, mentioning something related to the Grail Yell Grace. His eyes flash with renewed intensity, demanding to know what was said about the Imperial family's sacred token. The Imperial Knight calmly reiterates the offer, explaining that a hint would be given if he revealed his true desire. Joshua spent his time recovering his strength, while also training his retainers, to ensure Lucia could be moved into a safer place within Duke Agnes territory. A secure place like this was far better for protecting her, compared to that remote location. Of course, Lucia initially tried to refuse Joshua's offer, but as the saying goes, parents willingly sacrifice for their children after much persuasion, and so, Lucia decided to move. Meanwhile, from the Imperial Prince's castle, on a day just 1 week before entering the academy, Caesar pondered his next steps. Cain observes Joshua, noting a shift in his demeanor, and asks if something has been troubling the Earl recently. Joshua's mind drifts back to a memory, a lowly stable boy who, despite his humble origins, had somehow managed to use mana. The recollection brings a look of surprise to his face, the sheer impossibility of it still striking him. Cain presses him further, asking what he means by his evasive answer. Joshua finally responds, admitting that the people he's currently dealing with are proving to be quite difficult. A knowing smirk plays on Cain's lips, his thoughts clearly focused on Joshua. He then remarks that Joshua has finally made an appearance, a subtle hint at his prolonged absence or reluctance. Joshua acknowledges him respectfully, while Cain's mind turns to the important information he seeks. Meanwhile, gloved hands carefully manipulate a small, intricate object, the Imperial family's token, a symbol whose true significance is known to only a select few. Caesar von Avalon sits across from a cloaked man, his thoughts betraying a hint of frustration at the continued presence of a certain fool, as the informant calmly asks if he is available. The informant, unfazed, dismisses the cost of his services, considering it negligible compared to the gold already received, even for information about someone as insignificant as a stable boy. Caesar acknowledges the rumors surrounding the stable boy, but before he can elaborate, the informant interjects with a new request, immediately stating his intention to charge for it as an additional service. With a raised hand, the cloaked man reiterates that he will simply add the new request to the existing bill. He then reveals a small, intricate item, explaining that this particular request transcends the usual operations of his organization, and therefore, payment for it is not an option. Caesar's expression turns thoughtful as he considers the informant's words, deducing that the man is attempting to uncover something significant for his own substantial gain. With the exchange concluded, the cloaked informant rises, announcing his departure. Later, alone in his chambers, Caesar eats a meal, his mind still processing the day's events. He then picks up the Imperial family's token, examining it closely, his thoughts turning to Count Orbis's family, who held significance until about a decade ago. Long ago, one of the few prestigious magicians, the head of the Orbis family, wielded power that could challenge even the Imperial family, creating a formidable wall of influence. Despite his high rank as a master of magic, the head of the Orbis family completely disregarded the Imperial family, a defiance that would have profound consequences. Even as the kingdom descended into chaos, he showed little interest in the Imperial family's major incidents, a stance that provoked an explosive reaction from both the kingdom and the Imperial family itself. It was as if he intended to bring down his own kingdom. And just like that, the brilliant Orbis family vanished within a couple of decades, their power fading into obscurity. Reflecting on this history, Caesar realizes the Imperial family's token, which he holds, is identical to the one once used by the Orbis family. His investigation leads him to a document bearing the name Windu, with a note questioning his Baron accent. Turning to his contact, Caesar asks if he's referring to the merchant's merchant, Baron Windu, to which the man replies, "You know him?" Caesar confirms he knows him a little bit, recognizing Windu as a highly important figure, the only one capable of obtaining information the Imperial family has kept thoroughly hidden. Then, with a hint of surprise, Caesar asks if Windu is Lucia's stepfather, a fact the man readily confirms. At a grand table, an Imperial knight addresses the Earl, requesting permission to speak soon. Caesar, seated among the nobles, acknowledges the request, remarking that it has indeed been a long time since their last meeting. Under the silent gaze of the crescent moon, the world of nobility held its own unspoken rules. It was a known fact that the higher a noble's rank, the closer their mansion was situated to the imperial palace. This was why the Duchy of Agnes's mansion corresponded to the noble's status, but the Duchy of Orbis, despite being the only family capable of using magic, had been outcast from the capital and forced to live in a rural area, disregarding their status entirely. This was beyond imagination, because they possessed an overflowing amount of mana that defied all conventional status. One of the main figures of this powerful Orbis family was Baron Probalium. The scarred man, a faint smile playing on his lips, inquires, what brings an imperial noble to his shabby residence? Caesar, accompanied by an imperial knight, responds directly, stating that Earl Agnes has sent him to see Baron Vilas. Caesar confronts Baron Probalium, his voice firm as he reminds him that the deadline for their promise has long passed. His expression remains resolute, a clear indication of his unwavering intent. A quiet thought echoes, believing the Duke to be behind the current machinations, as Duke Agnes stands before Baron Probalium, reminding him, "You promised me this, Baron Probalium." Meanwhile, Caesar von Avalon explains to Joshua Sanders that obtaining rare lives is no simple task. As you know, already rare lives are very rare, so it isn't easy for us to obtain them either. Back with the Baron, he reassures someone off-panel, "If you just wait for a little while longer." Joshua, however, reveals his own intentions. "I had intended it to you because it was a rare breed." He then turns to Baron Probalium, his gaze firm, asking, "1 week should be enough, right?" The Baron, startled but eager to please, quickly responds, "Oh, of course, sir," before adding, "As you wish." Joshua, still focused on the task, acknowledges the difficulty. "However, as you know, it is hard to obtain a rare breed," but then promises, "But I'll do my best to obtain it for you." Cain confides in Caesar, expressing his need to inform someone important. Baron Probalium listens intently, his expression a mix of concern and resolve. Meanwhile, Caesar dismisses the situation with a scoff, lamenting that he cannot live as he pleases due to constant interference. Elsewhere, an older nobleman ponders the tight deadline, wondering if a single week will be sufficient. Probalium, clutching a glass, steels himself, determined to fulfill the request no matter the cost, knowing that failure to acquire the rare life could mean losing everything. Across town, Lucia reassures Joshua, affirming her belief that he would never act against the Duke's interests. A young man with striking red and white hair, his eyes glowing with fierce resolve, declares his willingness to kill if necessary. A carriage departs from a grand estate, its journey beginning. Joshua reflects on his recent actions, a quiet determination settling over him as he considers the path he has chosen. Meanwhile, Duke Agnes, his expression grave, questions the wisdom of Joshua's demands, wondering if such a drastic measure is truly necessary. Caesar, however, seems to relish the unfolding drama, a subtle smirk playing on his lips as he anticipates the chaos Joshua's actions will undoubtedly unleash. The Duke, still troubled, voices his concern that Joshua might be acting impulsively, suggesting that even a fool would not throw away their life for a mere carrot. Joshua, unmoved by the Duke's caution, remains steadfast in his decision, his gaze fixed on a distant point as if seeing beyond the immediate consequences. The Duke can only sigh, understanding that Joshua's resolve is unshakable, even if he doesn't fully grasp the young man's true intentions. Caesar's expression darkens, a chilling resolve hardening his features, as he declares his willingness to kill if necessary to obtain the rare life for his own purposes. Later, Cain advises Joshua to be cautious, reminding him of the dangers associated with Baron Probalium, but Joshua simply states that some risks are necessary to become a true hero. As their carriage departs, carrying them towards their next destination, Joshua and Cain acknowledge the gravity of their mission, ready for whatever lies ahead. The carriage wheels turn steadily, carrying its occupants away from the grand estate, as the journey continues. Eventually, they arrive at a distinguished establishment, the Royal Palace's tailor shop. Inside, Duke Agnes and Duchess Agnes are greeted by Count Ribera, who acknowledges their presence, stating it has been a while since their last meeting. The Duke, in turn, expresses his pleasure at seeing him, hoping he hasn't interrupted Ribera's work. Ribera quickly reassures him, insisting he is happy to see his grace again. Count Ribera, despite his noble title, was born a commoner, a fact that often drew disdain from other nobles who looked down on him. This unusual display of a duke smiling and greeting a commoner-born noble was a rare sight, prompting whispers among other onlookers who recognized the man accompanying the Duchess. Despite the ridicule and mockery he faced, Count Ribera remained steadfast, always ensuring his family was provided for, even if other nobles remained unaware of his quiet strength. Count Ribera, a man who embodies the unique blend of nobility and commoner resilience, extends a hand to the Duke, acknowledging their long-standing acquaintance. Meanwhile, Joshua, observing the Duchess, wonders if she has always been so talkative, a thought that crosses his mind as he watches her animated conversation. The Duchess, turning to him, addresses him with a slight tremor in her voice, her words barely audible as she calls out his name. As the Duke and Duchess stand before him, Ribera's resolve hardens, a silent vow forming within him. He will take every necessary action to ensure his family's comfort and happiness. Suddenly, Joshua interjects, his voice cutting through the air with a sharp, insistent command to wait. A subtle tension grips him, his jaw clenching as he processes the unfolding situation, his gaze sharp and focused. The Duchess's hands, clasped together, betray a hint of nervousness or anticipation, her posture elegant yet reserved, leaving Joshua to ponder, with a touch of awe, why such a beautiful woman was present in this place. He turns to his maid, a question in his eyes, wondering if this is her first time seeing a duchess. As the Duke and Duchess walk ahead, Lucia, ever vigilant, quietly urges him to be careful. Meanwhile, Count Ribera, observing the scene, ponders why the eldest son of Duke Agnes, who commands the 12 families, would visit a mere restaurant. Unaware of the Count's thoughts, Joshua declares his intention to look for someone, prompting a surprised query from Lucia. Count Ribera, with a slight bow, formally introduces himself as the chief of the Ribera Tailor. He observes Joshua, a thought forming in his mind, as Lucia confirms his identity to her lord. Joshua's gaze remains fixed, his mind racing with the implications of his expected role as the next Duke of Agnes, and the uncertainty of how to handle the Duchess before that. A fierce resolve hardens his expression. He cannot look away from her, knowing he must be active and protective. Count Ribera, meanwhile, reaffirms his internal commitment to showing his unwavering loyalty to the Duke. He listens as the Duke expresses concern, noting that Joshua is the only one who can use such power, yet still lacks a proper title. From a distance, Lucia observes the exchange, her attention drawn to the Duke's words. A soft realization dawns on her face, a quiet understanding of the situation. Joshua, however, dismisses the Duke's concerns with a resolute expression, his thoughts focused on the Marquis Villian, who he believes must be dealt with. Suddenly, the conversation is interrupted as Cain, flanked by 2 Imperial Knights, steps forward, demanding Joshua show proper respect. Cain's gaze is sharp and unwavering, his words carrying the weight of Imperial authority. Joshua, however, meets his challenge with a defiant smirk, refusing to be intimidated by the Imperial Knight. Cain's eyes glow with a fierce blue light as he unleashes a surge of mana, challenging Joshua's audacity. Joshua stands his ground, his back to the knights, internally acknowledging the challenge and his own true identity as the history's greatest spear knight. This lowly bastard, even though he's just a stable boy who cleans up crap all day. Cain's voice rings out, filled with contempt, as he confronts Joshua and the Duke. You dare speak to me like that? Joshua's eyes flash crimson, a silent, furious retort to the insult, as he internally questions. He can use mana. The Imperial Knight's own eyes blaze with a fierce blue light, mana swirling violently around him as he lets out a guttural roar. His blue aura intensifies, pressing down on the room, while Joshua's own crimson energy begins to emanate, meeting the challenge. Your insolence knows no bounds, Cain seethes. Rude, what are you talking about? You're the one who's rude, Joshua retorts, a faint smirk playing on his lips, but the blonde knight remains unyielding. My lord, you mustn't do such pointless. Duke Agnes attempts to interject, but Joshua cuts him off, declaring, I am Joshua von Frederick. Lucia watches the escalating tension from a distance. From another vantage point, Caesar's eyes widen in surprise. Usher, Ben, Frederick? A determined glint enters his gaze as he considers the implications. There's no way. He's the one who killed the Imperial Knight. Under the pale glow of a full moon, the ancient stones of Loch Castle stand sentinel against the night sky. Its imposing structure looms, a silent testament to centuries of history, as a conversation begins within its walls. An older man, with a kind face and a neatly trimmed mustache, listens intently to the young woman across from him, who seems to be mid-sentence. Her blue eyes hold a thoughtful expression as she continues, remarking that she sees he is doing quite well, better than expected. Meanwhile, in a shadowed, unknown location, a hooded figure with piercing yellow eyes speaks of a hurried summoning, wondering if something unexpected has occurred. Back in the castle, the young woman looks down, her expression serious, as she reveals that a new, unforeseen variable has appeared in the Avenue room. She considers if Caesar von Avalon has simply grown stronger, but quickly dismisses the thought, clarifying that he is still the same as before, except for one crucial change. He now possesses a new aura and the power of a dragon. A cloaked figure, eyes glowing with an eerie purple light, reflects on the unexpected variable that appeared in the Avenue room, a result of their hurried summoning. Seated at a table, a young woman with glowing green eyes and an older man listen intently as the hooded figure explains that the summoning was successful, but the variable was not what they had anticipated. The hooded figure gazes out over a distant city, contemplating how all the countries are poised to erupt into conflict, wondering if this is the right time for such a development. Meanwhile, a formidable assembly of armored knights stands ready, their presence a stark reminder that for years, the nations have been storing and accumulating power. Now, with all that power having been distributed, a crowd of nobles and soldiers gathers, eager to witness the return of Caesar von Avalon, who they believe will bring happiness to their countries. Yet, the grim reality is that the distribution of power only meant one thing: war. The young woman, her green eyes glowing with intensity, acknowledges that the proportion of the variable's mana is absolute. The hooded figure confirms that Caesar von Avalon's new aura and the power of a dragon are now his, a development that leaves the older man and young woman exchanging concerned glances. The young woman, her expression thoughtful, concludes that no country would be able to withstand such power. A young woman, her expression earnest, declares that everything will be all right, urging trust. She adds, with unwavering resolve, that she will put her life on the line. Caesar von Avalon stands poised, his gaze sharp and observant. In a grand hall, the young woman's words echo, as Duke Agnes, observing the scene, cautions against such pointless actions. Caesar, his expression unreadable, ponders the significance of the situation. Elsewhere, a green-haired man, his face contorted in anger, scoffs at the idea of a lowly stable boy using mana. He continues, his voice dripping with disdain, that such a person should know their place. Duke Agnes, standing nearby, watches as the green-haired man, still fuming, vows to teach him a lesson. A bald man, surrounded by glowing blue energy, admits his surprise at the dragon's power, yet notes that the wielder is still just a child. The arrogant noble, standing over the fallen Joshua, sneers at his lowly status, yet a flicker of surprise crosses his face as he senses the stable boy's unexpected mana. Joshua begins to rise, a vibrant blue aura flaring around him. As both the arrogant noble and a green-haired observer recoil in stunned disbelief at the sudden surge of power. Before the noble can react, Joshua unleashes a concentrated burst of azure energy, sending his attacker reeling backward with a pained grunt. He collapses to the ground, defeated, as Joshua stands victorious, the noble's disbelief echoing in the chamber. Joshua warns him to cease his foolishness, threatening to report the incident to the Duke. A declaration that only fuels the noble's outrage as he demands to know his opponent's identity. I told you, Joshua states calmly, I'm Joshua von Agnes. The green-haired observer, having overheard the name, is utterly stunned, grappling with the implications of Joshua's identity and his connection to the Duke's lineage. A devastating blow connects with the arrogant noble's face, sending a spray of blood into the air. The force of the impact sends him reeling backward, his body flying across the polished floor. From a distance, the green-haired noble watches, a look of utter disbelief on his face, muttering that this situation is far from good. The arrogant noble lies defeated on the ground, while Joshua stands over him, the fallen man's thoughts consumed by confusion over how a lowly bastard could possess such power. Joshua pins him down, ignoring the green-haired noble's plea to stop, and declares his true identity, Joshua von Agnes. As blue mana flares around him, the green-haired noble gasps, the name Joshua von Agnes echoing in his mind. A stern-faced Duke Agnes confronts Joshua, his gaze piercing as he questions if the young man believes he can deceive him. The Duke's thoughts race, finding it illogical that this lie could be maintained by someone who appears to be at least an A rank, a powerful young kid. He concludes that if things continue this way, the truth will soon be impossible to conceal from the world. Duke Agnes, his gaze distant, reflects on the implications of Joshua's power, warning himself that if a knight must be defeated, they must face deep consequences. Meanwhile, the green-haired noble, still reeling from the previous encounter, can only think of the arrogant noble's dismissive words, how he had scoffed at Joshua as a mere stable boy. The arrogant noble's own shock echoes in his memory, questioning if Joshua could truly wield mana. In a different chamber, a blonde subordinate bows deeply, his voice laced with urgency. He implores his unseen lord to cease their pointless actions, even as Joshua hangs upside down, held by his hair. But Joshua, with a fierce glint in his eyes, declares his intent to demonstrate the true meaning of a knight, breaking free from his restraints. Enveloped in a brilliant blue aura, he charges forward with unstoppable force. The blonde subordinate collapses to the ground, defeated, as Joshua coldly states he has no need for weak enemies. All that remains of his previous captivity is a single broken chain. At the capital, a young man with electric blue hair speaks into a communication device, declaring his intent to remain there. Meanwhile, in a grand hall, Joshua stands over a defeated blonde knight, his chains broken, as Duke Agnes and Lucia observe the scene with a mix of awe and concern. The Duke, still processing the display of strength, questions how a mere stable boy could wield such mana. Back at the capital, the blue-haired noble's expression hardens as he continues his conversation. As Joshua turns to leave the hall, the Duke's maid attempts to interject, her voice filled with apprehension, but the Duke silences her, his own thoughts clearly elsewhere. Her concern is palpable, her eyes reflecting a deep unease. Suddenly, breaking away from the group, the maid breaks into a frantic run, her voice piercing the air with a desperate cry of Isabel Lynn. The unexpected outburst catches the blue-haired noble off guard, his expression shifting to one of surprise. In the aftermath of the confrontation, an imperial knight kneels beside the defeated blonde figure, who remains unconscious on the ground. A polite, bespectacled man offers guidance, his smile reassuring. Sir Muku, he begins, I will guide you to the nearest doctor. Within a grand, ornate hall, light streams through a massive stained-glass window, illuminating the intricate details of the architecture. Below it, a solemn stone statue stands, hands clasped in prayer, a silent guardian in the vast space. The hall stretches out, empty save for a few robed figures standing respectfully before the imposing figure, their presence dwarfed by the sheer scale of the chamber. Elsewhere, a blonde noble clenches his jaw, his eyes wide with disbelief and anger, a bandage stark against his cheek as he grinds his teeth, muttering, he can use mana. He touches the fresh wound, the sting of humiliation evident in his voice as he curses. This lowly bastard did this to my face. His anger boils over, his expression a mask of fury and indignation, the bandage a stark reminder of his recent defeat. Turning to an imperial knight, the noble gestures dismissively, his pride shattered as he admits, I cannot win. The knight's eyes widen slightly in surprise, a silent question hanging in the air as he processes the unexpected confession. Still seething from his recent defeat, the arrogant noble lashes out, his voice dripping with contempt for his opponent. He turns his back to the imperial knight, declaring that they must return to their master, where the knight will face severe punishment. Before continuing his indignant rant about the kid, who doesn't even look like he's from a respectable family. The imperial knight, however, remains composed, contemplating the noble's words and finding them utterly illogical. Such an action, he muses, would be impossible to justify. The noble, seemingly agreeing to the return, then challenges the knight's assessment, demanding to know what justification he speaks of. His anger flaring once more, he questions if the knight truly believes his actions are not justified. The imperial knight calmly explains that even if someone else were at fault, the dignity and prestige of the duke would plummet, regardless of the circumstances. The noble's expression shifts from anger to confusion, struggling to grasp the weight of the knight's words, muttering about the importance of such matters, yet unable to fully articulate his understanding. The knight continues, emphasizing how such an incident could drastically alter the duke's standing and the entire house's future. He continues to explain the gravity of the situation, reminding the noble that the duke's reputation is at stake and that the rumors of his defeat must be swiftly erased. The arrogant noble, however, can only seethe, staring down at the defeated figure of Joshua Sanders. The imperial knight presses on, emphasizing that if the duke's prestige were to crumble, the noble's own position would become precarious, leaving him vulnerable to the machinations of others. Meanwhile, in another location, the green-haired noble reacts with disbelief, muttering that the rumors must be erased before they spread too far. Back in the noble's chambers, the imperial knight continues to advise, suggesting that the noble should have been more cautious, especially given the circumstances. The green-haired noble's thoughts race, a narration box confirming that Asher von Frederick was merely a token, a pawn in a larger game. He looks up, his expression hardening, demanding to know what exactly is being discussed. His gaze shifts, a realization dawning on him, as he considers the implications of the situation. A sudden shock washes over his face, his eyes widening in utter disbelief as he exclaims that it's not here. Back with the imperial knight, he calmly reiterates his point, emphasizing the need for the noble to understand the broader context of his actions. Still seething from his defeat, the arrogant noble fumes about the lowly bastard Joshua Sanders, dismissing him as a mere stable boy who cleans up crap all day. His imperial knight, however, attempts to interject, reminding him of the severe political implications. Meanwhile, the green-haired noble, his eyes wide with disbelief, can only utter a stunned, "He can use mana?" Back with the fuming noble, he dismisses the knight's counsel, declaring that he will send a substitute to deal with the problem, rather than facing it himself. The imperial knight, however, persists, trying to make him understand the gravity of the situation. The green-haired noble's shock deepens, his mind reeling from the revelation that Asher von Frederick was merely a token, and that the crucial it is not present. The imperial knight, holding a distinctive ring in his hand, ponders aloud if the earl would truly bother to retrieve such an item. The arrogant noble, still lost in his pride, dismisses the knight's concerns as pointless, while the imperial knight continues to warn him about the machinations of others, urging him to consider the duke's reputation. He recalls the arrogant words, a sneer in his mind, dismissing someone as a mere stable boy who cleans up filth all day. Meanwhile, Caesar's voice echoes, explaining that no one truly rules alone, the emperor of the Agnes Empire being the ultimate authority. The imperial knight processes this, a dawning realization that he had mistakenly believed Caesar acted on his own will, thinking his actions were solely for the successor of one of the 10 great houses. The truth settles in, revealing that all of it was merely a ploy to gain the duke's recognition. A frustrated fist slams down, as the thought crosses his mind that perhaps Caesar could become a better person in the future, surpassing even the duke. His reverie is broken by a soft, apologetic voice, uttering a quiet, "Excuse me." He looks up to find Caesar seated across from him at a table, a somber expression on his face. A memory or thought of Lady Ablina flashes through Caesar's mind, her gentle image appearing before him. His gaze drops, and he confesses with a heavy heart that he never wants to see her again. The imperial knight's thoughts are abruptly cut short as Caesar declares, "I'm sorry, but I can't go back to the duchy." A flashback reveals a desolate, icy cliffside, home to the Archmage Galen, whose power arrogantly defies the world's reality. Back then, he had believed the duke would be a suitable ally. But in another memory, Lady Ablina explains to Caesar that after a certain event, the duke found himself in a difficult situation, lamenting that if her father and she had possessed more power, they could have offered assistance. Ablina expresses her concern, to which Caesar gently replies, "Don't worry about me, Lady Ablina. If you are worried," he continues, "it would be better if you would grant me one request for the future." A soft click sounds as Ablina reacts with a look of surprise. Back in the present, a loud crash echoes as Caesar stands by a window, the imperial knight observing him from behind. Another crash sounds, and a faint smile plays on Caesar's lips as he continues to gaze outside. A subtle, almost predatory smile plays on Caesar's lips, a silent acknowledgement of the chaos unfolding outside. He turns, his gaze fixed on the window, observing the downpour and the source of the disturbance. Outside, amidst the heavy rain, a brilliant flash of light erupts, followed by a deafening crash. Another surge of crackling energy illuminates the stormy night. From the heavens, a figure descends with impossible speed, streaking through the downpour, wreathed in a vibrant, glowing aura. Joshua Sanders lands with a fierce, determined expression, his eyes burning with resolve as Caesar watches, visibly startled by his sudden appearance. He knew he was being watched. The knight continues his descent, his form a blur of motion and light as he nears the ground. His face contorted in anger, Joshua ponders, what would you do if? Having completed his dramatic arrival, Joshua stands resolute before the grand building, his presence a stark challenge. A bald, stern-faced man watches the unfolding chaos, his expression a mixture of surprise and irritation. Turning to an imperial knight, he demands to know if the intruder is truly the Earl of Agnes, Joshua Sanders, and questions why he would appear in such a manner. Joshua, his eyes sharp and focused, stands amidst the wreckage he created. The bald man, now identified as Baron Progallum, observes him with a mix of apprehension and disdain, while an arrogant noble nearby recoils from the sheer force of the arrival. Progallum's thoughts race, acknowledging that Joshua's appearance is indeed faster than expected, but he quickly dismisses the notion of any real problem. Meanwhile, Caesar von Avalon watches the scene unfold, a subtle, knowing smirk playing on his lips. Baron Progallum then addresses Joshua directly, stating that he is the lowest of the low, a mere stable boy who cleans up waste all day, and questions his ability to use mana. Joshua, unfazed, responds with a chilling question, asking what Progallum would do if he were to kill everyone present. The Baron's face contorts in a furious grimace, as he struggles to comprehend the audacity of Joshua's words. An arrogant noble, still reeling from the previous exchange, dismisses Joshua as nothing more than a lowly stable boy, incapable of such audacity. Joshua, however, remains unfazed, his gaze dropping slightly as he calmly states that they will talk once the noble comes to his senses, adding that he created his request after getting something in return. Baron Progallum, observing the exchange, looks down at the ornate rings on his fingers, a flicker of unease crossing his face as he wonders what kind of request Joshua could possibly be making. Joshua's eyes glow with an intense blue light as he pointedly remarks that the rings on the Baron's fingers are quite expensive, a subtle but potent warning. The Baron, startled by the implication, instinctively reaches out, attempting to interject and prevent Joshua from saying anything further, but his words are cut short. Joshua simply smirks, his gaze piercing, as he asks the Baron directly, "And you are?" The grand gates of a city stand tall, a beacon of civilization. Beyond the city, a winding dirt path cuts through a dense, ancient forest. Along this path, two figures walk away from the city, one of them remarking, "How do you rob such expensive jewelry with a straight face?" Caesar, looking back with a slight smirk, explains, "It's a healthy business." He continues, "I gave them a chance, but they didn't take it. I just took what I was owed in return." Joshua's hand, adorned with a newly acquired ring, is shown as Caesar questions, "But why did you request for Probalium's rings?" Caesar then clarifies, "You see, this is how I found out about his mysterious race to acquire them." The scene shifts to a burning forest, where figures flee in terror, as a narration explains that with their attractive land and resources, the elves were always a target, and in the process, they lost their land and lives. The elves harbored a deep hatred for humanity, eventually retreating to a central forest on the continent to protect themselves and their sacred lands. This sanctuary became known as the Elves' Forest, where the High Elves collectively erected a powerful barrier, ensuring their seclusion from human eyes. Yet, this act of self-preservation proved to be a grave error, as the barrier trapped them within, cutting off their access to the outside world and vital resources. One by one, the High Elves perished, until only a single one remained, surrounded by the fading remnants of his people. Humans, observing from afar, came to believe this lone survivor was the Elven King, bestowing upon him the name Elurus. For centuries, Elurus dedicated himself to researching immortality and the tragic downfall of his race, before eventually vanishing from the Elves' Forest. Lord Carathi, the last head of House Deriz, also disappeared, his fate intertwined with the mysteries of the elves. Caesar ponders the implications, noting that for Elurus to achieve immortality or destroy his own race, he must have had assistance, especially since the Elves' Forest remains undiscovered. He concludes that without knowing the forest's location, he cannot even bring about death, despite sensing no mana from its supposed whereabouts. Elurus, having received the dire news too late, appeared before the Lord's assembly, his concern for the situation evident. There, he found the last child of House Carathi, who had been forced into servitude by other nobles. Elurus gently took her hands, his eyes welling up with apologetic tears. He placed a ring upon her finger, a symbol that would one day mark her as the future Elf King, a prophecy that would unfold many years from that moment. However, the last descendant of House Orbis, the child Elurus had met, became gravely ill and unfortunately passed away soon after, a cruel and tragic fate for a noble house. This very ring, now on the child's hand, was said to possess hidden powers, powers that would remain dormant for a long time to come. Lost in thought, Caesar barely registered the Imperial Knight's question, only offering a distracted, What did you say? As they continued their walk, the knight announced their arrival. Standing before a grand edifice, the knight prompted him, My lord, won't you come in? Joshua listens intently, his expression unreadable as the noble speaks. With a confident smile, the arrogant noble asks for a favor, and Joshua readily agrees to do anything for him. He explains that while the favor benefits him, it will also serve Joshua's interests. As they walk, the noble emphasizes his need for loyal subordinates who will support him, not weaklings who cannot stand by his side in battle. Joshua looks down as the noble reveals his intention to soon enter the academy, but clarifies that Joshua will be the one to enter it. With a knowing smile, the noble asks if Joshua means becoming an imperial knight, then immediately expresses concern that such a development would jeopardize his own plans. A narration box reveals that Joshua is a descendant of House Orbis, a noble family from a small rural village. The narration continues, detailing the noble's contempt for the imperial family and his need to keep Joshua by his side to prevent any disrespectful actions, especially given Joshua's family was already cast out of the capital. Joshua's concern deepens as the narration adds that Varon Shinvillas is also at the Imperial Academy. He considers the situation, guessing that the other party will undoubtedly try to manipulate him. Meanwhile, Caesar confidently assures him that he will live up to expectations, adding that while it might be hard to believe, he is particularly skilled at this. He then reveals a document, explaining that his request is quite different from what might be expected. Looking directly at Joshua, Caesar states his desire for him to become an imperial knight, a request that leaves Joshua momentarily speechless. Caesar continues, his gaze lowered, emphasizing that this isn't a demand from a lord, but a plea from a friend, trusting Joshua completely. Joshua, surprised, reflects on the unusual nature of the request, considering that even Duke Agnes had never needed to beg for such a favor. As Caesar begins to lower himself, Joshua quickly intervenes, declaring that he does not wish to see anyone kneel before him. Caesar acknowledges their existing master-servant relationship, but insists that if he can pay for Joshua's favor, he expects a reward in return. With a slight, knowing smile, Joshua finally agrees, ready to proceed with the arrangement. He looks at Caesar, his expression firm, and states, I wish that you would only look at me and no one else other than me. Caesar, with a confident smile, readily agrees, Of course. I will never allow you to look at anyone else other than me. I swear by my name. With their agreement sealed, the two walk side by side across a grand stone bridge, a towering structure visible in the distance, revealing a map of the vast continent of Igrant, where an ancient tower, emphasized by 4 superstructures on its sides, stands so tall it seems to pierce the very sky. This magnificent edifice is known simply as the Magic Tower. Later, Joshua finds himself seated at a grand, circular table, surrounded by several figures in a richly appointed chamber. As the Magic Tower Lord, Old Man Play, begins to speak. As the meeting commenced, a green-haired noble voiced his frustration, lamenting that they never knew when the flame and smoke would simply vanish, before adding that Lord Joshua had departed for the current site the day prior. An imperial knight, addressing the green-haired noble as Nibis, chided him for his tardiness, then calmly announced the commencement of their 27th meeting. Within the grand, empty meeting hall, the discussion continued, with no new information yet available regarding the tower's strategic plan. A slight smile played on Joshua's lips as he remarked, expressing his pleasure at being able to attend this meeting alongside the venerable old man. The imperial knight, maintaining a stern demeanor, reminded him to show proper respect, emphasizing the formal nature of their gathering. He then noted Joshua's unusual presence, as he typically did not attend such meetings, before Joshua clarified his purpose, to hear the old man's words. Joshua then shifted the conversation, inquiring about the more pressing matter of whether someone had truly awakened their mana. The imperial knight confirmed the awakening, adding that it wasn't just the awakening, but also the Brontot that was significant. Joshua's eyes widened in surprise, echoing the name. As the imperial knight and Nibis looked on, the revelation of the Brontot clearly a shocking development. The formal meeting continues, with one of the imperial knights reporting that the tower plan isn't progressing as expected, leaving the Magic Tower's intentions unclear, while Duke Abanus remains silent. However, a female Magic Tower official interjects, suggesting that the lack of progress might not be the real issue at hand. The Magic Tower Lord then adds that while they have some understanding of the magma, the true challenge lies in stopping the mysterious Brontot. A wry smile plays on Joshua's lips as he muses that he now understands why lightning had fled. The green-haired noble, Nibis, reiterates their lack of knowledge about the Brontot's nature, but reveals that something significant has been discovered nearby. His eyes widen in surprise as he announces that a magic swordsman has appeared close to where the Brontot manifested. The news clearly rattles him, as he repeats the astonishing rumor. A magic swordsman has truly appeared. The entire assembly is visibly taken aback by this unexpected development, the implications of such a powerful individual's presence weighing heavily on the room. The female Magic Tower official, her expression now one of deep concern, wonders aloud if this means he has finally made an appearance. Her voice rings out, demanding to know if the mysterious he has truly appeared. Old Man Play, attempting to calm the situation, explains that the information is still unconfirmed, but the Magic Tower official quickly retorts, questioning how such a significant event could simply not happen. The green-haired noble interjects, confirming the existence of a magic swordsman, a fact that only seems to fuel her growing frustration. Old Man Play reiterates the need for investigation, suggesting they send someone to look into the matter. She dismisses his suggestion, arguing that if the information is indeed uncertain, then sending someone now would be pointless. Play attempts to soothe her once more, urging her to calm down and understand the gravity of the situation. But his words fall on deaf ears as her frustration boils over, her expression hardening with barely contained anger. She rises from her seat, her voice sharp with indignation, demanding to know how they can simply dismiss such a critical topic. The green-haired noble, along with Joshua and the other observers, watches as she continues to press the issue, her concern for the Brontat's potential threat clearly overriding all other considerations. Duke Agnes leans forward, his voice laced with skepticism, demanding to know the source of Joshua's confidence. But Joshua, his hand clenched in frustration, cuts him off, declaring, "Enough." As the tension rises in the meeting room, Old Man Play attempts to mediate, reminding everyone that they are about to address the main topic. Yet the Magic Tower official, her expression tight with impatience, retorts, "That's up to you, my lord." Her gaze remains fixed, a clear sign of her deep concern and frustration. Suddenly, a door creaks open, drawing attention away from the heated discussion. The meeting continues, but Old Man Play, his patience wearing thin, dismisses the gravity of the situation with a scoff, insisting that the supposed magic swordsman is nothing more than a stable boy, cleaning up refuse all day. He then challenges the official, his tone laced with doubt, questioning if she would truly be capable of handling such a task herself. Sunlight streams through a grand arched window, illuminating a vast, empty hall. Within its opulent space, Joshua stands, his back to the onlookers, as a complex array of golden runes materializes before him, shimmering with raw magical energy. A sharp gasp escapes one of the observers, witnessing the display. Caesar watches intently, a system window appearing before him, detailing the intricate magical properties of the runes Joshua is manifesting. The arrogant noble, however, remains skeptical, muttering about his disdain for ghosts and questioning if the Lord truly possesses such magical prowess, while the green-haired noble observes with a more neutral expression. The golden runes continue to form, each symbol glowing brighter than the last, culminating in a final, powerful burst of light. Joshua's hand, adorned with a simple ring, moves with practiced ease, tracing the intricate patterns in the air, the magical energy swirling around his fingertips. With the demonstration complete, Joshua confidently strides forward, a small, glowing orb now held in his palm, as Caesar watches him, seemingly impressed. Joshua assures them he is well. Still unconvinced, the arrogant noble challenges Joshua, demanding to know which high elf granted him the blessing to understand the ancient rune language, his voice laced with suspicion. The arrogant noble fumes, unable to comprehend the display of power before him, dismissing it as the work of a mere stable boy, while another voice expresses disbelief that Joshua could wield mana at all. Joshua, holding a glowing orb of energy, humbly admits he doesn't know much about other skills, but explains that T-class magic automatically protects him from danger and increases his connection with the spiritual arts. The arrogant noble, still seething, then makes a request to the Lord. Caesar, observing the exchange, directly questions Joshua, asking if the elf's blessing was bestowed upon him. Joshua, holding up a ring, clarifies that it was crafted by a dwarf of the Golden Axe tribe, and that he can therefore call this a rune. Caesar processes this new information, his expression thoughtful. A tender memory flashes through Joshua's mind, showing him as a young boy, smiling brightly while holding hands with a kind-faced woman amidst a shower of flower petals. He realizes he was thinking of his mother. As the magical energy swirls, a faint, ethereal glow emanates from his hand, intensifying with a soft, resonant hum. Joshua stands at the center of a complex rune circle, bathed in its radiant light, his expression unreadable. A quiet determination settles over him as he thinks, "I want to see him." Meanwhile, in a different chamber, a masked figure addresses someone off-panel. "Zero, you contacted me so suddenly." Lucia, her face partially obscured, then turns to an imperial knight, pondering, could it be because of that kid? She continues, explaining that while there was a minor incident, more importantly, she believes Joshua is hiding more than they expected. Her gaze sharpens as she states, "I already know the kid is special." The imperial knight, listening intently, begins to ask, "By special, do you mean?" Joshua finds himself pondering the true purpose of the magic tower, wondering why he would ever need to use it. Meanwhile, a magic tower official, surrounded by other nobles and officials, expresses surprise, exclaiming that someone can actually use mana, asserting that the true master of the tower is the one capable of wielding it. She continues, explaining that the only way to use the Genesis Stone as an ingredient for something is through a specific method, referring to the Genesis Stone itself. The official emphasizes the critical importance of the Genesis Stone, or rather, the enjoyment derived from its use, as the soul means to achieve their goal. She then clarifies that the Avalon, known as the Magic Tower's most significant artifact, is also the most important artifact of the entire empire. Joshua, listening intently to the unfolding discussion, considers the implications of these powerful artifacts. He thinks to himself that if he could only acquire the Genesis Stone, he wouldn't have to search for the one who holds the key to his past. With a surge of resolve, he declares his unwavering intention to obtain it. Back in the Magic Tower, the official turns to an unseen individual, entrusting something important to John. Joshua Sanders kneels before a glowing red orb, his hand pressed to his chest in a solemn salute, blue particles swirling around him as his eyes ignite with an electric glow. He knows what he must do, his resolve hardening. And under the vast, star-dusted canopy of the night forest, he unleashes a devastating surge of blue lightning, tearing through the surrounding trees. A terrified, gagged man, caught in the magical maelstrom, struggles against the binding blue energy that lifts him helplessly into the air. His muffled cries lost to the crackling power. The very air vibrates as lightning strikes him repeatedly, a voice echoing the judgment. The god of light that travels through the sky has sent his judgment by lightning, to gather his breath and break his bones, for those are the ones that are not his. Joshua stands poised, blue lightning crackling around his form as he declares, "The rain of lightning will fall on your heads." His eyes glowing with fierce resolve, he focuses his power, naming the devastating spell, Lightning Rain. The air around him hums with unleashed energy, as bolts of brilliant blue lightning tear through the darkness, striking down one figure after another. The sheer force of the attack sends monster-like creatures reeling, their forms dissolving into dust. In the aftermath, the forest floor is littered with the defeated, a testament to his overwhelming power. He looks back at the carnage, a sigh escaping him as he wonders, "Ugh, now that I'm done, how am I supposed to get back to the duchy?" An arrogant noble grinds his teeth, his face contorted in fury, unable to comprehend the audacity of the man before him. Joshua, however, remains unfazed, his eyes glowing with electric blue energy as arcs of lightning crackle around him, demanding an answer from his captor. The noble, a figure of the Avalon Empire, had held him bound, convinced of his own superiority, but Joshua's calm power now makes him question everything. A thoughtful hum escapes Joshua as he observes the noble's sudden apprehension, the tables having decisively turned. He senses the noble's dawning realization that the power Joshua wields far surpasses his own, a glowing symbol on his back hinting at the true depth of his abilities. The noble, now visibly shaken, admits his misjudgment, confessing he never suspected Joshua was a mage, let alone one of such caliber. Joshua stands tall, looking down at the kneeling noble, who, despite his talent, had succumbed to arrogance, and asks if he truly believes he is not a mage. He then questions the noble's belief that his power could be used to destroy the empire, calling such a thought a grave mistake. The noble, now humbled, desperately pleads with Joshua to return to the duchy, warning him not to fall into the same abyss of arrogance that consumed him. He surveys his new surroundings, a stark contrast to the duchy he knew, realizing the capital's academy is a completely different world. His attention is drawn to a bound man, who cries out for help, prompting a questioning glance from him. The bound man, despite his predicament, seethes with rage, threatening to crush anyone who dares to cross him, reminding them of his past warnings. A slight smirk plays on his lips. He finds the man's display of powerlessness amusing, wondering how someone so strong could end up in such a state. He points out the Sterapi's mark between the man's eyes, connecting it to his status as an A-class mage. As he speaks, a faint blue aura begins to emanate from him, a subtle display of the lightning of the seven sages. The bound man, now identified as Jack Sterapi's, stares in disbelief, while Joshua calmly reflects on this new understanding of power. Jack, frustrated, laments his predicament, acknowledging Joshua's knowledge of his identity despite his own lower rank as a viscount. He then attempts to form an alliance, offering his assistance and extensive connections within the capital. Still bound, Ian seethes, unable to comprehend the situation, muttering about how a lowly stable boy could possess such power, even daring to use mana. His face contorted in a snarl, he dismisses any notion of caring about Joshua's status, his anger palpable. He continues to rail, demanding to know how a mere stable boy could possibly possess such formidable mana. A guard attempts to interject, but Ian cuts him off, declaring that if a noble like him could simply vanish, the Empire would have no reason to search for a mere stable boy. As Ian's tirade reaches its peak, Joshua Sanders responds not with words, but with a silent, overwhelming display of power, unleashing the brilliant blue lightning of the seven sages, causing the very ground to crack and glow beneath his feet. The intense blue aura pulses around him, a clear and undeniable testament to his formidable abilities. His eyes glow with the same ethereal light, the sheer force of his mana radiating outwards, silencing any further protest.